You've been in the future for less than 3 minutes and are already forced to join the globally now art of civilization competition. Looking at these naive civilizations, you smile. You decide to give this world a little taste of Warhammer 40k, shock, and awe. Without hesitation, you submit a human preservation. You shall embrace tyranny, implement ignorance, and purge dissent. Faced with rebellion, your proposal is Gene C modification and the decimation decree. Faced with faith, your choice is to burn the last church. Spreading the truth. Faced with zeros, your fleet doesn't even bother opening columns, just executes exterminators. All are still planting trees, and mages are still casting fireballs. Your thunder warriors have already conquered the continent, while federations are still bickering and theocracies are still praying. Imperium's exterminator has already reached the entire galaxy. Then a cold, electronic, synthesized voice sounds in your ear for the first time. Mister, Yu Hang, this is the final reminder. If your Genesis declaration is not submitted before the countdown reaches 0, you'll be deemed to have forfeited, and will bear the corresponding breach of contract penalties. Fragments of memories, not your own, and a flood of knowledge rush in. Another unlucky soul, also named Yu Hang, a young man who gambled his entire life. Ultimately suffered cardiac arrest under minutes. Pressure just before start, and you, a scream right from another. Blue Planet, just minutes ago, took over this equally young body. All right, I get it. You wave impatiently, as if trying to shoo the words away. Rushing me, you pull a personal terminal from your worn backpack, connecting to the competition network. On the screen, the Articulation Project logo slowly rotates. The core rules are clear. Play the navigator. Submit a core philosophy and add digital simulation 0. The engine will simulate and generate stored footage based on ideas. Final scoring. Good simulation, survival, resilience, and serious. Great filters most heavily. Your gaze lingers on this last line for a long time. Your account information is pitifully simple. Contestant, Yu Hang. Initial Genesis points, 1,000. Current points, 0. Starting from scratch. Lose once, and it's over. You chuckle self-deprecatingly. You roll the official live stream, curious to see what kind of authors your peers are. On the massive holographic screen. Highlights from the most anticipated Gaia Creation Declaration Promotional Video. Lighthearted Foundation. Gaia Community. Handsome elves. Dance with all beings in the forest. Series Capitals, Stellar Federation. Grand Interstellar Parliament, and shuttling fleets. Themes, each starting luxurious 2,000 points. Most themes revolve around love. Peace, ideals, ascension, aligning with this world's mainstream. Developmental strategies. You watch expressionless. Fingers swiping rapidly across the terminal. This competition isn't actually fair. Last points aren't just surplus, given just for participating. Why do these top teams get double? Simple reason. They paid. According to competition clause 57, section 6. Participants can inject funds, though officially there's a 1,000 point cap, maximum 2,000 points total. But in early civilization development, having double the basic resources of others means they can develop faster and better. Top teams not only have large creator teams, but also direct guidance from their think tanks. This itself is the greatest unfairness. Though many participate, most individual contestants are just running alongside these big teams. Before, in the equipment zone, probably still are. Yet now this damn system demands you win in this game. That was unfair from the start. For your predecessor, high difficulty. For you, life or death. This world's conventional royal path. Resources crushed. Setup incomplete without resources. Might not survive first round. Points deducted. System uninstalled death. So take the unorthodox path, like creating a bacterial civilization. Might score high, early through originality, but when late game potential weight kicks in, instant collapse. Point zeroed, system uninstalled death. Meaning, I need something shocking enough early to earn explosive originality bonus points, yet possessing infinite. Potential and survival resilience later. Logic must be perfectly self-consistent. A flawless civilization forth. You close the live stream, lean against the cold wall. Close your eyes. Does such a thing exist? A thought flashes like lightning in darkness. It instantly cleared all his confusion. It's flickering in your eyes. It's just death in the end anyway. You're planning to do something big before you go. Paying to tech backend data monitoring center. Chief Analyst Chen Chong is currently processing massive amounts of data in an orderly manner, when suddenly an alert goes off in his private channel. Boss, for player Chen 9527, his stream has knowledge. Supports voices. Trying to hint surprise confusion. Chen Chong immediately pulls up your data panel. This data model is completely different from everyone else. This optimization primarily started 99% sociology and economics modules, and directed all computing power toward survival, the sole core tenet. For this competition, there's certainly no shortage of unconventional civilization strategies, but extreme strategy, this uncompromising, is rare. Specifically, he understands the specific structure of his life, but he can feel an overwhelming, undisguised malice rushing at him. Truth be told, not understanding doesn't really matter. Flag it as crimson observation, he ordered calmly. Right after his declaration is submitted, connect his work to the internal review channel for the head judges. As a top employee of the competition, all I need to do is pass the buck up. At 12 o'clock sharp, the Genesis declaration submission channel closes. All external connections are now gives. Information have been cut off. Please prepare to enter the first stage challenge. The screen before you goes dark. He has already turned his work. And in the head judge's review room that he can't see, a silent storm is brewing. The three head judges are retired Alliance Strategic Department Admiral Wu Yu, Association Chief Sociologist Suwin, and the champion of the last competition, and now special commentator Schleck. Same time, declaration marker observation possible. Please re-verify permission to screen with marker observation. The screen is pitch black. White words emerge. Human survival act. Then a completely emotionless voiceover begins to read. The universe is not a merciful cradle, but a cold, dark forest. We will embrace tyranny. Fit with the highest efficiency. We will implement a policy of keeping people educated because it guarantees absolute stability. We will eliminate dissent because it ensures the purity of our ideology. We will voluntarily ban the so-called glory of humanity because human nature is what we in the future will face when confronting the ultimate terror of the universe, our deadliest weakness. Professor Suwon's face has gone from solemn to shocked, then to ashen. His who always has a calm smile on her face, also shows an expression of utter disbelief. Only Admiral Wu Yu leans slightly forward, his eyes sharp as knives, as if he is listening to a war report from the abyss. When the last sentence, innocence proves nothing, that the ignorant are guilty, is absurd. Professor Suwon is the first to break the silence, his voice trembling slightly with rage. This is downright anti-civilization and anti-humanity. I suggest we immediately revoke this first qualification for the competition and conduct a psychological evaluation. Lynch also furrows a brow and says softly, this manifesto is indeed too extreme. It goes into the original purpose of our competition, which is to find a better future. Wu Yu says nothing. He just raises his finger and, half slightly on the screen, pulling up the core rules of the competition. The line marked red with the highest weight clearly displays in front of the two survival of human nature. Professor Sue is Lynn, whose voice is steady and powerful. Our mission is to prepare for human solution, a contingency plan for the worst case scenario. And this young man, pointing at the pitch black screen, he says word for word, he just submitted to all of us, the purists. Most born Tuesday, contingency plan. I don't care whether you like it or not. We have to admit that this plan is worth further study. I am curious. A flicker across his flu's eyes. The excitement hunger feels in the spine brain. A man who could write such a plan. What would his first move be? Back in your personal competition pod, a new message pops up on the terminal screen. Qualification round pass. The first theme season, Dawn of the Empire, has begun. Sub-theme 1. 1. The motor age. The forms of power. Challenge 1. Crown on the wasteland. Description. Your civilization was born on a continent, divided and ruled by tech barbarian warlords. Please, in the shortest time, unify this continent. Crown on the wasteland. You look at the challenge task displayed on the terminal. Can't help but grin. The title is full of epic feeling. Here with that thumbnail, the wasteland path, full of swirling ocean radiations. Visible everywhere. It only leaves 2 words. The poor one is himself. You ordered all the contestants. Let's face the core interface civilization grid. This is a vast, starry, tree-like interface. Countless points of light represent the civilization from the Stone Age. All the possibilities across the galaxy. Let me see novice. What a big gift bag. Zoom in on the interface. The lowest node is clearly presented. These are the basis of public nodes that all civilizations cannot get around. Under the Stone Age branch, there were grinding stone tools to drill wood for fire. There are tribes under primitive agricultural sociology. The oral epic of totem worship is marked under each node. Genesis points required for from 10 to 50 points according to the normal process. A steady navigator would use. The initial 1,000 points is by seeding, evenly spread over these base nodes. Ensure the steady development of civilization. Too slow, you shake your head, you want in the shortest time. The interior unifies the continent by stone tools and tribes. That's a human head for a tech barbarian. You look over these. The underlying public nodes look to the higher layers. Science and technology is a node as the player who chooses science and technology. You can see the basic physics, basic chemistry, biology, and other options in your real goal. In that more distant moment or a piece of gray, you selected the derived node area with your mind. One of the gray nodes derives the node. Gene alchemy high-risk descriptions through radical and inhumane. The means of genetic modification to create something beyond your mortals. Extreme bioweapons warn that this technology is extremely unstable. Genes that can cause creation to run out of control. Crashes and other catastrophic consequences of the front node. Basic biology, GT. Cytology, GT. Genomics primary. Research and development always takes 700 points. You have chosen another one. Derivative, node, dynamic, exoskeleton, military prototype. Describe the use of the principle of leverage and simplicity. First generation exoskeleton made by power source. Can significantly increase the strength and carrying capacity of soldiers. Warning of extremely low energy efficiency, fragile structure, difficult maintenance. Front node, foundation, engineering, GT. Engineering capabilities. Total 800 points required for primary research and development. Add up to 1,500 points. You touched your chin. I'm 500 short of where to get it. At this time, the background data monitoring center, and all the attentions to the 9527. The contestants, judges, and the audience saw the scene. Unbelievable operation. You open civilization. Initial feature selection interface. This interface players. Usually used to spend points to buy products rich talent. Smart and other buff effects, but you slide straight. At the bottom of the interface, there is a pile of ominous. Negative risk option for red light. Instead of spending money, the system will reward you by choosing them. The extra Genesis points, of course, cost your civilization from. We didn't bring all kinds of disabilities. It's for desperate gamblers. Prepare for the last chance on the judge's table. Professor Sewin frowned when he saw this. What does one do? A starting resource is already there. The interior player also needs to add difficulty himself. You move fast with his fingers in. One by one, the options crossed, and finally stopped on several options. You have selected the negative trait gene damage effect. Your civilized race. A permanent 50% increase in the incidence of genetic diseases. Confirm reward plus 150 Genesis points confirmed. You have selected the negative feature turbulent earth effect. Your home star geological activity is extremely unstable earthquake volcanic eruption. Frequency permanently increased by 100%. Reward plus 150 Genesis points confirmation. You chose a negative trait sacrifice worship effect. Your civilized society will be natural, advocating violent sacrifice and collectivism. Individual value is extremely disregarded. Reward plus 200 Genesis points confirmation. 3 confirms. A few scenes were directed in the crisp studio. The audience's barrage exploded instantly. This is great. This man's here to or to play the beginning of performance art with disability. Also play here. I understand. This is the legendary hell difficulty opening anchor cow force. Professor Sewin has. I would say, in his opinion, this is no longer competition. It's pure suicide. A man born weak and sick, living on a volcano and thinking about it. How to die civilization. It's a miracle to survive the first round challenges. Only General Huyu's eyes were slightly narrowed. Staring at your operation without saying a word, he vaguely felt. Behind all the madness of this young man, there's a cold, clear logical line. You look at the account. It becomes a 1,500 point. And then in the horrified eyes of all. You made a crazy move, sure die. You're ignoring all the public nodes of survival and development classes. Agriculture does not point sociology, does not point architecture, does not point. You'll bet that on the 1,500 point of switch. Like a greedy snake, he threw himself into it without hesitation. 1,500 points on 2 technological chains, needs more. Instruction consumption, 700 points, basic biology GT. Cytology, GT, genomics, primary, GT, gene alchemy. High risk means consuming 800 points. Basic engineering, GT, mechanical structure, GT. Hydraulic system, primary, GT, power, exoskeleton. Military prototype warning, detected your civilization blueprint in. Agricultural sociology, architecture, etc. Investment in the basic survival is 0. Risk of civilization collapse is extremely high. Is it confirmed that you lean back on the chair and breathe a sigh of relief? Stud is a kind of wisdom, especially when you start with a bad card. The broadcast of historical images officially began. When other players are playing on the screen, how their own people drill wood for fire and build huts. Your screen style was very different when you domesticated the beast. No pastoral, no tribal smoke, only peace. Waste soil, shrouded in radiation dust, is above this waste soil. One made of scrap, iron, and concrete. An ugly fortress of black smoke is rising from the ground. The interior of the fortress is not a place to live, but a place of madness. Laboratories and forging plants. A bunch of lunatics in radiation suits are injecting various chemicals into. In the heartbreaking screams of the strongest slave, the slave's body swells and mutates at a rate visible to the naked eye. The failure of muscle and bone hyperplasia turned into a beach. The unnamed flesh and blood and the successful are sent. The forging factory next door is where another group of madmen are using the most. Rough welding technique. Pieces of heavy and unesthetic alloy armor armor welded to them. Hydraulic pipelines are exposed like ferocious blood vessels. No sophisticated instruments, no complicated procedures. Only a hammer torch and a cold efficiency. Completely instrumentalized people for the sole purpose. Professor Sewin has. Subconsciously opened mouth, eyes full of physiological disgust and discomfort. He's making monsters. Finally, the factory gate and harsh, slowly rising the sound of demolition. A pair of height more than 2 meters, 5 body, wrapped in rough. Giant in silver power armor, walked out with a heavy pace. They carry huge chainsaw axes in their hands. There's only one under the face armor of the helmet with oil dripping on it. A cold darkness, they're not monsters. They're the war itself. The image of this newly born army. The first word was received. The target is 300 kilometers east. Technological barbarian tribes entrenched in the mountains. When this army starts to march on the target, Admiral Wu, that has been tight. His face finally showed a trace of shock. Instead of looking at the giants, he looked into the corner of the screen. Data unit name given by engine according to the deduction. Thunder Warrior prototype, tactical positioning, one-off attack unit. Extremely short expected operational life, disposable. Admiral Hua, you whispered the word. Eyes become very complex. General Yu, highly elusive, efficacy. Real intention is characteristic of General Yu. It's not a debuff. It was your purpose from the beginning. You lean on the chair in the race bay. The posture is relaxed like watching a movie in your living room. The one on the screen of a long-term blockbuster premiere just came from the factory. Out of the Thunder Warrior army is moving the ground shaking. The base is marching to the east. It's coming. The movie is starting. You're even interested in. I made a cup of instant coffee, and you can't see it. The atmosphere in the official studio is completely different. The director has put your 9,527 on the screen, and another favorite to win the title. 38 supported by Polaris Industries. Teams juxtaposed on the home screen. In the image of Team 38. A well-equipped alloy armor. Armed with a Gauss rifle army is. With a wasteland tribe. A textbook positional warfare comes and comes and comes. Tactical interspersed firepower to suppress, flank, outflank. Everything seems so professional. The barrage is also a piece of praise worthy of the Polaris industry. This tactical accomplishment is too strong. Steady and steady. This is the king's way. And on the other side of the screen, you have no tactics, no formations. Only a silent legion of steel that exudes ominous. The outline of the Ural Mountains in a straight line towards the target. A huge concrete fortress, the lair of the Iron Furnace tribe. The camera now switches to focus on the walls of the fortress. A body nearly 2 meters tall and half side was mechanical. The transformed barbarian leader is carrying a huge laser cannon. Looking through the telescope at the approaching army. Just a few people. He put down the telescope. A cruel smile on his face shouted at the pro guard around him. Not even a broken tank. Dare to mess with our Iron Furnace tribe head. They don't look quite right. The guard said uneasily, something's off. The barbarian chieftain kicked him in the rear. Just a bunch of idiots in tin cans. Wait until they get closer. Then let the boys give him a nice shower with cluster laser cans. After erupted along the wall. They'd seen plenty of wasteland scavengers before, but never one's this stubborn. On the judge's platform, Professor Sewin watched with concern, saying, gas installation seems to have no concept of tactics. It's frontal assault. Judge Sewin hits him with his hips. How did he drop? General Wu said nothing. Leaning forward slightly, his gaze sharp as a blade. He knew the critical moment was coming. In the feed, Thunder Warrior Legion were 1 kilometer from the fortress. Then, to everyone's astonishment, they charged. No artillery prep, no tactical flanking, just the purest, most brutal, full force charge. The earth trembled. The feed's perspective suddenly switched. Viewers felt instantly thrust into a moving fortress of steel. All they could hear was Omar pounding like war and ragged breathing. Data streams flashed before their eyes. Fire, fire. The barbarian chieftain's roar echoed on the ramparts. The next second, a dense barrage of laser beams were announced. The viewers saw only a sea of fire. Deafening explosions filled their ears. Their power armor surfaces were instantly scorched black and red, yet not a single one fell. Their pace didn't even falter. They just kept advancing, weathering fire that could melt steel. H, how is this possible? In a live stream, a guest military commentator cried out, what kind of armor is that? Even composite ceramic armor would have melted through under that sustained energy barrage. Mockery turned to dead silence. All were speechless, stunned by this defiance nonsense. Finally, the Legion reached the base of the wall. Then, they did something even crazier. The feed's main perspective. Thunder Warrior Squad Leader, designation Alpha 01, faced the massive axe, 4 from alloy, bristling with defensive turrets. He didn't look for a weak spot. He just raised the chainsaw axe in his hand. The engine gave a harsh roar, and then he was all over. It's like an engineering hammer hitting it hard. A loud bang, as if to tear the audience's eardrum. The alloy gate was knocked out of a huge depression. Alpha 01 shaking back disgust from reactions. But his comrades behind him have been seamless. Hit hard on the same point, with a huge power hammer. Boom again and again. The barbarian leaders on the walls are already looking silly. Monsters. They're monsters at last. In a piercing sound of metal breaking, the alloy gate was abruptly torn open a huge gap. Alpha 01 was the first one. He was greeted by dozens of barbarians. Elite soldiers formed a network of fire, but he did not dodge. He just growled the hand. Chainsaw axe waved into a death whirlwind. Sloped, a barbarian soldier with a man and a gun. Split in half from head to toe. Hot blood and guts splashing. Full of Alpha 01 silver. Power armor battle instant from engineering battle. Turned into a one-sided slaughter. The middle of the image becomes this moment. Extremely fast scenes full of bloody cruelty. The ends of Alpha sex is constantly impacted. The visual nerve of buddies. Thunder Warrior caught with robotic arm by humble walking mecha. But he ripped off the mecha's arm with his backhand and punched through the cockpit. In the hands of another Thunder Warrior. The shotgun prototype finally began to roar with every bullet in it. After hitting the enemy, the second explosion will blow the flesh and blood. A blurry mass of fragments, Alpha 1 is like a silent death all the way up. All the enemies in front of him were used by him to be the most concise. Efficient way to tear to shreds finally. He kicked down the door of the chief's hall. He was still arrogant. The cursing barbarian leader is sitting slumped over him at the moment. The scrap iron throne looked at this in horror. The bloody steel giant knew. What the hell are you? Alpha 01 didn't answer. He just raised the hands of the chainsaw, axe, engine roar. The barbarian leader in his picture. The throne was split in two. The blood is red all over it. Battle. It's so fast that there's a dead silence in the studio. It took a long time for Admiral Yu to speak slowly. Hoarse voice, yet with a hint of barely suppressed excitement. This isn't war, it's species eradication. Your contestant's army and his enemies are no longer beings of the same dimension. He executed a perfect emission reduction strike using technology. Yet the footage did not end there. The camera slowly pans to a Thunder Warrior standing upon a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He slowly removes his helmet, revealing not a resolute face, one wrinkled and prematurely aged. From excessive genetic catalysis, his eyes hold no joy of victory, only a bone-deep weariness, and a trace of imperceptible confusion. He looks at his massive, blood-soaked hands, forged like steel, as if gazing at a strange monster. In the judge's booth, Professor Suwin keenly captures this moment. His expression turns unprecedentedly grave. General Hu, he whispers, voice trembling slightly, I think I understand why he chose. That negative vision scarred the genes. The final frame freezes on the prematurely aged, confused face of the Thunder Warrior. The entire main arena falls into an eerie silence, mingled with shock and discomfort. You lean back in your chair, finishing the last bitter sip of instant coffee. It tastes just like that warrior's gaze. The competition system's prompt chimes precisely on time. All Navigator historical footage playback complete. First round challenge. Starting on Wasteland. Scoring settlement begins now. On the massive main screen, the image splits into thousands of tiny grids, each representing a competing civilization. Scoring will proceed item by item, openly and transparently. The camera first focuses on Team 38. Polaris Industries, Steel Pack. Obviously, data and items. Lights up one by one. Reserve Force, 85, excellent. Adaptability, 88, excellent. Self-consistency, 92, excellent. Originality, 75, outstanding. Potential, 90, excellent. A truly impressive score. Host Xiaoya's voice chimes in at the perfect moment. Announced to stay. We're leading back by top tier. You want resolution like position. This is championship material. Every score so high. Frighteningly stable. Almost no weaknesses. Immediately after, several top rankings. All exception. Although around Hexagon warriors with scores and methods. Schadenfreude. Your scores are coming. The first to light up was Survival Resilience, a glaring red. Number popped up, Survival Resilience, 45 points. Danger rating. This civilization shows multiple high-risk traits of genetic search and criminal, etc. The basic survival environment is extremely harsh. There's a high risk of social structure collapse. The live stream chat instantly erupted in a burst of laughter. Haha, 45 points. I'm dying. This guy started with hell difficulty. Serves him right for trying to show off. We really messed up this time. On the judge's panel, Professor Suwin shook his head. A look of I knew it appeared on his face. Next, the second dimension lit up potential. Potential, 38 points. In danger rating. This civilization's development model is severely malformed. It has completely abandoned development in foundational areas of social culture. Its core military unit, the Thunder Warriors, suffers from serious genetic defects, judged as unsustainable development. Civilization has entered an evolutionary day. This time, even Xiao couldn't help but sigh. Potential score of 38 points. That's practically a death sentence. It means even if he can win the early game, civilization has almost no future to speak of. Yet, looking at these two absurdly low scores, your face showed no surprise. You even nodded with interest. Quite accurate. Just as everyone thought he was definitely done for. The score for the third dimension lit up. Internal coherence. 100 points. Perfect. Remark. From the core concept of human preservation. Act to the societal trait of sacrificial worship. To the instrumentalized application of the Thunder Warriors. All actions follow a single, cold, and absolutely unified logical chain. Its setting is unbreakable. The laughter in the venue died instantly. 100 points. And a perfect rating. This is the first. Perfect score since the competition began. 40 weeks to react. The fourth dimension, originality, followed right after. Originality, 100 points. Epic. Remark. The dark evil areas of the model proposed by the civilization, along with concepts like genetic alchemy and a disposable super soldier, have provided this competition with unprecedented, extremely research-worthy, entirely new line of thought. Its disruptive nature is rated as epic. Another 100 points. And an epic rating at that. The live stream bullet chat experienced an eerie pause. Everyone was a bit stunned by this. Sudden plot twist. Two hellish low scores. Two god tier perfect scores. What is this? The judge's panel. Professor Suwin's brow furrowed. He couldn't refute these two perfect scores because by the rules, you truly achieved the absolute limit. Meanwhile, in General Hu's eyes, a golden light erupted. He knew the decisive moment had arrived. The final dimension, adaptability. Everyone's gaze was fixed dead on the screen. Adaptability 100. Perfect evaluation. In the Wasteland Sovereignty Challenge. This civilization, with the highest efficiency and most direct needs, perfectly accomplished the strategic goal of unifying continent. Its solution is judged the optimal solution for this challenge. Three perfect scores. The entire hall felt deadly silent. A report card polarized to the extreme, like a demon's whisper, was presented before everyone. How is this calculated? Host Xiaoya's voice even sounded a bit dry. General, will you pick up the microphone at this moment? His voice was steady and clear. And the rules of civilization's art. There is never a score for morality. What we judge is quality of solution. Facing the Wasteland unification problem, contestant number 38 submitted an excellent 88-point answer. As contestant number 95.7, Mo's gaze swept with us. Three glaring perfect scores. He submitted a perfect answer. Calculating this round's comprehensive score based on 5 dimensions. And current stage, weight adjustments. Weight correction applied. Novice support period. Originality weight x1. Potential value weight x0. Contestant number 95.7. Guhan. This round's comprehensive score, 95.8. Updating the round hero rankings. The massive leaderboard on the main screen began to scroll rapidly. Countless names flashed by. Finally, when the list stopped, everyone gasped in shock. Your name appeared prominently in the upper ranks of the list. Round hero rankings, no. 2333. Gu Heng, individual. Although it didn't rank in the top 1,000 room. Initial resource points, this ranking is already an undeniable miracle. According to the round hero rankings, other resource points are now introduced. Congratulations, Mr. Gu Heng. You have received 500 development resource points. You looked at your account. When the resource points changed from 0 to 500, your overall score leapt to 2333. No smile spread across his face. Survived the first stage, and right at this moment, the tournament system's announcement sounded again. Season 1V, development phase concluded. Entering the duel phase now. Matching opponent based on your overall ranking. Match successful. Your screen displayed. A brand new interface. A civilization profile brimming with fantastical colors and elven-like aesthetic. Opponent, no. 2330. Wind Whisperers team. Civilization archetype. Transcendent. Core trait. Nature's harmony. Animism. Common tactics. Guerrilla warfare. Traps. Elemental magic. You looked at the opponent's profile on your terminal. Eyebrow raised. Wind Whisperers. You clicked with interest to view a clip from their last development phase. The footage revealed a world of serene, natural beauty, a race akin to mythical elves, full of homes and colossal ancient trees, lived alongside earth and beast, heeding the wind's guidance. The clip showed a patrol of Ironheart, trance and swift, wind-like harpies, moving silently through the woods, effortlessly ambushing a hidden behemoth that strayed into their territory, showcasing flaws. Jungle synergy. A druid player, huh? You stroked your chin, a thoughtful smirk playing on your lips. Meanwhile, in the official live stream, as the director placed these two closely linked, opponents side by side on the main screen, the commentators and chats. Sentiment was overwhelmingly one-sided. Contestant 9,527 might have drawn the short straw this time. Host Xiaoya's tone held a note of sympathy. On the judges' panel, Professor Suwin nodded, beginning his analysis. Indeed, the The Wind Whisperer civilization is a classic transcendent archetype, deeply tied to their environment. All their use gain massive home field advantage. Terrain, limited visibility, complex geography. These are fatal for heavy units. Contested Guhangs Thunder Warriors are typical heavy assault units, cumbersome and inflexible. In open fields, they reign supreme, but in dense forests, their armor becomes a burden, mobility crippled. They can be picked off one by one, whittled down. The chat was all ready. We're trying to offer premature impulses. Alright, impulse, go up. It's night, right after off. Hilarious. Sending tin cans to fight a forced guerrilla war. That's just cruel. The Wind Whisperers are probably already celebrating. What a dream start. Right then, the system released this duel's detailed scenario. Duel phase initiated. Generating duel scenario. Generation complete. Scenario title. Elegy of the Whispering Woods. Battlefield environment. Eternal Mistwood Forest. Environmental traits. Visibility reduced. Heavy unit movement speed decreased by 30%. Ground is soft. Large units risk getting bogged down. Nature units gain movement and health recovery bonuses. Victory condition for attackers. Number 9527 must destroy the world's heart. Defender number 2330 must protect the world's heart from destruction for 72 hours. Even the system gets me. You see that 30% speed debuff. But instead of frustration, you're amused. Alright, let's play an upload battle. You open the troop deployment screen. This is the most crucial phase of the duel. Contestants must select units from their civilizations. Unlock roster. Choosing a specific number configuration. To commit to this battle, your roster currently has only one. The only option, Thunder Warrior prototype. But you can adjust these. Thunder Warrior's specific formation and equipment. The interface even offers a recommended configuration based on the battlefield environment. Over 80% of forces are suggested to be equipped with chain axes as flexible assault squads to handle complex close quarters combat. Everyone thinks this is the only choice, yet you don't even glance at the recommended setup. You close it directly. You know well, using your weakness to challenge the enemy's strength, playing by their rules, is suicide. Your finger swipes across the screen. Your actions shock everyone once again. You abandon almost all assault squad formations, only keeping a minimal few as reserves. Instead, you allocate over 70% of your elite forces, dragging them all to the heavy weapon squad option. What is he trying to do? Professor Suwin is utterly baffled. In the forest, the firing arcs and mobility of heavy weapons will be severely limited. He's tying his own hands. Once entangled by the enemy with this setup, they won't even be able to reposition. General Wu also frowns deeply, lost in thought. He pulls up the footage from your last battle, trying to find clues about your tactical logic from that urban combat, but finds that experience completely inapplicable to this forced fight. It makes no sense. Even with his military expertise, he can't understand your tactical intent. Your actions continue. In a specific equipment selection, you made a decision that even brought the live chat to a standstill. You equipped each heavy weapon squad with 2 additional weapons. One was an Imperial pattern flamer, the other a heavy bolter. This powerful weapon requires setup on a deployed bipod to reach full potential, making it utterly unsuitable for level warfare. Almost a sitting duck in guerrilla tactics. He's completely lost it. I declare, the most confusing move award for this tournament is decided. What kind of cursed loadout is this? Pyros and static turrets for guerrilla war? Does he misunderstand the word forest? Amidst the arena's doubt and confusion, you calmly click the confirm loadout button. The camera cut at just the right moment to the Whisperers team prep room. Their navigator, a refined young man, was addressing his team, unfolding a tactical map as he spoke. We've analyzed the opponent. A classic brute force style. Coordinated actions, only frontal assaults. In the forest, they'll be blind and a burden. I've had our hero unit, Liana, lay entangling traps and disillusions on all key paths, forming our first line of defense. Once they're slowed, our harpies will immediately take to the air for harassment while the dryad units flank and strike from the shadows. Our goal isn't a decisive battle, but constant bleeding. We'll use guerrilla tactics to grind it down bit by bit. Remember, the forest itself is our greatest weapon. His face was all calm confidence. Victory assured. The camera cut back to your personal contested pod. You've finished all configurations and were leaning back in your chair, waiting for the match to start. You look at the screen showing that lush, vibrant, and perilous ancient forest, a fox-like smile spreading across your face that no one could decipher. It was as if it wasn't a forest, but a neatly stacked pile of dry firewood just waiting to be lit. The countdown ended. The duel officially began. As the cold system prompt faded, the screen before you instantly switched to historical footage viewing mode. But this time it wasn't a solo performance. The screen split in two. On the left is Silent Thunder Warrior Legion. On the right, the Whisperers' agile, elegant elven forces. Both sides' units were deployed like chess pieces onto the Eternal. This forced battlefield simultaneously. The cinematic shots were masterful. First, the perspective shifts to the Windtalker side. The hero unit, the elven sentinel Liana. Her eyes are the eyes of the forest. Liana stands barefoot and light on. The tip of an ancient, 1,000-year-old tree, eyes closed, focused. Wind whispers in her ear, revealing the entire forest veins. Clearly in her mind. She can see the giant tree at the forest heart, beating slowly like a heart, the world heart. She can also see at the western edge of the forest, 100 heavy foreign objects have just been dropped into her home, emitting a cold stench of steel and fuel. They're here. Liana opens her eyes. Her emerald pupils show no panic, only the calm of a hunter. The ancestral spirits tell me. They know no reverence, no subtlety. Their minds only think in straight lines. She draws. A moonglow long arrow from her quiver. Knocks it. Wind will guide my traps. Vines will tangle their feet. Harpies will peck their eyes. This forest will be their grave. She releases the bowstring. The arrow becomes a silent streak of light, vanishing into the mist. It's not a signal to attack. The faint natural energy it carries instantly activates her. Preset tactical network. The whole forest seems to come alive. Countless vines slither like snakes underground, forming deadly tripwires and snares. Toxic mushrooms. On the Thunder Warrior's path, quietly open their spore sacs. Dozens of harpies spread their wings, silently circling high in the misty sky, waiting for prey to enter the kill zone. A perfect trap is set. Every viewer in the live stream holds their breath. So professional. The Windtalker's use of terrain is masterful. How can they fight this? If the Thunder Warriors enter the forest, they're dead. On the judges panel, Professor Suwin praises. The Windtalker's Pathfinder has exceptional tactical sense. He didn't choose a head-on clash, but maximized the civilization's strengths. Now all the pressure is on. Contestant Guhang. All eyes turn. to the left side of the screen, wondering how the Iron Giants will handle this deadly trap. But the Thunder Warriors' actions once again defy all expectations. The view switches to their commander, Centurion alike. The impact of the landing made the ground tremble slightly, like stepped out of a landing pod. His helmet's sensory systems immediately began analyzing the unfamiliar environment. Air humidity, 95%. Dense biological signals. High danger. Geological structure state. Geological structure state. At the end of the a line of blood red mission command overrode everything. Target, the world's heart. Located directly ahead. Straight line distance, 30 kilometers. Destroyed. Behind alike, the Thunder Warriors had swiftly assembled, forming a high and full circle formation. Range of power axes and chambers. Emitted a low growl, ready to receive attacks from any angle. Everyone thought he would issue the order to advance in the next second. But alike just stood there quietly, like a statue of steel. He waited. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He didn't move. The entire legion stood as still as a single block of iron. What is he doing? The live stream chat was filled with question marks. Did he disconnect? Is he being controlled by the enemy's magic? Even General Huiyu was baffled. On the battlefield, time is life. This stationary behavior was simply incomprehensible. Meanwhile, in the canopy above, beyond all strength, he seemed more patient than she had imagined. Her traps were static, requiring the enemy to move to trigger them. The opponent's stillness rendered her carefully laid. First line of defense, completely useless. She couldn't wait any longer. She had to force them to move. First squad, attack. Test their strength. Flush them out of that iron shell. At her command, the ground in front of the Thunder Warriors' position suddenly erupted without warning. Dozens of tree demons formed from twisted roots and vines emerged like ghosts from hell, brandishing sharp wooden spears. They stabbed at the outermost soldiers of the Thunder Warrior formation. The viewers perked up. However, the expected scene of Thunder Warriors being impaled and dragged underground did not occur. With a sickeningly dull thud, the tree demon spear, capable of piercing rock, struck the Thunder Warrior's power up, leaving only a faint white scratch. The Thunder Warrior didn't even budge. He merely lowered his head, glanced at the scratch on his chest plate, as if looking at a bothersome fly. Then he raised his heavy bolter for mankind. A low, thunderous war cry rose from the formation. The next second, the symphony of death began. Boom, 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 boom. The heavy blaster started to roar, and it wasn't bullets, but a miniature rocket. A tree demon just emerged from the ground. Before he could swing his spear, he was hit by an explosive bullet. Its body is first torn open by a huge kinetic energy. Immediately after the delay fuse inside the warhead is triggered. With a loud bang, the Ironheart tree demon blow up straight from the inside. One after another, burning green debris flying all over the sky. The front of the position instantly turned into a flesh and blood mill. A few of the tree demons who narrowly rushed to the front greeted them with another. A barrier of death decontaminates a squad of Thunder Warriors. Start the whale behind the flamethrower. Sticky gelatinous fuel with a pungent smell of sulfur. Instant coverage like angry dragon's breath. 30 meters ahead of the sector area. Those wooden driveways and especially designed for burning aliens and can't hold even a second before the sacred fireborn of heresy. Distorted and struggling in the silent flames. Eventually turned into a black smoke of human-shaped coke. The first raid took place in less than 30 seconds. The wind at ringside was completely annihilated and ended up above camp. Liana's face went white for the first time. She's proud of the fragile forest warriors in front of each other. It's like paper dolls. No, we can't let them come any closer. She immediately changes tactics. All units retreat Eagle Banshee. Prepare for air raids and consume them remotely with wind blades and acid. However, just as he was preparing to launch an airstrike, a low roar that made his soul tremble. Suddenly, it rang from the center of the Imperial position. Or activated sound that began to heat near. Admiral Hoyu's pupil shrank sharply on the panel. It's like he's discovered something incredible. Desperate to the director, roared road amplification. The central fast picture of the Imperial position instantly pulls closer. I saw inside the Thunder Warriors perimeter. It was in 10 minutes of silence. A few of the completely obscured open spaces were wearing only overalls. Imperial technicians around the power armor. His fast were just assembled. Ended up a huge tripod equipment. It's connected to the final energy pipeline. It's a small drilling platform. Professor Sewin also lost his voice and said, no, it's not drilling. It's not a drill bit. It's Admiral Hua, you stared. The device that is being activated is in your mind. Admiral head weapons configuration. The incredible 10-minute wait and huge engineering equipment. All clues instantly connected in series. An impossible, insane guess. I get it now. He slammed his fist heavily onto the table before him. His face was full of shock and disbelief. He never intended to enter that forest from the start. His target was never the tree on the ground. It was the canopy above. Leon's face instantly turned deathly pale. The wind brought him an answer that shook his very soul. Those steel monstrosities, those defilers, they didn't enter the forest because their target was the earth itself. That humming war machine wasn't going to attack his warriors, but the roots sustaining the entire ecosystem. No, absolutely not. Unprecedented rage and fear seized his heart. He couldn't wait any longer, even if the preparations weren't perfect. He had to interrupt the enemy's casting at all costs. Liana spread her arms wide. She let out a shriek that pierced the clouds. It wasn't language, but the rawest roar from the forest soul itself. A command carrying her will. Instantly spread through the entire forest via wind and nature's veins. For the world heart, the entire eternal mist forest. Awakened completely at this moment. The earth rumbled and cracked. Two stone giants, over 10 meters tall, formed from hardened rock and millennia old. Tree roots rose from their slumber. They were the forest's final line of defense. Each step made the earth tremble. From the forest shadows, hundreds of horned beasts with sharp horns and crimson eyes let out bloodthirsty snarls. They were the forest fangs converging into one unstoppable green tide. From the misty sky, they were the forest claws. Their sharp shrieks could tear through steel. A three-dimensional green tsunami of assault units, charging clusters and aerial support swept in from all sides, crashing toward the Thunder Warriors' isolated ring of defenses. In a live stream, all the viewers held their breath. The Wind Whisperer has launched the final assault. It's spectacular. This is like the final battle from a fantasy movie. The Thunder Warriors' position is about to be overrun. How can I hold within the Imperial position? Sidrina watched an eye of infrared eyes surging in. On his tactical helmet, his face expressionless. His voice, calm and clear, came through the built-in columns into every warrior's ear. Defense line A Heavy bolters. Execute punishment fire protocol. Weapons free. Defense line B. Flamer squad. Prepare for first stage purification. Melee units hold the line. Buy time for tech. For mankind. Below thunderous. War cry echoed across the position. The next second, war erupted. Boom. 6 heavy stronghold erected at the front of the position. The shotgun roared at the same time, and the chain was spinning wildly. A waterfall of searing shell casings poured out. Each bomb is like a miniature bullet. Accurately smash into the charging horns. The flesh and blood flew all over the front. Horned beast hit entire upper body moment by ball. Blown into a fog of blood, his companions behind him were. The blast was blown off and torn to shreds by the subsequent rain of bullets. 100 meters in front of the position. It's a flesh and blood mill, but there are too many horned beasts. They are brave and fearless, stepping on the bodies of their companions. Finally, the first horned beast broke through the fire net. It hit the makeshift parapet made of alloy plates by the Thunder Warriors. It was a loud bang. The chest wall was severely deformed, but it was greeted by a roaring power hammer. Blue arc flash on hammerhead. The hard skull of the clouder horned beast smashed like an eggshell. The red and white splashed all over the place, and more horned beasts poured up. Close hand-to-hand combat begins. Thunder fighters give up shooting. Activated chain, saw, axe, and power hammer in hand. The roar of the engine mingled with the crumbling of the bones. The Thunder Warrior was thrown down by a 3-headed beast at the same time, but he roared at the overload of the muscle fiber bundle of the power nail. The waist forced to lift them all off, and then wield a chainsaw axe to cut them one by one. On the other side, 2 stone giants have rushed to the front of the position. They ignore the shot of a shotgun. The huge rock arm was smashed down with the force of 1,000,000 troops. With a bang, a line of defense with the 2 Thunder Warriors above. It was smashed directly into indistinguishable meat paste. The gap is plugged. The team of Thunder Warriors immediately greeted them. The shotguns in their hands have little effect on the stone giants. Toggle melee attacks on his joints. The warrior, like an agile cheetah, dodges the sweeping arms of a stone giant. Bully yourself. The chainsaw axe in his hand slashed on the stone giant's knee. The spark splashed in a harsh sound of friction. The stone giant's knee was cut out of a deep gully. The rubble splashed and gave a silent roar. Backhand slap. Shoot that Thunder Warrior out like a fly. The soldier crashed through the rear like a broken kite. The breastwork is completely sunken. The vital signal disappears instantly, but his sacrifice created a chance of 0.5 seconds for his comrades. Another Thunder Warrior falls from the sky. The power hammer in the hand draws a blue arc in the air. Hit the stone giant's damaged knee. A sharp, thunderous crack echoed. The stone giant's knee joint shattered completely. It lost balance, its massive body crashing down. But the sky was already shadowed by harpies. They shrieked, diving down with claws extended. They aimed for the Thunder Warrior's helmet sensors. The position was on the brink of collapse. Above the canopy, Liana watched it all. A flicker of pity, then grim resolve in her eyes. She knew the tide of battle was turning her way. Just one more minute. Those metal monsters would be torn apart. Then, Alik's cold voice crackled in her comms again. Your warriors are brave. It's meaningless. Liana roared with fury and despair. You defilers. You understand nothing of life. Alik's voice remained flat. We understand victory. Your lives are in the way. This is the final offer. Surrender or die with your forest. No chance. Alik severed the comms. He glanced at the center of the position. The massive seismic device hummed at peak charge. It emitted an ominous drone. A technician gave a ready signal. Alik activated the all units channel. All units, activate magnetic anchors. Brace for impact. The next second, he pressed the activation button. No cataclysmic explosion. No blinding flash. Only a silent, destructive wave of infrasound. It rippled out from the position like water. In that instant, the world seemed muted. Above the canopy, Liana felt a primal, indescribable tremor. She looked down. The earth turned like a boiling, silent sea. It heaved violently without a sound. She saw the roots of the ancient tree beneath her, shatter like glass, severed by an unseen force. She saw the entire forest, the countless trees linked to the world heart, collapse silently like dominoes. At the forest core, the world heart, the great tree that pulsed like a heart, supporting the world, let out a silent cry of agony and despair only she could hear. On its trunk, fine cracks began at the base. They spread rapidly, then it disintegrated in an instant. The great world heart became a storm of golden, tear-like dust. The forest was dead. The tree spirits battling Thunder Warriors on the battlefield. Horned beasts and harpies instantly lost all vitality. Their movements froze, the red light in their eyes extinguished. They fell like withered plants, reverting to lifeless branches and flesh. On the battlefield, only those silver steel giants remained. Activated geomagnetic anchors, firmly rooted to the earth, in a graveyard-like silent ruin. Victory condition achieved. Attacker number 9527 wins this duel. A cold system prompt echoed in Gu Hang's ear. The Empire won. The judges' panel fell silent for a long time, before Professor Su Won slowly spoke, her voice trembling with unconcealed fear. They won. She gazed at the screen, showing ruins that once thrived. Now just broken walls and debris. And a glaring victory text, whispering. Are they truly civilized? Contestant Gu Hang's current rank, Bronze V. The first micro-season duel period has ended. Settling rewards for this duel. The tournament system's settlement prompt rang out coldly, pulling everyone back to reality. Every little bit counts. He promptly opened his personal panel to check the ranking system, calculating your civilization tier points. Base victory points, 10. To advance to Bronze 3, 82 more points needed. You gained 18 civilization tier points. Gu Hang looked at the number and nodded. 100 points for rank up? So, I need at least 5 more wins to reach Bronze 4. He calculated. This pace wasn't fast, but realistic, considering this top-tier arena with hundreds of thousands of monsters. His gaze shifted to another leaderboard, the civilization leaderboard. Opponent rank bonus. Bronze 4 opponent, plus 8 points. At that moment, from the judges' panel, General Huiyu's voice broke the contemplation, directly addressing Professor Su Won's earlier question. Professor Su, your question is excellent. What defines civilization? Is it a codex filled with beautiful words, first to be torn apart? Or is it gold rules ensuring our species' continuity? Under the most extreme conditions. His eyes swept across the room. The lighthearted civilization is beautiful, ideally. But in this duel, Their beauty became their weakness. Their reliance on the forest led to their downfall. As contestant number 95.7, Yu points at the silent ruins on the screen. He shows us a completely different possibility. When survival is the sole objective, moral ethics and even visa can become tools to achieve that goal, or obstacles to be cleared. I can't praise him, but we must admit, before the highest law of the art of civilization, survival resilience, he is closer to the essence of civilization than any of us. General will use voice rings out with conviction. He just tore off that veil of sentimentality. These words hit everyone like a hammer. The live chat, once full of arguments, gradually shifts to a more contemplative mood. The general has a point. If we face unreasonable enemies in the future, what good is our reason? I still can't accept this method, but it does offer a perspective. Just as the debate is about to peak, the tournament system chimes in again, ushering in a new chapter. The first micro-season is over. Now opening the second micro-season. Development theme announced. The first monument, imprint of civilization, universal interpretation. Your civilization has solved basic survival and achieved initial unity. How will you build your cultural symbols and social structures? To unite your people and announce your existence to the world, a new theme arrives. A cultural topic, seemingly unrelated to war and survival. In the live stream, eyes instinctively turn back to Guhang screen, number 9527. The same question pops into everyone's mind. A civilization that just brutally destroyed a forest. A civilization steeped in pragmatism and anti-culture from its core. How will it build its own culture? Does it even have one? But in terms of true depth and overall strength, there's still a huge gap between me and the top teams. But you can't get fast in one bite. This leaderboard ranks all players in real time based on accumulated tier points. After gaining these 18 points, his rank moved up slightly from 2,333rd. This question is like a boulder, dropped into the audience's mind. Is this even civilization? Destroying the battlefield itself for victory, ignoring all morality beyond the rules to achieve a goal. Is this really the answer the Arc of Civilization project seeks? Civilization overall ranked 2198. Guhang moved up 135 places. Not bad. With this result, Guhang is satisfied. He knows very well. He's still just an upstart, with a blockbuster ingenuity to get the first bucket of gold. A data panel of Qingzhe popped up on Guhang's personal terminal. The victory of the duel is in this harmonious atmosphere. The director seemed to be intentional. Once again, a subshot was given to number 9527 in the corner. Interpretation of the index of the initial conquest of the internal state of civilization. Your empire consists of hundreds of cultural beliefs, forced by barbarian tribes of different languages. Under the surface of military unity, there is a huge potential for division. Any external pressure or internal turbulence could cause the empire to fall apart in an instant. Data, such as acquisition of war damage resources on the panel, are crossed one by one. In the end, his eyes rested on a hidden index that had never been paid attention to before and was marked red by the system. This is what civilization should look like. The number 1 Skydome capital in its Star C federal blueprint. Star Constitution, multicultural coexistence, Act First Star Academy. 3 nodes are being filled with light by massive resource points. The second cradle of life is Gaia Community. 4 seasons epic of World Tree in Blueprint. Beast's Totem Pillar Druid Council. Such as the node full of nature and harmony. Also priority lit. Then everyone saw the operation of Guhang. We are all trying to build our own civilization through creation and tolerance. Whether it is the rule of law and republic of the capitalist sky, or the cradle of life, the epic faith is the king's choice. The barrage was also peaceful. He opened up a branch of social organization under this branch. There are elected councils, theocracy, priests, clan elders, and other conventional social structure nodes. Give me a look at the family elders, because these options are useless to address the risk of tearing in 85. You can see that the top players are very clear. Ho Xiaoya's voice is full of admiration. Command consumption, 300-point thought review department. Prototype confirms that 2 nodes are instantly lit. He entered the queue, and his resource points were zeroed again. This scene, presented in front of all the audience and judges through live footage. If the previous choice of negative characteristics is incomprehensible, then this time it's chilling. For the first time, Professor Suwin's face became more dignified than Admiral Wu's. I can't understand her voice with a hint of confusion and uneasiness. The theme of this round is to build a cultural imprint. This is an addition problem, is creation is fusion. It's to make civilization more colorful. And the Guhang player's operation is all subtraction. The purpose of forcing a unified language is to eliminate linguistic diversity. Thought review was created to stifle the spark of thought. What on earth does he want to do? Professor Suwin looked at his 2 companions beside him and posed a question that gripped the hearts of all viewers. Could it be that he wants to submit a blank answer sheet in this competition? The live chat exploded because of Professor Suwin's question. Holy cow, Professor Su just woke us all up. Yeah, everyone else is painting, but this guy just burned his canvas. At this moment, the ever-silent General Yu slowly spoke up. His voice was deep and powerful. Professor Su, you may not realize the severity of the situation. He pulled up Guhang's internal data panel and zoomed in. That blood-red 85-foot was clearly displayed for all to see. Look here. He pointed at the index labeled Cultural Centrifugal Force. After the last unification war, his empire was forcibly pieced together from hundreds of culturally diverse barbarian tribes. This is a staggering 85% risk index of cultural fragmentation. Other contestants don't have this problem because their unifications were gentle federations or assimilations. This was conquest. Wu's words left everyone stunned. The eyes of the special commentator, Lin Shui, always full of mirth, now flickered with a moment of clarity. She cut straight to the heart of the matter. So, General Hua, you mean for other contestants? This is a bonus question on cultural development. But for contestant Guhang, her voice paused, as if shocked by her own conclusion. This is a life or death question about whether his civilization will split again. He doesn't want to avoid building a culture. General Hu, lean back a chair, his tone complex. He simply can't. He must first use the most radical, most brutal means to eradicate all cultural pathogens that could split his empire. Only then can he create a truly unified culture of his own. All navigators, strategic deployment concluded. The second micro-season, historical simulation, begins now. On other contestant screens, scenes gradually appeared. Bards singing heroic epics. Grand temples rising from the ground, and philosophers in white robes debating fiercely in plazas. But Guhang's screen, 9527, once again fell into a somber silence. In the footage, a team entered a newly conquered tribe. This tribe had a long history of worshipping megalithic totems. The team consisted of imperial mortal soldiers and several inspectors. In black uniforms, their gaze sharp as knives. In the tribe's central plaza, all surviving residents were forcibly herded together. The chief inspector, a stern-faced, middle-aged man, ascended the makeshift platform. He simply picked up the megaphone. and in a tone devoid of emotion, like a verdict, announced the Empire's first cultural decree. Direct cost, 200 points. Research, Mandatory Common Language Promotion Act. His gaze fixed directly on two new nodes. Unlocked by completion of unification. The derivative node, Mandatory Common Language Promotion Act. Research required 200 points, but he didn't act immediately. Instead, he first opened his civilization's internal data panel. This was his routine post-war review. Description, through coercive means. Enforce the sole official language across the entire civilization. To eliminate cultural barriers. Strengthen central authority. Derivative node, thought inspection department. Research cost, 300 points. Description, create a secret, highly powerful agency. Responsible for inspecting and supervising, and eliminating all thought, culture, and belief. Detrimental to imperial unity. So that's it. Gu Heng understood. This was the real life or death question, hidden beneath the additional task of cultural construction. Meanwhile, the main screen's broadcast feed rapidly scanned the interfaces of top-ranked players, showcasing the top students' problem-solving approaches to the audience. Below was a sea of dark figures, a tribe freshly crushed under the iron hooves of the Thunder Warriors. Their eyes held a mix of fear, numbness, and a flicker of unyielding fire hidden deep within. His crisp black uniform made him look dashing, but his eyes still held a glimmer of light. On his chest, he wore a brand new Eagle Wing badge, symbolizing the glorious mission of the Thought Inspection Department. His name was Kair, fresh from graduating with top honors from the Empire's newly established academy. His superior was a middle-aged man, with a vicious scar on his cheek and eyes like frozen earth. His purpose here was not to be an executioner, but to become a torchbearer. He was to educate these newly conquered brethren, to free them from their savage worship of the stone totem, and paint them in the rational light of the Empire. Kair could feel those gazes prickling his back like needles. Harboring this ideal, he followed his superior onto a high platform, built hastily from weapon crates. Crew to get authoritative military ordnance number. His superior clearly lacked his sentimentality. He picked up the tin megaphone, its voice distorted and shrill, like scraping metal, announcing the Empire's decree. First, from this day forward, all must learn and use the Imperial Common Tongue. 3 months hence, anyone using tribal dialect in public loses their tongue. He would become the first cornerstone of the Empire's new culture. He raised his hand in a light gesture for silence. The Imperial soldiers behind him raised their laser rifles skyward. They pulled the triggers. A series of sharp cracks rang out. Crimson beams swept over the crowd's heads, the air filled with the scent of scorched ozone. The crowd's unrest was brutally suppressed by this violence. But Kair saw in everyone's eyes the unyielding flame burning brighter. The following days settled into an eerie peace. The tribe chose obedience on the surface. They silently learned the harsh Imperial Common Tongue. With their own hands, toppled the ancient stone totems. Everything seemed to proceed smoothly. But Kair felt a deep, bone-chilling unease. He used the newly installed surveillance network to peer into every corner of the city in the dead of night. Then he saw the truth. In a dank, dark basement, the elders sat around a dim oil lamp, using the ancient, rhythmic tribal tongue, told wide-eyed children tales of their ancestors, hunting great beasts, conquering floods. In a sealed-off, abandoned mine shaft, young women were using ground-colored stones to carefully, secretly redraw on rough walls. Murals according to Dive's operation history. They weren't rebelling against the Empire. They just wanted to preserve their roots. Kair's heart was profoundly moved. He drafted a detailed report overnight, combining his findings with an idealistic proposal for a gentler assimilation strategy. Outlined how to adapt their ancestor tales into poems praising the Empire's leaders, how to reshape their totems into statues of imperial eagles. He believed this rafting, not uprooting approach, could preserve their cultural forms, while subtly implanting the Empire's core, ultimately achieving true cultural fusion. The next day, with trepidation and hope, he submitted the report through the censorship center head to his superior. The scar-faced man read it calmly. No anger, no praise, then looked up at Kair. Asked the question, Kair, do you know the Imperial monument? Is it Moki's? Kair froze. Not a stone, not a steel. The scar-faced man stood up. Go to the window and look at the silent city below. It's a memory. It's a million memories of old times like that. Crushed, mixed, and poured into our mission. Not carved on their memories. His voice became cold and sharp. Is to uproot their memories, then replace the memory of our empire. He turned around and threw that report in front of Kair. I finished reading your report very attentively and naively. He pointed his finger at the report's titled Gentle Assimilation Strategy. Your so-called gentleness is the Empire's most intolerable impurity. You replace the protagonist of their heroic story with the Emperor. You will only make them feel that the great Emperor is the same as their ancestors. It is just another totem to be worshipped. You replace their stone totems with two-headed eagles. It will only make them bow down to the Empire sign. It's still their old gods. Your kindness is not strength, Kair. It's poison. It's a deadly corrosive agent that corrodes the foundations of the Empire. It will give these conquered people an illusion. Thought they could bargain with the Empire. Thought their roots could parasitize the Empire in another way. And any parasitism will eventually turn into rebellion. There was a flash in the eyes of the Scarface man that made Kair shudder. Looks like I need to teach you a lesson in person. Tell you what the culture of the Empire is. The Scarface man let out a sneer of disdain. Just with a tone of no doubt declared. Your memories are full of weakness, division, and superstition. It's not a root, it's a lesion. The Empire's mission is not to protect the lesion, it's to remove it. The second prohibition of all forms of megalithic totem worship. All totems must topple themselves within 3 days. They're guilty of the same crime as us. Third, all the rope murals that record the history of the tribe. All must be submitted to the examination department within 3 days. Private Tibetans to be sentenced to death for ideological pollution. The camera is not as expected to a grand building or a magnificent epic, but focused on the face of a young man. The crowd boiled over when the last 2 words fell. An old man with white hair was leaning on crutches made of giant leg bones. Out of the crowd, he's the great elder of the tribe. You can take our land, can kill our warriors. The old man's voice was hoarse yet powerful, but you cannot take our memories. You cannot take the voices of our ancestors. This was his first mission in his education at the Capital Academy. Imperial truth was a rational light that dispelled ignorance and superstition. The tribespeople were herded here once more. The fear and numbness from days past were gone from their eyes, replaced by fury suppressed to the extreme, like a volcano about to erupt. Kair could smell gunpowder in the air. You pity them. Who will pity the Imperial soldiers? Your so-called gentle assimilation would take 100 years, or even longer, to show a negligible effect. Your mercy stains your uniform. A grim atmosphere, thick as lead, weighed on everyone's heart. You pulled a heavy bolt pistol from the drawer and slammed it onto the table. The clash of metal on would made Kayer's heart lurch. He saw the rooftops of buildings surrounding the square. The dark muzzles of guns had been silently set up, forming a perfect crossfire network, a default slaughterhouse. Central Square, 3 p.m. His legs felt like lead. Each step was a struggle as he climbed the execution platform. He looked at the old man, tied to the post, who still stood tall, his eyes calm as an ancient well. The old man looked at him and actually smiled. Your hand is shaking. Central Square, 3 p.m. The great elder who led the resistance. You will carry out the execution personally. This is an order in your final lesson. For the ancestors, a roar of utter grief and rage erupted from the crowd. A young tribesman, eyes bloodshot, like a crazed beast, drew a rusted dagger from his robes. He charged the platform, heedless. The crowd ignited instantly. Fight them. Kill these imperial dogs. The riot erupted like a burst dam. Yet on the platform, the scar-faced man didn't even turn his head. He just drew his pistol with impossibly fast speed, backhanded. Bang! A crisp shot, startling out of place amidst the chaos. A charred hole appeared in the forehead of the young man leading the charge. His face frozen in eternal rage. His body fell stiffly backward. The scar-faced man didn't even glance at the corpse. He just raised his gun, spoke a single word into the built-in call. His voice colder than a Siberian wind. Perch. The next second, death descended. 6 heavy bolt guns deployed on high ground roared in unison. That wasn't gunfire. It was a roar of death. The ammo belt spun wildly. Huge caliber explosive rounds streaked with fire, slamming into the dense crowd like ice and lightning. The tribesmen who tried to fight back instantly vaporized into a red mist. The 3 or 4 people beside him were torn apart by the blast and shrapnel. The square became a meat grinder in under a second. Then came the fire. 2 heavy flamethrowers on the flanks spewed 30-meter-long streams of sticky fire. Wherever the gel, fuel swept. Wooden huts and human flesh alike instantly ignited. Piercing screams rose in the inferno, only to be swallowed by the crackling flames. No shootout, no tactics, no back and forth. Just a one-sided, efficient harvest of lives. Kayer stared, dumbstruck, watching people who were alive just yesterday turn into charred, mutilated corpses before him. His worldview, his ideals, everything he knew, was incinerated in that moment by flames and the stench of blood. The suppression lasted under 5 minutes. In the square, only Imperial troopers remained standing. The scar-faced man walked up to the catatonic Kayer. Wordless, he took the still-hot bolt pistol, shoved it back into Kayer's hand, and raised his arm, aiming at the high elder, who was also petrified by this hellscape, collapsed against the pillar, face white with terror. Now the man's voice was a devil's whisper in his ear. Your turn. Kayer slowly turned his head. His eyes were hollow. No, the last glimmer of something called humanity went out. He looked at the old man. Then, expressionless, he pulled the trigger. After the execution, the scar-faced man walked over and clapped his shoulder. A gesture that was both a comfort and a congratulation. Welcome to the Empire, kid. Now his gaze turned to the center of the square, to the piles of scriptures, not records and bone carvings, looted from the tribe. Relics representing all their history and culture. Burn that trash. Time seemed to stretch infinitely. At that moment, Kayer's body shuddered violently. Fear is contagious. The old man whispered. It turns you into a wretch who uses violence to mask your own fear. Shut up. The scar-faced man behind Kayer barked. He shoved the cold bolt pistol into Kayer's hand. Kayer slowly raised his trembling arm. The muzzle pointed at the old man's heart. He saw the crowd below, eyes filled with fury, hatred, and pleas, feeling himself suffocate, and a rebellion that could topple our rule. Take just one night. One lie. One ancestor they worship as a god appearing in a dream. The man's voice turned cold and hard. The Empire doesn't have a century for you to waste, Kayer. Standing before the roots, he took a torch. From a soldier. Kayer turned, his gaze now empty and numb. Their piled like mountain, the tribal archives, knotted cords, bone carvings of Silent Hill, awaiting final judgment. This is the root of civilization. They knew they were about to witness. The moment of civilization is erased from memory. The camera zoomed in on those archives. Flames danced quietly in his eyes, which had lost all their light. The cords marked heroes' births and disasters' falls. The carvings held spirits of ancestors worshipped for millennia. Then, he threw the torch. Whoosh. Oil-soaked hides and wood ignited instantly. The scrolls recorded the tribe's migration. Firelight flickered on his young, numb face. The next day, the footage's tone grew colder, more severe. The scarred man led Kayer, whose eyes were now hollow, like a puppet on strings, back to the city's central square. The bloodstains had been washed away, but the air still held an unmistakable scent of blood and ash. In the square's center, a massive obelisk of black basalt, devoid of any carvings or adornment, was being slowly hoisted into place. It stood like a black sword, straight with a firmament full of forgery boldness and undeniable power. See, Kayer, the scarred man, pointed at the rising monument, his voice calm. That ash is the foundation stone, and this monument is the Empire's culture. Kayer watched silently. It says nothing, so it can mean everything. Cold, hard, forever pointing upward. It tells all who see it one thing. The man's voice was a final verdict. Obey, and look up. The image slowly fades to black at this moment. The frame finally settles on that obelisk. That stands like a tombstone. Second micro-season development phase. The historical footage ends. The judge's panel is dead silent. After a long while, Professor Sewin finally speaks. Her voice carries deep sorrow and powerlessness. He succeeded. He used the most brutal method to solve a problem of utmost civilization. What he created isn't culture. It's an absolute unified order based on forget. She looks at General Wu beside her, her gaze complex. This data is dangerous, but I cannot deny its value. General Wu doesn't refute her this time. He just nods, his tone grave. For his empire, he pulled all teeth that could lead to ideological cancer. The cost was painful, but from a survival resilience perspective, this civilization has become more solid than before. Gu Hang's scoring panel pops up again. Viability, 60 points pass. Social stability, greatly improved, but negative traits remain. Potential, 40 points endangered. Imprisonment of 5. Further reduces the civilization's long-term potential. Consistency, 100 points, perfect. Originality, 98 points, epic. The anti-culture approach, once again, provides subversive data. Adaptability, 100 points, perfect. Perfectly solved cultural division. Another incredibly high score. After a long silence, the live stream chat finally explodes again. This gets a high score. I don't get it, but I'm amazed. Hey, upstairs, don't you get it yet? This guy's been dancing on the tightrope of the rules all along. Every step he takes solves problems with maximum efficiency. I get it now. This isn't a culture question at all. It's a question. Hey, updating the leaderboard. Round leaderboard rank, 1874. Rank soars again. Based on round leaderboard ranking. Issuing development resource point rewards. Congratulations, Mr. Guhang. You have received 500 development resource points. Guhang looks at his once again ample account balance. And that black monument. The smile only he understands appearing on his face. Target. At this moment, the tournament system's notifications sound again. Second micro-season development phase has ended. Entering the duel phase. Matching opponents based on your overall rating. Match successful. On Guhang's screen, an opponent profile with a completely different style pops up. Opponent rank, 1865. Aegis. Civilization type, transcendent. Kernel features, chivalry, holy light, faith, strict hierarchy. Common tactics, heavy infantry phalanx, night charge, holy light blessing. All viewers in the live stream held their breath. Do you even know what we're talking about there? One hammer from a Thunder Warrior, and everything of yours will shatter. I'm betting on 95-27. The key is that Holy Light Blessing. That thing reduces physical damage. The effect of bolt guns and chain axes will be greatly weakened. You click on the edited historical footage of the opponent. The footage shows a world full of medieval. Honor and order. On the Holy Shield side, I bet on Holy Shield. Their system is too perfect, almost no weaknesses. High in the sky, giant griffins with wingspans of over 10 meters. Carry knights wielding long lances. Duel past. Wow, that's retro now. Guhang stroked his chin. A look of excitement at finding an equal opponent crossing his face. That's right, and the Thunder Warriors have no air force. Complete air superiority belongs to Holy Shield. In the official live stream room, when the director put both sides' information side by side, the atmosphere instantly heated up. This time it wasn't all one-sided skepticism. It split into two clearly distinct factions. On the judges' panel, Admiral Hill's expression was more serious than ever. Contestant Guhang has finally met a real tough, not this time. His voice spread throughout the arena through the microphone. They have the classic Warrior Priest Mage Trinity plus Air Force. This is way trickier than that Druid that only hid in the woods last time. Duel started, generating duel scenario. Generation complete. Scenario name, Trial of Kings Valley. Battlefield environment, open plain. Environment trait, flat terrain, no cover. There is an independent hill called King's Peak in the center of the battlefield. Victory condition when the duel ends. Occupy the summit of King's Peak and play your faction's battle flag on it. It's a hill grab match. Guhang looked at this straightforward victory condition and grinned. I like it. He opened the troop deployment interface. Everyone's eyes locked onto the screen. They all wanted to see what he would do. Except what kind of countermeasure he would come up with. However, Guhang's move left everyone deeply confused once again. He still chose Thunder Warriors as his only troop type, but when aimed at a specific organization, he made an adjustment that all military enthusiasts couldn't understand at all. He abandoned over half of his frontline combat units, instead allocating those precious troop slots entirely to technical engineers and heavy equipment transport teams. On the judges' panel, General Huiyu's body lurched forward, his eyes fixed on the screen, as if trying to confirm he wasn't seeing things. What was he doing? He swapped half his combat power for a bunch of engineers. Professor Suwin was completely baffled. This is a hill capture showdown. Not bringing more soldiers to charge, but bringing logistical units? What's his plan? Guhang's adjustments continued. His equipment choices were even more baffling. He didn't equip his few Thunder Warriors with any modern weapons. Instead, he had those heavy transport teams, carry massive supplies everyone considered. Completely irrelevant to this battle. Portable alloy barricade components X500, automatic rivet guns X200, rapid setting ironcrete X100 tons. The live stream fell into dead silence. The last match, Guhang's pyro configuration was just confusing. This time, his construction crew setup is downright perplexing. Guys, I might be crazy, but I feel like contestant 95-27 isn't here to fight. He's here for construction work. Same thought here. Is he planning to build structures right on the battlefield? I officially give up understanding this man. I just want to see what crazy stunt he'll pull. Amidst the collective confusion, Guhang calmly clicked confirm configuration. The camera cut to Holy Shield team's preparation room. Their navigator, a stern-faced middle-aged man, was confidently briefing his team. I've studied our opponent, strong, brutal, but no honor, no discipline. This is Plains combat, our home turf. Simple tactics. Tempers form the Holy Shield phalanx. Advance steadily frontally. Griffin Knights provide aerial suppression from flanks. Cut off any flanking routes. Priests maintain blessings in rear. Keep our line. Unbreakable. We'll win with righteous. Arm triumph, showing everyone. His eyes gleamed with determination. What is the true way of knighthood? The camera cut back to Guhang's personal competition capsule. He has finished all the setup. He's leaning back in his chair leisurely, waiting for the match to start. He stares at the vast open plain on the screen, and a solitary hill right in its center. A smile tugs his face. The same kind of smile construction enthusiasts who have seen Earth. The duel officially begins. The civilization, led by player Guhang, stands for violent conquest and destruction. This is going to be a pure clash of ideologies. As everyone watches in anticipation, the system releases the full script for this duel. Holy Shield Civilization is a classic heavy fortified playstyle. Their core unit is the Templar Phalanx. Once deployed on open plain terrain, their frontline defensive capability is almost unbreakable. Guhang looks at the newly popped up opponent info on his terminal and can't help but whistle. He points to the Holy Light icon in Holy Shield's profile. Their Holy Light Blessing can greatly enhance the troops' sustainable combat capability and effectively negate raw physical damage. This would be a huge counter. Thunder Warrior's brute force focused attack style, a very deadly one, in fact. Professor Suwin adds, perspective of civilization. Holy Shield stands for glory, order, and protection. Flat head to toe in heavy full plate armor. Templars wielding great swords and tower shields form an impenetrable steel phalanx on the battlefield. Behind them, holy light priests in white robes. Chant prayers, soft golden light after golden light, continually falls upon the knights, healing their wounds at a visible rate. Holy Light Blessing grants all units a 20% physical damage reduction and gradual health regeneration. Dozens of massive griffins soar and circle high in the sky, their shrill cries cutting through the clouds. In this combat zone, called Kings Valley, the two armies emerge like two chess pieces thrown by an invisible hand, appearing at opposite ends of the vast plain at the same time. The first thing that catches the eye is a rolling wave of golden light. The cold, emotionless system notification cuts through the last trace of calm. A visible golden glow spills out from the holy contract, spreading outward like ripples, layer after layer covering the entire phalanx. The aura flows, infusing tenacity and vitality into every warrior. For the eternal glory of holy light, for the honor of our people, all units advance. The command booms like thunder across the sky, amidst the unified roar of the entire army. The frontline Templars slammed their heavy tower shields into the ground. Like loyal aerial sentinels, they traced perfect arcs, monitoring everything around the formation. This shield wall slowly, firmly advanced, each step carrying unshakable might. Behind them, snow-robed priests of the Holy Light raised ancient tomes, chanting solemn prayers. This was a king's host, an army upholding majestic righteousness. They showed no haste, advancing with a pace that suffocated the foe, like a slowly moving golden mountain, pressing toward the king's peak at the battlefield's heart. The live chat exploded instantly. Comments like, "This is the Legion's true army," flooded the screen, overwhelming. The clash of steel and earth burned dully. They were no longer berserkers with bolt guns, but terrifyingly efficient construction workers. The camera cut in a fast-paced montage, showing this absurd, shocking scene. Boom, boom, boom. A Thunder Warrior squad operated a small pneumatic pile driver, emitting deafening noise. The heavy alloy foundation was relentlessly hammered by this mechanical beast, as if driving stakes into a giant skull. Meter-long alloy piles sank deep into the ground, kicking up dirt and rubble. ZZZ, another SWAT warriors, wielded automatic rivet guns, spitting sparks, rapidly assembling half-meter-thick alloy barriers. Metal plates quickly interlocked in their hands, forming a sturdy parapet riddled with firing ports. This was preparation for meat grinder close combat. Meanwhile, the tech engineers Guheng had high hopes for, laid complex cable networks at the position center. Huge searchlights were erected in the mud, and several crude yet highly efficient. Cranes towered imposingly. In under 10 minutes, all viewers stared, dumbstruck, watching a fortress of brutal aesthetics, ugly yet radiating ultimate. Sturdiness thick shape, rising from a muddy battlefield. Am I seeing this right? On the judges' panel, Professor Suwon rubbed his eyes, his gaze behind his lenses filled with disbelief. He's building on site, more than building. General Hu's expression was unprecedentedly great. Hu's eyes flickered with an unusual light. He stared intently at the screen, as if trying to etch every detail into his mind. Look at his defensive layout, the precise angles of the firing ports, the optimal height of the parapet, the overlapping fields of fire for the heavy weapons. This is practically a textbook perfect. Defensive emplacement layout. He never intended to take the offensive from the start. The general's tone held a hint of ineffable admiration. At that very moment, the first direct contact on the battlefield erupted. The Holy Shield's Griffin Knights had already, poured of the delicious, looking down upon the seething construction site below, and the crude, ramshackle, metal fortifications that seemed like the legal construction. A flicker of aristocratic disdain passed through the lead pilot's eyes. Commander, enemy sighted. They're building a nest right where they stand. The pilot's slightly scornful report crackled over comms. Received. Daylight's voice came through, cold and sharp. Maintain distance. Initiate probing attacks. Use your lances to show. Those are height hands. Who truly owns the sky? For the holy light. Several Griffin Knights let out deafening war cries, guiding their mighty beasts. They dove like golden lightning from the heights, their knightly lances blazing, with a blinding, holy radiance, inched straight to the steel and concrete fortification below. But what awaited them was not the expected fear and chaos, but a prearranged waiting. Wall of death. A trap sprung for its prey. Anti-air fire teams, engage. Alight's voice was icy, devoid of any emotion, like tempered dark iron. 6 heavy bolters, their firing angles long set within the position, simultaneously raised their muzzles, roaring with fury. Muzzle flashes rumble. Boom, 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 boom. No need for prediction, nor for precise aim. Only an impenetrable wall of death, woven from countless explosive shells, each carrying devastating, kinetic energy and explosive filler. They tore through the air at a horrifying speed, weaving a lethal web across the sky. A Griffin Knight leading the charge. Didn't even have time to throw his holy imbued lance. His magnificent steed, the golden winged beast, was struck by 3 shells simultaneously. A thunderous explosion. Amidst the sword and mist of blood, the massive creature was instantly blown apart in midair, turning into a shower of blood and flesh mixed with golden feathers, while the knight plummeted like a puppet with its strings cut. Amidst a piercing shriek, his armor shattered, falling straight down from the sky. In just the first flash, 3 Griffin Knights and their mounts were blown apart, raining blood from above. The remaining knights were terrified. They instinctively yanked the reins, urging their beasts to climb higher, fleeing in disarray, desperately escaping that death-filled airspace. The first brief skirmish ended in a devastating defeat for the Holy Shield. Aerial superiority proved utterly fragile and laughable against the Empire's overwhelming firepower. After repelling the threat from skies, the Empire's construction didn't stop, instead escalating into an even grander, more frenzied second phase. Those cranes once mocked by all spectators as crude and amateurish now rumbled to life, with a deep, low growl. Their massive booms reached toward the sky, precisely hoisting giant steel segments, prefabricated in transport ships, massive and heavy as bridges. Then, to the bewildered gaze of every spectator, these structures extended from the Empire's main fortress, stretching toward the hill called King's Peak, connecting segment by segment. He's not building a fortress at all, Professor Suwon stared at the forming structure that defied all logic, lips slightly parted, murmuring indistinct syllables. He's building a bridge. No, General Hu suddenly rose from his seat, his lean frame trembling slightly from intense excitement and awe, eyes locked on the screen, as if witnessing something beyond his era. That's no bridge. He stared intently at the screen, swallowing hard before uttering each word. That's an arms ramp, reaching straight to the mountaintop. He's abandoned conventional assaults, abandoned mobility, using the sturdiest fortifications, bristling with firepower, in the most brutal, direct manner. He'll pave a path from his own position right up to the peak. On screen, that steel ramp embodying dark aesthetics and industrial punk vibes. Advanced and unstoppable, almost insane pace, amidst wild roaring, surging savagely towards the King's Peak. Each section of the ramp blade was like a beast challenge to the mountain itself. On the other end of the plain, Commander Valete of the Holy Shield witnessed a scene so absurd and terrifying it defied all his years of military experience. His face turned ashen. He knew if he let the enemy build like this any longer, this trial, once a symbol of glory, would lose all dignity. Their advantage would be crushed. Before this steel tide, he had to make a choice now. In the footage, The Holy Shield's commander, Valete, looked grim. He watched that ramp like a black beetle, extending section by section towards the King's Peak's flank. Sweat ebbed his palms, pointing nails. A stinging sensation shot from his fingertips, jolting his nerves. This was shame. Utter humiliation. Valete was cornered, pushed to the brink by an unheard-of construction tactic. He foresaw, once that damned road reached the summit, this contest would devolve into an undignified siege. His knights would face a doomed slaughter. On that narrow, fire-power-dense steel corridor, a brief struggle raged in Baylight's heart. He drew his command sword. Its tip no longer pointed at the mountain, but swung around, aiming at the distant steel fortress, roaring with immense clamor. Steam rose, dust swirled, like a giant beast being forged. Knights Templar, all units, be my command, target, enemy position. Fight for the holy light. Charge for glory. With a war cry that shook the earth. That golden bulwark, which had been advancing slowly, erupted completely at this moment. All Templars dropped their heavy tower shields. They gripped their greatswords with both hands. Their formation shifted from an impenetrable shield wall to an aggressive wedge formation. The knights became a golden arrow ready to be loosed. Its tip aimed straight into the distance, amidst the near-frenzied chants of blessing from the holy light priests. This golden tide, forged of steel, driven by faith, and crowned with glory, began accelerating with astonishing violent speed. The earth trembled under their charge, as if struck by a giant hammer. In the live stream, every viewer's adrenaline spiked to the max. Full assault pending. The Holy Shield launches its all-out attack. Blood boils. This is a true knight's charge. Within the Imperial encampment, Centurion alike, through his powered helmet's sensory system, receives the real-time feed from the front. He watches the golden tide surging forth like a tsunami, his eyes betraying no ripple of emotion, calm as still water. He simply activates his internal calm, his voice low and steady, issuing a string of commands, word for word. All construction units continue operations. Do not stop. Defense line, heavy bolters switch to chastisement mode. Execute 3-stage suppression fire. Ensure continuous coverage. Defense line B, flamer squads, stand by. The moment the order is given, the war begins in earnest. Boom! The 6 heavy bolters deployed at the forefront begin their deafening roar. With a chillingly precise rhythm, they no longer seek precision strikes. Instead, they unleash countless explosive shells, a storm of steel upon the Templars' charge path. Tearing open a 100-meter-long kill zone before the knights. Only explosions and shrapnel exist there. The Templars leading the charge are instantly swallowed by this hellish barrage. The holy aura surrounding one knight, after withstanding 3 consecutive bolter blasts, lets out a groan of strain, shattering like fragile glass. Immediately after, the next shell strikes his breastplate unimpeded. Boom! With an earth-shaking roar, his armor of adamantium, thick enough to stop blades, along with his body, once blessed by the light, is instantly blasted into scattered gore and shrapnel. Yet, their comrades behind show no hesitation. Trampling over the remains and scorched earth, they roar in fury, pressing the charge. Light's barrier, the light priests in the rear ranks, begin chanting ancient hymns in unison. A massive, translucent barrier, glittering with golden crystal light, rises and stands firm before the knightly formation. Boom! Countless shells impact the barrier, exploding in brilliant flashes of light. But their force is completely blocked, unable to advance a single step further. Alike watches this scene, a predator's dangerous smile curling his lips. This is exactly the situation he anticipated. Sector B, execute purification. Whoosh! 2 30-meter-long streams of viscous fire, trailing waves of scorching heat, are precisely over the Imperial lines, like living tongues of flame, licked at the massive holy barrier. The fire itself couldn't breach its defense, but the tar-like gel fuel clung stubbornly to the barrier's surface. With a terrifying, frenzied intensity, it burned fiercely, sizzling, under the relentless energy onslaught. The holy barrier groaned under the strain, its surface glow visibly dimmed at an alarming rate, as if on the verge of total collapse. Witnessing this, Baylight's eyes burned with fury. He knew the barrier wouldn't hold much longer, but it was enough. His army had already closed within 50 meters of the Imperial lines. Just as everyone braced for a brutal melee, a sudden, critical change occurred. The armed ramp, long extended halfway up the mountainside, and largely ignored as mere scenery, emitted a sharp, mechanical clack. Dozens of black apertures sprang open on flank like eyes waiting beasts. The next instant, devastating crossfire erupted from these side holes. Like sides of death, it poured mercilessly into the flank of the charging shield formation. Boom! This was no ordinary rifle fire. It was the roar of dozens of heavy bolters, hidden deep within the ramp structure, manned by Thunder Warrior heavy support squads. The formation, focused entirely on the wall, had its vulnerable flank completely exposed to certain death. The shield formation's right wing was instantly shredded. Flesh and blood flew as their ranks dissolved in chaos. On the battlefield, Valete watched his army descend into chaos and collapse. His eyes were completely bloodshot. He had lost. The moment he chose a head-on charge, he had marched straight into the engineer's trap. But he still had one last card. He looked up towards the high sky, and with every ounce of strength, let out a roar of despair and madness. Griffin Knights, at any cost, destroy that damn bridge. Baylight's scream echoed, crashing and rebounding off the canyon walls of Kings Valley. It carried the weight of his doomed legion and shattered honor. High above, sparse golden specks. The last few dozen Griffin Knights remained. They heard the commander's desperate order. They gripped their cold lances tightly. Their mouths beneath them let out uneasy whinnies. But in the knight's eyes, there was no fear, no hesitation. Only a resolve to charge into the flames for the holy light. Golden trails tore across the sky as they wheeled their mounts. The great beast's wings screamed in the airstream. They turned with grim resolve toward that steel ramp that defiled the very name of war, and launched their final, desperate charge in the Imperial lines, on Centurion alike's tactical visor. Dozens of red dots, diving at breakneck speed, flashed urgent warnings. His voice betrayed no emotion, as if stating a simple fact. Anti-air teams switched to extermination mode. Fire. In that moment, every heavy bolter deployed on the ground bastions and armed ramps, their barrels glowing red-hot, ramped their rate of fire to the absolute limit. Boom! The previous anti-air fire net had gaps. Now, the density of the fire net surged. Countless explosive shells interwove as they climbed, sealing that airspace completely, creating a boiling storm of steel. Under the Holy Light's final protection, the Griffin Knights plunged into this hopeless storm. The first second, the three knights leading the charge, along with their mounts, were instantly shredded by the dense hail of fire into indiscernible pieces. The second, 5 more knights exploded midair, turning into bloody debris mixed with golden feathers. But the knights behind pressed on through their comrades' burning remains. Their eyes held only one goal: destroy that damned ramp. For glory, the valiant knight captain roared. He urged his griffin onward, forging ahead despite 3 bolter shells detonating at close range. He forced his way through the fire net. His mount was drenched in blood, one wing blasted clean off, letting out a cry of agony. His own breastplate was shattered, his lungs pierced by shrapnel, sustained only by a final wisp of holy light. But he broke through. He saw it, a critical support node on the steel ramp below, connecting it to the mountain rock face. A final light flared in his eyes. He hurled the lance, into which he had poured all his holy light power. Now, even beginning to burn, with the last of his strength, the lance became a beam of pure gold, carrying the will to purify everything, streaking toward that support node. However, in the instant before the lance struck its target, a sudden change occurred. A faint, dangerous hum, a low, penetrating buzz on the pitch-black steel ramp's surface. Flickers of eerie blue electricity suddenly appeared. The next second, a translucent energy shield, shimmering like water, flashed across the ramp. The golden lance, capable of piercing dragon scales, infused with the knight's lifelong conviction. Upon touching the shield, its tip began to disintegrate. The holy light vanished. No explosion. It was simply, silently, devoured by that strange, interdimensional shield. At the judge's table, General Huayu's slightly leaning form froze solid at it. He stared intently at the fading blue flicker. His pupils contracted to pinpoints. A void shield. His voice was low, hoarse, filled with utter disbelief. Professor Suwin was also stunned. She watched Imperial engineers inside ramp, busily adjusting the complex energy core. I see. Those engineers and cranes he brought weren't just for repairing the road. He was using the construction inside that ramp, right on the battlefield, assembling a small, but strategically capable void shield projector. On the field, the Griffin Knight, who threw the final lance, stared dumbfounded at the scene. The light in his eyes rapidly dimmed. His life and his conviction drained away in that moment. Finally, he fell with his dead mount, plummeting towards the cold earth. With the last Griffin Knight's fall, the sacred shield civilization lost, all units capable of threatening the armed ramp. Balite stood at the mountain's base. He looked up at the steel monstrosity that had now paved its way directly over his head. Slowly, he loosed his grip on the razor. The metal blade clattered to the ground. Behind him, the surviving Templars silently laid down their weapons. Their honor, their faith, their supposedly impregnable shield formation were utterly and senselessly crushed. The recording's final scene, the steel ramp, a fusion of brutal aesthetics and industrial punk, finally reached the summit of the King's Peak. A Thunder Warrior carried a massive black war banner, emblazoned with lightning and eagle wings. He planted the banner firmly into the ground, the flag whipping in the gale. The wind howls. The showdown ends. Inside the live stream room, the previously boiling bullet comments vanish. Hundreds of millions of viewers at this moment fall into silence, a historic moment, as if throats were choked. Words seem utterly pale. To praise the victor, that number 9527, who used steel ramps and void shields to crush his opponent with an almost cheating industrial logic. This victory lacks any glory. He hid his fortress from start to finish, never engaging in a proper duel. So then, to pity the loser? Yet, the rigid knightly code of the Holy Shield civilization, before the Empire's brute force engineering, seems so stiff, so laughable. The second micro-season has concluded, initiating third micro-season. Development theme announced. The first voyage, the ocean's end, universal interpretation. When your civilization achieves continental unification, the vast ocean becomes the new frontier. How will you develop navigation technology? Explore and conquer other continents on your home planet. Completing the first step toward globalization, in the stream room, everyone's gaze instinctively refocused on Gu Hang's screen, number 9527. The same question arose in everyone's mind. Civilization obsessed with infrastructure, facing the boundless ocean. What solution will he come up with? He can't just fill in the sea, can he? Gu Hang looked at this new theme, then at his resource account, once again flush from the settlement. A smile appeared on his face, one only he understood, tinged with a certain malice. He opened the Human Empire civilization blueprint. His gaze did not land on any conventional nodes related to or typical engineering. In his view, relying on wood and canvas, and trusting fate to capricious winds. That's the prayer of the weak, not the Empire's way. His vision locked directly onto engineering. Very violently touched a node that is earned great, actively innovation, and unlocking large structural mechanics. An exclusive level. Node. Its icon, a menacing metal silhouette. Exclusive derivative node, land cruiser. Description, construct a massive war fortress akin to a moving mountain range. It possesses the ability to traverse oceans and rugged terrain. Warning, resource consumption is extremely high. Movement speed is extremely slow. Technical difficulty is extremely high. Exclusive derivative node, engineering, land cruiser, unlock condition. Complete global unification theme. Master large-scale structural mechanics. Master primitive nuclear fusion technology. Engineering branch requirement. 10,000 development resource points. 10,000. That sum felt like an invisible hammer, striking the hearts of countless viewers. The amount was staggering, even for the top teams. It would take a long time to save up that much. Gu Hang checked his account. His newly settled resources totaled less than 2,000. He felt briefly silent, his brow furrowed, mentally calculating the huge deficit on the judges' panel. Lynchwell also stared at Gu Hang's blueprint interface. Land cruiser. She gasped softly, her voice tinged with confusion and shock. What is this? A moving mountain? What is he trying to do? Professor Sewin calmly adjusts his glasses, pointing at the data analysis on the screen. He can't do anything. Look at the resource cost. 10,000 points. The resources he has now aren't even a fraction. This project is impossible for him now. Admiral Hui didn't speak, just frowned deeply, his gaze sharp. He understood this young man's style. He wouldn't set his sights on an unattainable goal. Sure enough, the next second, Gu Heng's action made everyone gasp in shock. This time, he didn't hesitate at all. He clicked again on the negative trait option, glowing red at the screen's edge. Engineering. He selected the negative trait. Engineering branch. Resource depletion. Engineering branch effect. Some rare mineral veins in your homeworld are declared depleted. Related resource output is permanently halved. Reward: 5,000 Genesis points. He was selected a negative trait. Political turmoil. Within your civilization, the rebellion risk in conquered regions is permanently increased by 30%. Reward: 4,000 Genesis points. He's insane. Professor Sewin stood up in the live stream for the first time, losing his composure. His voice held incredulous anger, almost shouting. He's committing suicide. Resource output halved. Rebellion risk increased. That's a slow death. Is it worth it for an impractical giant? Gu Heng answered that question with his actions. Worth it. His gaze was firm, unwavering. He traded 2 deadly negative traits for 9,000 Genesis points. Then, he poured every last bit of his resources, holding nothing back, all at once into that node that previously seemed impossibly distant. Command: consume 10,000 points. Land cruiser. Note: Gu Heng confirmed operational. Contestant 9527 has chosen the land cruiser. It is a node that has drained the nation's strength and manpower. In the judges panel, Professors Su Win and Lin Shui exchanged a silent look. For the first time, from this iron-blooded civilization that knew only conquest and destruction, they caught a whiff of something tragic, something heroic. The scene shifts to the Empire Supreme's Engineering Academy. Chief Engineer He-Fei Sita was urgently summoned from his lab to the command center. Irritation from his interrupted research lingered on his face. But when his eyes fell upon the complete blueprint of the land cruiser projected on the holographic screen, every expression froze on his face. It was neither a ship nor a tank. It was a walking mountain of steel. Spanning 10 kilometers, its height pierced the clouds. Its structure was a precise interlock of billions of parts. Its hull mounted a macro-cannon array capable of turning cities to ash. And powering all this was a primitive, volatile, and wildly unstable nuclear reactor. It even had runways planned for small aircraft takeoff and landing. To build this land cruiser, tens of thousands of laborers stripped to the waist, foiled in the eternal darkness of underground mines. Their flesh and blood endured endless struggle under the electric prods and blaster muzzles of overseers. Sweat, blood, and rock dust mingled. Their eyes, long numb, were as dead as the mines themselves. One mine exhausted, an Imperial Guard convoy immediately herded them to the next. No rest, no tomorrow. Their lives were like the ore on conveyor belts. Just a cold statistic. Next, this ore smelted into a torrent of steel, flooded into once thriving cities. No more civilian goods were produced. All factory production lines were brutally cut and reconfigured under the engineer's command. New lines, solely for war, were forcibly established. Day and night, amidst deafening roars, they churned out precision parts whose purpose none knew. And the fuel driving this was the Empire's people. Conscription orders were issued. Millions were forced to bid farewell to their families, boarding massive transport vehicles. From above, they were a writhing gray flood from all corners of the Empire, converging on the colossal shipyard at the Continental Plate Junction. That would be their home and their grave. The entire empire has transformed into a furnace burning for a single purpose, forging an unprecedented, godlike titan of steel. On the judges' panel, Professor Sewin watches the hellish scene unfold, her face pale as paper. They're all insane. Every single person in this civilization. How complete that civilization so terrifying to treat, so blatantly treating human lives as expendable fuel. Can it truly survive? Extremism invites massive rebellion, causing the civilization to shatter completely into endless civil war. Such a civilization is almost always sentenced to death. When made past the early stages without rule, she doesn't believe the human empire will be an exception. After countless catastrophic failures, heart-wrenching explosions, and innumerable worker sacrifices, the moment arrived on a gloomy morning. The first keel of the land cruiser, a massive component like a black mountain, was slowly hoisted by dozens of giant cranes, their roar deafening, and finally settled onto the dock foundation. Boom! The instant the colossal keel met the base, the entire earth trembled violently. Within the dock, millions of laborers looked up in unison at that moment, erupting in earth-shattering cheers mixed with fanaticism, joy, and even relief. But in the very next instant, long-suppressed resentment burst forth like a flood. Machines fell silent, a deathly stillness, heavy and suffocating same. All cranes stopped. Huge steel claws hung midair, motionless. Conveyor belts halted. Piles of steel plates and parts lay untouched. Tens of thousands of laborers in gray burlap dropped their heavy tools, hammers, rivet guns, wrenches clattering to the ground. They stopped shouting and working, silently surging toward the giant keel, each face etched with exhaustion from overwork, the gnawing pangs of hunger and a rage held back too long. Now impossible to contain. A gaunt laborer, ribs starkly visible, was pushed to the front by the crowd. He staggered onto a huge part, extending a withered arm, his voice hoarse, roaring the pent-up grievance. We want to eat. Our wives and children are starving. His cry instantly ignited everyone's fury. We want to sleep. We are not cattle. We are people, not tools. We want to live. This most primal shout detonated the crowd. Chaos instantly swept the ship. Some laborers, driven completely mad, eyes red with hunger. He picked up the guy and started to hit things. A hammer smashed the steel plate. Sparks, they scream, directly to the Tyra Unified Law Enforcement team that came to suppress it. These law enforcement officers are wearing gray uniforms and helmets. The cold light behind the face armor. They are the pawns of the Imperial Order. Terra was a watchdog during the Unification War. She faced tens of thousands of desperate and angry civilians. They have so few hands. The electromagnetic stick in her hand, although it can corona people, but in front of the crowd, it doesn't help at all. Powered down one or two at a time. Immediately more people rushed up to tear up these symbols of order. The law enforcement team tried to pull the line of defense and were scattered, drowned by angry crowds. Seeing the land cruiser construction plan is completely over. In the face of this great crisis that can topple the regime, the Empire's top brass didn't do what everyone thought. To mobilize those already pitiful Thunder Warriors. These genetically modified killing machines. It's the sharp sword in the Emperor's hand. It's the conqueror of unified Terra. The The quantity is rare and will not be used easily. The high level did not send a large army to suppress it, which made many people wonder. They just put in a simple report. Drop it directly on the desk of the chief engineer, Ifeisi Toa. The report said just a few words about the labor rights. The project stopped. Ifeisi Toa, you gave me to find a way. This is not a question, but an order. Directly hit this hot potato directly on the Ifeisi Toa's face. The camera is now staring at the Ifeisi Toa's face. This rigorous engineer, by precise calculation and impeccable logic. It's a mixed bag at the Academy of Engineering, but now, months of sleepless work. It made him change his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot. He was exhausted. He has no more calculations in his eyes. There's no ethical concern. There's only one extreme thirst for efficiency, an almost insane paranoia. He looked at the lines of the report without anger or worry, as if looking at an ordinary technical parameters. He just calmly opens his workbench. Fingers fly fast on the control panel. A new report jumps to the holographic screen. Ifeisi Toa named it Labor Optimization Program. The root cause of riots is that these laborers have ideas. Thought brings tiredness, fear, and resistance. So to solve the problem thoroughly, what we need is not people who can think, but pure tools. The strike leader who was shouting earlier is now being held down by several enforcers, dragged away from the crowd. The crackdown came faster. And strange expected, a cloud of white smoke with a weirdly sweet smell silently enveloped the entire labor camp. As the smoke touched people, all rioters, including the leader, froze in place. The light left their eyes, their bodies swayed, and they fell silently to the ground. They piled into a silent, gray wall of bodies. All the laborers caught in the riot instantly lost consciousness, collapsing. All noise stopped. When he woke again, he found himself on a cold operating table. A surgical light cast a stark, white glow, leaving the room in dead silence. The air was thick with the stench of disinfectant and heavy oil. The place felt like a highly efficient slaughterhouse, suffused with the scent of death and steel. His limbs were locked in special, tough restraints. Several doctors in white robes stood around him. Red sensor lights glowed faintly on their faceplates. Their eyes were cold as ice, movements mechanical and precise. They radiated indifference. Beside them, various glowing mechanical arms and surgical tools were ready. He struggled to move, but his muscles were rigid, paralysis consuming him. He couldn't move a finger. He tried to scream, but no sound came, his throat filled with lead. He was acutely aware, his mind still present, but powerless to control his body. His helplessness was worse than death. Then, he saw a power-cutting blade gleaming coldly, with a low hum and a slight tremor. It slowly descended toward his skull. The hum was bone-chilling. The blade's edge reflected the stark light. The scene showed no gore. It detailed the entire procedure, with an utterly clinical lens. It felt more like a technical manual than a horror film. Its inherent cruelty was more terrifying than any graphic violence. The laborer's final consciousness felt only infinite terror and powerlessness. He saw the cold scalpels of the Mechanicus priests, glinting under the harsh light. A low hum signaled the power-cutting blade, moving at a speed hard to follow. It precisely sliced open his skull, not a brutal crack. Instead, it was surgical precision, avoiding all key nerves and vessels. The crack opened the fragile bone shell, dust hanging in the air, mixed with the smell of ozone and burnt blood. A tearing pain, but he couldn't scream. Blinding light stabbed his brain, then cold. Not physical cold, a cold deep in his consciousness. He vaguely felt delicate mechanical arms, tipped with electrodes finer than hair. Enter his brain. They precisely separated and removed the excess brain tissue. Independent thought and critical thinking, all were slowly scraped away. His anger, fear, hope, memories, all were slowly stripped. He wanted to scream, to fight back, but his body wouldn't obey. Then, he felt a violent tremor, as if something took root in his mind. It was the crucial frontal lobe, the highest center for human independent thought and emotion. Completely excised, that cut instantly nullified all his autonomous will, emotional fluctuations, and rebellious thoughts, robbing him utterly of his humanity, leaving only an empty shell with primal reflexes. More metal circuits, like a spider's web, replaced the original flesh and nerve tissue in his brain. They connected to a logic chip implanted deep in his skull, ensuring any future command would be transmitted directly, unimpeded, to his motor cortex. For absolute obedience. A sharp pain in his throat, the sound of flesh tearing, then the implant of cold metal. His original flesh and blood vocal cords were completely removed, to eliminate any potential for human speech. Finally, the limbs. He felt the screech of the cut, the searing pain of flesh tearing, then total numbness. His fragile flesh limbs were mercilessly severed. Cold, efficient cybernetic prosthetics were precisely attached. These prosthetics not only doubled strength, but could adapt to harsh environments, born for heavier, more dangerous tasks. His legs were replaced with agile treads, providing unparalleled mobility and stability. The entire process showed not a flicker of emotion. It radiated a cold, procedural, emotionless industrial aesthetic. This was less a surgery on a human, and more thorough optimization and upgrade of the component, all to make it more efficient, and better integrated into the Empire's vast machine. When this long, inhumane operation finally comes to an end, that once furious rebel leader, he is completely gone. What remains now is an empty-eyed mechanical servant. A brand new serial number is branded into his chest right at this moment. Labor Unit Servitor 001. At the end of the footage are thousands upon thousands of servitors, manufactured just like assembly line products. Their joints let out clicking mechanical clatters, as they are endlessly sent back into that giant dockyard, silently, with a bizarre yet highly efficient posture. They move their signposts. Their mechanical arms lift heavy loads with perfect precision. Their treads roll over the ground without sound. Work efficiency is 3 times higher than that. They work the hardest, most dangerous jobs nonstop for 14 hours straight. They never feel tired, they never feel fear, and they can never form any thoughts of their own. The entire construction site has returned to its usual bustling work scene. But this time, there are no cheers, there's no sweat, and not a single trace of the breath of living people. All that exists is a low rumble of meshing gears, and a shrill screech of metal objects colliding, echoing through the enormous dockyard, sending chills down one's spine. The Empire, this colossal war machine, at this very moment, with this dead, utter harmony and extraordinary efficiency, has reached the peak of its operation, up in the judge's gallery. Professor Sue stares fixedly at this scene. Her body shakes uncontrollably, every hair on her body standing on end. Her eyes are filled with terror. and an unimaginable pain. She tries to speak, but her throat feels like it's being crushed by an invisible hand. She cannot utter a single word. Her chest feels tight as her boulders press down. In the end, Admiral Hull breaks the silence. His voice is heavy, carrying a low resonance like it comes from deep underground. It has solved the problem indeed. In Huyu's voice, there is an unprecedentedly complex emotion, hoarse and low. It holds approval for this efficiency, yet far more than that. It holds sorrow and disgust. The clouds over the dock gather and disperse. Rain and snow alternate. The years slip rapidly by. But that enormous construction site never stops working, not once. In the 40th millennium warhammer, human lives are just a spindle material. Only steel is eternal. 100-meter wide heavy track plates are laid across the frozen soil. They are alloys forged from recycled steel, taken from an entire city. Every time a track plate settles, the ground trembles. Cranes lift adamantine plates larger than buildings and slam them heavily on the frame. Thousands of servitors wield pneumatic rivet guns, working densely like maggots clinging to a corpse. Sparks fly everywhere. The roar of rivet guns is so thick it sounds like a pouring rainstorm. One twin-linked macro cannon after another rises from the underground artery. Its bore is so wide that a tank could fit through it. Workers weld them firmly onto the deck's backbone. Gun barrels point straight at the sky to feed these money-devouring behemoths. The last civilian power plant in the entire empire is torn down. All copper cables are melted down to make turret drive shafts. The camera glides down the barrel and deep into the giant's body, where an extremely unstable plasma reactor is wrapped in countless cooling pipes. Pale blue arcs of electricity crackle wildly across the campuses, emitting a teeth-gritting low hum. The counter readings bounce wildly in the red zone. Heat-faced Etoile stands in the control room, staring fixedly at that blue glow through the blast-proof glass. His face is long unrecognizable. Half his cheek was burned by radiation and replaced with a red bionic prosthetic eye. He presses his mechanical hand on the ignition switch. Ignition. His voice is raspy, like scraping metal. A deep, dull roar rumbles out. The reactor is activated. Raging energy surges through thick cables to every part of the giant. The entire mountain of steel trembles, and every indicator light flashes on instantly. Like a giant beast opening thousands of eyes, the scene cuts to a morning years later. A blizzard still howls outside. The gates of that long-shuttered dry dock slowly open over an ear-splitting screech of grinding metal. A long, deep-horn blast blares out, tearing through the raging snowstorm. That colossus creeps out little by little from the darkness. It is not a ship, nor is it a vehicle. It is a crawling steel hive on the ground. The Mount Mover-class, super-heavy mobile fortress. Its tracks grind over the earth. Rocks shatter, ice splinters. Every step it takes forward makes the ground shake 3 times. The camera pulls back and locks on the bow, which rises steep as a cliff. And right at its feet, that dense crowd of servitors still toil away. None of them even look up at the monster they built with their own hands. Third micro-season development period, historical footage ends. Dead silence falls over the judge's panel. No one speaks. Everyone is stunned by that enormous machine. This brutal beauty, this extreme disregard for life, this pure, raw industrial power, shocks the nerves of every modern person. After a long while, Suwin finally speaks, her voice terribly hoarse. He did it. She stares at the screen, her expression complicated. With this method that no one dared even imagine, he actually built this thing. But what was the cost? To build this abomination. The Empire's average life expectancy dropped 15 years. Agriculture collapsed. Light industry was completely wiped out. He sacrificed all the people, only leaving parts behind. Huyu says nothing this time. He just stares at that land battleship. There's something extra in his gaze. Others still feel powerful ships across the sea. He directly created a moving piece of land. Strategically speaking, this move is brilliant. He doesn't need to adapt to the environment. He transforms currently calculated around 4 based on current favorites. Survivability, 35 points. On the brink of collapse. Potential, 30 points at a dead end. Self-consistency, 100 points, perfect. Originality, 100 points, epic. Adaptability, 100 points, perfect. After weight adjustment, this round's comprehensive score, 94.5 points. Another frighteningly high score. The live stream chat explodes. This works. Isn't this fascism? Upstairs, this is the wasteland. Survival is the hard truth. This big vehicle is too cool. I finally see it. 95-27 doesn't treat people as people. You treat them as resources. Third micro-season development phase ends. Entering the showdown phase. Matching opponent. Match found. New opponent's profile pops up on screen. The style shifts abruptly. A wave of damp, sticky aura hits you. The air seems to fill with the foul stench of seawater. Opponent. Rank 1518. Deep Sea Whisper. Civilization type. Heterogeneous supernatural. Core traits. Flesh mutation. Psionic control. Deep sea progeny. Common tactics. Water source pollution. Subspace corruption. Summon deep sea behemoths. No land in sight. Only a stretch of dead black water. Then, the camera captures things defined biological sense. Not normal sea creatures. Proliferating eyeballs and translucent mucus. They drift in the deep sea like clumps of flesh rotted in formaldehyde. Their nest. Lalai. A city built from living coral and behemoth bones. Its architecture shows a nauseating geometric form, like the dream of some mad deity. When encountering hostile aquatic civilizations, these progeny vibrate their vocal organs collectively, emitting a silent whisper transmitted through water. This infrasound penetrates eardrums, resonating with the brain. On screen, enemy crab warriors in heavy armor suddenly go berserk. In extreme terror, they tear off their own shells, dig out their comrades' hearts with claws, or undergo irreversible, horrific mutations. Flesh dissolves and reforms, becoming part of the deep sea whisper. Finally, a moving island-like, tentacle-covered giant sea monster rises from the trench depths. It lets out a roar. Even through the screen, its soul-shaking impact causes a moment of panic. Guhang strokes his chin, a cold smile curling his lips. Cthulhu style. Subspace corruption. This is way more fun than chopping up those tin cans. On the official livestream feed, the director displayed both sides profiled side by side. On the left, rivets, gears, and the industrial violence of multi-rivet steam iron. On the right, slime, tentacles, whispers, and the unspeakable dread of the deep sea. Two wildly different aesthetics collided on screen, creating a strong sense of physiological discovery. A system prompt chimed in timely. The dual phase has begun. Scenario generated. Lighthouse on the misty sea. Battlefield environment. The endless polluted sea. Environmental trait. Seawater contains high concentrations of warped psychic contamination energy. All non-native units must continuously pass willpower checks. Failures will fall into confusion, fear, or mutation. Victory condition. Capture and light the ancient lighthouse at the sea center within a time limit. Guhang glanced at the scenario. The cold amusement in his eyes deepened as he opened the force deployment interface. Everyone stared at the screen, wondering how he'd break the deadlock. Would he buy expensive psychic disruptors? Or equip his troops with disposable mind protection helmets? However, Guhang's next move once again ground common sense into the dirt. In his arsenal, besides Thunder Warriors, was a newly completed Mountain Mover land cruiser. But he only kept a minimal squad of Thunder Warriors as internal security, tasked with executing any servitors that might go mad. Forget psychic protection gear. He didn't even bring extra bolter rounds. Next, he ordered all the background, plus every resource squeezed from civilian labor in his account, all into one core module of the Mountain Mover. Engine room module modification, primitive nuclear reactor, forced overload mode, modification description, remove all safety valves, cooling limiters, and radiation shielding layers. Allow the reactor to run at 300% critical power for a short time. Thermal output reaches theoretical maximum. Warning, this operation constitutes severe tech heresy. The reactor core will suffer permanent thermal melt damage. Core meltdown probability, 99%. Modification complete. Propellant storage modification complete. Propellant storage, dedicated zero. Industrial grade, heavy, liquid nitrogen coolant. Thousands of tons of coolant were pumped into storage tanks, with pipes directly connected to the reactor's heat vents. The scene cut to Deep Sea Whisper's preparation room. Their navigator was a pale-faced, sunken-eyed young man. At this moment, he stared at the massive steel fortress on the tactical map, letting out a nervous chuckle. Send the thralls down. Let them cling to his hull like barnacles. Let the whispers seep through that thick iron shell. Let those tin cans tear each other apart in fear. Drive their operators insane, shut down their own engines, and awaken Kalakan. Drag that dead iron coffin and its pathetic logic down into the abyss. Cut back to Guhang. The setup's done. He slumps in his chair, waiting for the show to start, watching the eerie, ghostly black sea on the screen. A witty grin spreads across his face, like a kid with a magnifying glass, ready to burn an entire anthill. He doesn't wait for the enemy to make the first move. The moment the countdown hits 0, he patches into the bridge comms of the Mountain Mover. The He-Facey Toa, now a half-machine monstrosity. He issues a death order. Unit. Mountain Mover. Execution mode. Reactor forced overload. Coolant injection valves. Full open. Target. Battle center. Ancient lighthouse coordinates. Heat exchange system. Reverse operation. Mission objective. Boil that sea dry. In the Deep Sea Whisperer's ready room, the pale, sunken-eyed navigator stares intently at the holographic sand table. His lips part, revealing jagged yellow teeth. A sticky growl rasps from his throat. It begins. Let the whispers spread with the currents. Turn those tin cans' brains to mush. The sea of endless pollution. On screen, the black water, shrouded in eternal mist, begins to seethe and rise. This isn't a physical boil, but a psychic agitation. Invisible abyssal ripples, centered on the lighthouse, frantically spread outward. This is the Deep Sea Whisperer's racial trait, environmental corruption. They force a mind poison of maddening whispers into the water's molecular structure. The entire sea ceases to be water. It becomes a vast, liquid psychic prison. Any non-native creature stepping into these waters will hear the call of the abyss within seconds. Their sanity shattering, becoming mindless killers. The intensity of this psychic assault exceeds the limits of mortal will. Even elite stormtroopers with psychological training won't last 10 minutes in the sea without a psychic stabilizer. All eyes instantly snap to the coastline. The steel behemoth docked on the frozen earth, the Mountain Mover, lies as still as a dead volcano. On its cliff-like towering black hull, rivets glisten with frost and the biting wind. Its massive treads sink deep into the muck, seemingly rusted in place. Just as everyone expects it to act like a conventional warship, the engine starts, clumsily sliding into the sea, in order to find all naval warfare common sense, through Guhang's neural link, directly blasted into the battleship's logic core. Highest directive, Mountain Mover, execute protocol, target locked, ancient lighthouse coordinates at battlefield center, tactical maneuver, reactor forced overload, heat exchange system reversed, full power discharge, operation guidelines, heat the seawater in that area to boiling point. In the footage, Mountain Mover gives its answer. A roar deeper than any before. The terrifying boom explodes from deep within the beast's chest. It's the agonized scream of the primal fusion reactor. After all safety valves are forcibly removed, machine surgeries, no groans. The entire steel mountain begins violently trembling, as if ready to disintegrate at any moment. On both hull sides, 48 massive heat sink grills over 10 meters wide snap open simultaneously. Thick, magma-like high-temperature plasma exhaust gushes out, instantly turning the surrounding permafrost into glass, staining the fog an ominous blood red. Then, under everyone's stunned gaze, this moving continent doesn't enter the water. It simply adjusts its hydraulic suspension, lowering its cliff-like bow slightly. Beneath the bow, the massive emergency pressure release board, over 100 meters wide, designed for heat venting, aims directly at the sea ahead. There lies the Deep Sea Kin's densest ambush zone. Ignition, boom, an indescribably thick, blinding white light beyond the red spectrum shoots out. Not a laser, but pure plasma torrent. At thousands of degrees, barely contained by magnetic fields, carrying the laws of physics that annihilate everything. It crashes into the icy black sea like divine punishment. Sizzle. No explosion, because vaporization outpaces detonation. Only an expanding field of blinding white, like a death flower blooming on the sea surface. Starting from Mountain Mover, a boiling path hundreds of meters wide, an unstoppable speed, madly extends toward the ocean's heart. Thermodynamic laws reveal their most brutal aspect here. Wherever it passes, seawater violently churns and boils, instantly turning to white mist. The sea level visibly drops, revealing charred, cracked seabed smoking below. The deep sea can lurking in shallow waters, ready to ambush, face utter annihilation. Their prized biological force fields are meaningless before physical heat. Not even time to scream. Their bodies, made of mucus and soft tissue, were instantly boiled and carbonized. Tentacles curled in the boiling water. Snap! Eyeballs burst under the high temperature and pressure, spewing murky fluid. Their translucent bodies turned into dead gray, cooked meat, emitting a nauseating, fishy stench. More deadly was the psychic contamination dissolved in the water. This contamination needs a medium. On this battlefield, the medium was water. And now, the water is gone. In the face of this absolute violence of physical law, those eerie whispers didn't even create a ripple. They were utterly erased with the evaporation of the sea. Without skin, broken hair attached, in the ready room of the Deep Sea Whisperer, the navigator, who moments before wore a look of sickly confidence, now clutched the edge of the console with a death grip. He didn't even notice his nails breaking. On the holographic screen, the white path of death extending relentlessly towards his holy ground was reflected in his pupils, shrunk to pinpoints. Impossible. Trembling, he tried to re-establish the psychic link. Attack. Make the followers attack. Drag that ship down. He roared the command, but the only response was a dead silence of severed signals. The deep sea Leviathan Kalakan had just extended a tentacle when the scalding, boiling water forced it back into the abyss, letting out a shrill cry of agony. His prized home field advantage is psychic contamination. His army of followers, in the face of the other's unreasonable, cataclysmic industrial violence, seemed so laughable, so fragile. The deep-sea whisper's ready room was deathly silent. Only the cold light of the holographic screen illuminated the navigator's face, pale as paper. On the screen, the white line representing extreme high temperature. Under the sea at 3 knots, unstoppable, heading straight for his headquarters. His fingers trembled. His nails dug deep into the alloy edge of the console. How could mere mortal iron defeat the great abyss? A broken roar tore from his throat. His eyes bulged. Bloodshot veins spreading like spiderwebs. Reason snapped completely at this moment, replaced by desperate, all-or-nothing fanaticism. He slammed his fist onto a crimson rune on the console. Then we died together. Offer everything to the abyss. Awaken. Kulaken. Deep sea. Lalai ruins. The instant the command was issued, this city of twisted corals and giant animal skeletons came alive. Tens of thousands of followers ceased their wandering. Their lidless eyes flipped in unison, gazing towards the bottomless trench fissure at the city center. Without hesitation, without sorrow, they began to disintegrate. Remote sounds of flesh and blood tearing apart echoed through the sea. Tentacles severed, bones liquefied. Tens of thousands of tons of biomass instantly turned into thick, foul-smelling, dark green slurry flowing with the ocean currents and pouring madly into that fissure. This was the purest flesh and blood sacrifice, a life for a life. Blood to summon a god. The sea surface battlefield. The calm sea suddenly exploded. Not waves. The seabed was rising. The island reef with the ancient lighthouse, the victory objective, stood. Amidst the grating sound of rock layers fracturing, began to surge upward frantically. Seawater cascaded like a waterfall from the black rock. Seismic wave anomaly on the judge's panel. Suin stared at the data screen, pupils constricting sharply. It's that island moving. Admiral Hoyu leaned forward, gaze sharp as an eagle's. That's no island. As the island reef fully surfaced, everyone saw the thing's true form. It was a head covered in barnacles, wrinkles, and countless tightly shut giant eyes. It was immense, so large that the exposed part alone blotted out half the sky. Then, the sea surface was completely torn apart. Boom! 8 thick, pillar-like tentacles burst from the water, madly slapping the sea surface. The suckers on each tentacle were larger than a tank. Inside the suckers, dense rows of keratinous teeth opened and closed in the air, emitting sharp cracking sounds. An ancient Titan-level being.
The deep-sea old god, Kulaken. It had awakened.
A terrifying aura from an ancient predator instantly swept across the entire field. The live feed's image even developed snow-like static interference. Amidst biological force field, Gu Hang sat in the command chair, watching the monster that almost filled the screen. He showed no fear, only a cold assessment in his eyes. Biological index off charts. Their base thickness approximately 3 meters. No void shield detected. In the image, Kulaken opened an eye. It was a turbid, malevolent yellow giant eye. It stared fixedly at the steel mountain, emitting intense heat ahead. The mountain mover. It sensed the threat. The behemoth opened its abyssal maw. Deep in its throat, the dark green psychic light began to gather frantically. The surrounding space began to distort. The smell of ozone filled the air. It was charging a shriek powerful enough to shatter an entire fleet. The mountain mover didn't obey, didn't activate shields. It merely adjusted its hydraulic suspension. With a heavy metallic clang, the bow dipped slightly. Beneath the bow, the 100-meter diameter, the heat vents were spewing infernal temperatures, locked onto Kulaken's mouth as it charged up. Range, 800 meters. Fire in solution, locked. ZZZ, boom. A blinding white light shot out, brighter than the sun. Not a laser, but a torrent of plasma exhaust. Temperatures reaching thousands of degrees Celsius. It carried the unstoppable fury of thermodynamics, pouring directly into Kulaken's throat. The psychic scream was choked off, replaced by a wet, sickening, and utterly horrifying crack. Superheated fluid raced down its esophagus, instantly burning through its fragile head. Body fluids boiled and vaporized instantly. Immense steam pressure built up with no escape. Kulaken's mountain-sized body suddenly swelled like an overinflated balloon. Veins bulged beneath its skin, glowing and eerie red. Its internal organs were cooking from within. Its eyeballs exploded under the heat and pressure, spraying murky fluid. Superheated steam shot from every pore and wound,
emitting piercing shrieks.
Cooked from the inside in just 3 seconds. This ancient god, newlywed, the last hope of the deep sea whispers, couldn't even launch a proper attack. Its body went rigid. Its flailing tentacles went limp, crashing into the boiling sea, sending waves everywhere. The pungent smell of burnt protein seemed to fill the air, invading everyone's nostrils. It was dead, transformed into a massive, charred mountain of flesh, floating on the boiling sea. Combat ended. The massive bow of the mountain mover ruthlessly pushed aside ancient cosmos. Its treads crushed the soft tentacles, rumbling toward the now-grilled lighthouse. The hatch opened. A thunder warrior in power armor strode out. He stepped onto the scorched rock, plunging the black battle standard, emblazoned with a double-headed eagle, into the lighthouse base. Sparks flew as metal struck stone. Victory! Assistant Promchon. Gu Hang leaned back in his chair, allowed a long sigh, reaching for his coffee. But just as his fingers touched the cup, his personal terminal flashed a glaring crimson warning. Warning. Mountain Mover's original nuclear reactor detected. Heat exchange conduits experiencing large-scale meltdown. Reactor containment wall structural thermal damage assessment complete. Power system durability permanently reduced by 50%. Risk of total failure imminent. Gu Hang's hand froze midair. He stared at the alarming red text. The smile slowly faded from his face. Gu Hang fixed his eyes on the tactical terminal. Data streams flickered at an unnerving frequency. Red alert glow reflected on his weary face. No comical pop-ups, just cold, brutal damage reports. Warning. Reactor core critical. Magnetic containment field. Plasma leakage at 30%. Power core structural meltdown probability, 49%. The steel behemoth that moments ago raged like divine wrath now emitted agonizing metallic groans, the lament of thousands of tons of adamantium and ceramite quenching. Massive heat vents no longer spewed fury, but oozed viscous coolant instead. Gu Hang's voice turned hoarse. For those 3 minutes of physical transcendence, he exhausted 10 years of this land cruiser's lifespan. The mountain mover now lay as expensive scrap on the coastline, beyond a few still functional cannons. It couldn't move an inch, yet he felt no regret. In the Warhammer universe, victory is the only currency. Win, and scrap can be reforged. His fingers danced across the mechanical keyboard, inserting new commands into the logic engine's core protocols. Task: force cool reactor core. Priority: maximum. Note: sacrifice secondary conduits to preserve the core. Just then the closing bells of the arena came as expected. Third micro-season dual period concluded. Settlement complete. Base points 10. Tier advantage bonus 8. Win streak reward 4. Total acquired 22 civilization tier points. Guheng glanced at his profile. Current tier bronze 5. He switched to the global rankings. Finger scrolling through dense lists of IDs. Guheng rank 1655. Steady climb. The deep sea whisper he physically transcended. ID now faded to heavily gray. Such is dark forest law. Winner takes all. Losers leave no trace. He stared at the top ranks. Those monsters who, like him, were once bronze, now displayed glaring silver status markers. The vanguard already ascends to higher dimensions. Rumors even speak. Rank number 1, Celestial Vault Capital, has begun deploying a preliminary Dyson swarm within their star system. Admiral Hu gazed at the Dead Sea, still steaming, and littered with the charred corpses of ancient gods, delivering his final verdict. In the face of an absolute energy level disparity, fancy tactics are a joke. Before his words faded, the bell for the new season rang. A grand holographic projection unfolded in every contestant's cockpit. The 4th micro-season begins. New development theme. First gaze. The call to sky. Description. The continents are settled. The oceans are calm. Gravity is both a cradle and shackle. Please develop aerospace technology. Explore and conquer your home planet satellite. The live stream exploded instantly. Space race is here. This is way beyond the syllabus. We were just playing post-apocalyptic punk, and now we fast-forwarded straight to StarCraft. What about the guy with the land cruiser? That thing of his is broken down. Guheng looked at the new theme on the screen, then glanced out the window at the mountain mover billowing black smoke, like a lifeless corpse. Finally, his gaze fell on his own massive human empire tech tree. At the top of the genetic engineering branch was a gray node. Project Acitate, Astartes, prerequisite, occupy the moon, obtain lunar genetic core data. In the history of the unification wars on Holy Terra, it was by conquering the moon and subjugating the gene clans there that the Emperor obtained the key technology to mass produce Astartes. Without the moon, without Acitate, there would be no Death Legion to sweep across the galaxy. He pulled up the mountain mover schematics, ignoring the reactor damage warning glowing red-black. His finger drew a circle in the center of the magnificent mobile city. He was planning a new module state. It wasn't a runway, not a landing pad, nor a conventional space launch center. He called up the power lines for the macro cannon array, forcibly cutting them. He called up the overload interface for the void shield generator, connecting it to the main keel. Finally, at the tail end of that blueprint, he added 12 sets of shockingly massive solid fuel boosters, originally intended for planetary scale mining demolition. Hu stared intently at the screen, his atoms apple bobbing. This general, accustomed to life and death, now felt a surge of absurd shock. He doesn't want to build a ship. His ship is too slow. What's turn out? That hundreds of thousands ton land cruiser, directly into a rocket aimed at the moon. The live chat explodes instantly, driving a mountain to the moon. That's not how orbital mechanics works. Hey buddy, you're trying to reason with a madman. He just boiled an old god in a soup using thermodynamics. Guheng can't hear the noise. He slumps in the command chair, his gaze piercing through the holographic screen. Out the window on the coastline, the mountain mover lies like a gutted leviathan, silent in the permafrost. Reactor offline. Heat vents no longer spew steam. Only a few black tendrils of smoke linger in the bitter wind. It's scrap metal. But to Guheng, scrap has its uses. He opens the human empire's vast, sprawling tech tree. His finger glides past aeronautics, orbital shuttles, life support systems. All standard aerospace nodes are locked and grayed out. His focus settles on the pinnacle of the genetic engineering branch, the Acitate project. Astartes, core prerequisite, occupy the moon, subjugate the Silenia gene clan, acquire gene seed mass production tech. That's the key. Without the moon's genetic secrets, his Thunder Warriors are just flashing, disposable cannon fodder. Only by seizing it can the Empire's angels truly be born. A cold, mad smile touches Guheng's lips. Why build ships? Ships are too slow. His fingers fly across the tactical terminal. A project blueprint titled Operation Aquila is force loaded into the system. He ignores the mountain mover's crimson black damage reports. He severs all non-essential power lines. All energy is funneled into a single conduit. Then, on the mountain mover's grand spine, he designs a brutally simple module, not a delicate launch gantry, but a massive, vertical railgun welded from high-strength adamantium. Activating the orbital delivery platform is just step 1. His finger slides to a complementary subnode. Subnode, boarding torpedo. Tech description, a primitive suborbital assault vehicle. Power plant removed. Navigation and return system stripped. Only impact-absorbing gel and a single-use attitude for us to remain. Tactical use, gains initial velocity from external kinetic force, ramming into enemy vessels or planetary surfaces, injecting assault troops into the target zone. Crew survival rate, extremely low, only for units with Superman-level physiological tolerance. The live stream fell dead silent. If boiling the sea was tactical madness, then this boarding torpedo is an ethical crime against humanity. Stuffing people into torpedoes, packing soldiers into cans, and firing them out like shells. This is treating humans as less than human. Human space was distress, no hesitation, no mercy. We're confirmed. Proceed with. Factories at full capacity. Objective, complete retrofitting within 3 days. 4th micro-season. Historical simulation officially begins. Scene switch. No bustling construction, only grim preparations. This is the assembly plaza inside the mountain mover. The air reeked of machine oil, rust, and a faint stench of decay. 5,000 Thunder Warriors stood in formation. The camera zoomed in, sweeping over faces hidden behind helmets. Despite possessing rock-solid muscles, their skin was covered in age spots and necrotic black patches. Their hands trembled violently, uncontrollably. Some warriors even needed their power armor support to barely stand upright. Their breathing was heavy and labored. Status scan, genetic sequence collapsing. Estimated remaining lifespan, 30 Terra Standard days. They're dying. The enemy won't need to lift a finger. Their own genes will kill them. The camera focused on the front of the formation. The giant stood quiet. One Malawian Quacha, thunder power armor. His armor was scarred with bullet marks and burns, metal from the unification wars. Alike, Talan IC removed his helmet, revealing a face crisscrossed with scars. He looked at his brothers below, his eyes devoid of pity. Only a warrior's resolve. Brothers. His voice boomed through the armor's external speakers, crackling with static, hoarse yet deafening. Look at your hands. They shake. Can't even grip a bolter steady. Look at your bodies. They're like damn scrap metal. Our genes have betrayed us. Tom, that beast. Gnaws away at our glory, bite by bite. Shall we wait here to die? Alec swung his mechanical arm violently, pointing at the thick armor plating above, as if he could see the sky beyond. To become stinking rot on a sickbed, or gasp our last like cowards in med bay. 5,000 Thunder Warriors roared in unison, the sound wave making the armor plates hum, even as their bodies decay. The killing intent emanating from their bones still chills demons of the war. The Emperor needs that land. Alec points to the pale, indifferent moon on the screen. There lies our hope for a cure, and the enemy we must conquer. We have no ships, no return tickets, only these tin cans. He gestures to the freshly produced torpedoes behind him. We'll pack ourselves in like furious shells, shot into the sky. We'll shatter the moon's rock. We'll deliver the Emperor's wrath, right onto the heads of those gene heretics. Alec puts his helmet back on. The lenses over his eyes glow with a crimson light. This is the final charge. Warriors. Death is not the end. Dying in battle is our only true destiny. He scans the room, his gaze sharp as a blade. For the Emperor. For unity. No ships. No return. We'll deliver the Emperor's wrath as shells onto the enemy's heads. The assembly square air is thick, with the sour smell of machine oil and sweat. Alec shows no fear, no hesitation. The response is the dull thud of 5,000 power-armored feet stomping the ground. The sound wave hits the dome, covering the scarred armor of the warriors. Scene change. Project codename Aquila. The camera pulls back to show the vast, plane-like back of Mount Hoover. It has been transformed into an industrial hell, defying physics and blaspheming engineering laws. Tens of thousands of lobotomized servers plug thick data cables into their skulls. Like tireless worker ants, they cling densely to this steel jungle. Robotic arms swing. Welding torches spit blinding blue-white arcs. Sparks cascade like a waterfall, cascading onto the exposed adamantium skeleton. This vessel will never move again. All flank macro cannons have been removed. Heavy armored treads melted down. The space freed is crammed with 12 sets of crude, while superconducting magnetic coils. These industrial tools, meant for shattering planetary deep core veins, are brutally fused together into a massive barrel. Tilted skyward, liquid nitrogen cooling pipes, like bulging veins, coil around the assembly. Their surface is frosted white. A 3-kilometer long, 45-degree tilted heavy proton accelerator rises from this corpse of scrap. It is ugly, crude, with no safety rails in sight. But it's massive, powerful. It's barreling straight into turbid atmosphere, as if to pierce a hole in the sky itself. Planetary-grade proton accelerator, the main reactor of a land cruiser, directly shorted to the launch rail. No voltage regulator, no reflux valves, just ignition. This is a one-shot electromagnetic storm. Alike, Palan IC is inspecting his torpedo, or rather, his iron coffin, a cylinder about 5 meters long.
Cast in one piece.
No surface coating whatsoever.
Only signs of rough grinding and a spray-painted serial number.
This is the prototype boarding torpedo. No portholes, no life support, not even landing retro thrusters. The only cushioning is the high-density gel packed inside. Alike reaches out with his ceramite-clad gauntlet. He slams it against the cold hull. Clang, a dull echo, thick, a faint vibration to his fingertips. Signal from the internal attitude adjustment inches. As they inject fuel,
A young Thunder Warrior limps over.
helmetless, his face reveals the horrifying marks of genetic collapse. The muscles on his left cheek are necrotic sunken, a sickly purplish gray. His eye twitches uncontrollably, yet he grins a brilliant wide smile. He pats the torpedo beside him. Boss, you think on the moon. Is it really as quiet as the old legends say? No sound of radiation storms, no stench of acid rain eating the deck, and none of these endless, worthless scum. Alike turns his head. He looks at his face, only 20 years old, yet aged like 50. A soldier forged in the mountains of corpses from the Unification Wars. Now, his body is unraveling at the genetic level. Every cell screaming for death. Alike is silent for a moment, then extends his mechanical hand. He presses it firmly on the youth's shoulder pauldron. Yes, very quiet. Only the dead silence of vacuum up there, and the enemies we need to conquer. Alike's voice is low, resonant, leaving no room for doubt. Wording commences. No rousing martial music. Only the harsh hiss of hydraulic valves venting. Hiss. 5,000 Thunder Warriors, marching in formation, flanking the path. Our comrades whose bodies have completely failed them, unable even to stand. They lie on stretchers, gazing greedily with clouded eyes at the marching column. They raise trembling fists, thump their chests. Thump. The marching warriors respond with heavy impacts. Dull thuds echo. A resonance of heartbeats. A farewell salute. One by one, like loading bullets, they cram into those narrow, claustrophobic steel cans reeking of machine oil. Alike is the last. Before stepping into his torpedo, he halts. He turns, his gaze piercing the launch bay's glass door. One last look at his scarred land, ravaged and broken. Wasteland everywhere, radioactive dust blotting out the sun. This is where he bled his whole life, in a graveyard that buried countless brothers. But he feels no nostalgia. His eyes are fixed only on the pitch-black stars above, and the relief of a mission soon complete. He turns, stepping into darkness. Clunk, the heavy airlock door. Slams shut the moment he enters. Light vanishes. Only the helmet visor's crimson glow remains, flickering in the dark. Launch sequence initiates. Mechanical arms screech with metal-on-metal friction, grabbing the heavy boarding torpedoes. They're loaded into Mountain Mover's massive electromagnetic rails. 12 rows, 5,000 in total, like rows of giant bullets awaiting firing. Hum. The massive capacitor banks begin charging. Air ionizes, broken down by the high voltage field. Blue arcs dance wildly, leaping between rails. Crackle, the ground trembles beneath their feet. The reactor is overloaded, draining the last life from this Leviathan. The camera slowly pulls back through thick radiation clouds. Perspective shifts to the Himalayan peak. Deep within the palace, the strategy room, a towering figure, bathed in golden psychic light, stands silently before a hologram. His stern face shows only absolute reason and divine coldness. On the star chart, 5,000 green dots, representing Thunder Warrior life signs, are all locked in the launchers. 5,000 lives, 5,000 nails aimed at the moon. He hesitates not. For humanity's survival, all is expendable, even himself. His hand slowly rises. That hand holds the fate of countless lives, yet now it's steady as an ancient statue. His finger hovers over the crimson virtual button. He presses down. Ignition. Hum. The mountain mover lets out a soul-rending shriek from within. The electromagnetic launcher warps under the energy field. The primitive nuclear reactor, pushed 300% past critical, screams a desperate roar. The entire steel mountain is instantly shrouded in a violent, ghostly blue ion cloud. Overflowing energy surges through aged conduits. Unevacuated servitor drones vaporize instantly. On the bridge, the alarm lights no longer flash. They explode one by one. On the instrument panel screens, data streams scroll wildly, then freeze into strings of gibberish. Warning. Core temperature exceeds thermal limits. Warning. Magnetic containment field fully collapsed. Core meltdown. Total loss of structural integrity. The ship is breaking apart. No one pays attention. All technicians and servitors execute one command. Pump the energy in. Even if it burns every nerve and melts every chip. Ryu grips the table edge. His knuckles white from the strain, leaving imprints on the alloy surface. He stares at the screen, his pupils reflecting the gathering light of destruction. Boom. No countdown. Just a deafening roar that resonates through the planet's atmosphere. The coastline collapses. The recoil forces the ground under Mount Mover down 10 meters. Thousands of tons of frozen soil instantly liquefy. That's not a weapon. That's the price mortals pay for stealing coffee power. A beam of energy so thick it blocks view. A pillar of pure nothingness erupts from the tilted railgun's tip. A stream of sublight plasma, carrying 5,000 boarding torpedoes, blasts into the sky. Air ionizes. Clouds vaporize. The atmosphere tears open, a vacuum tunnel kilometers wide, surrounded by purple lightning storms. In that instant, Terra's night is lit up like a second sun rising. Perspective force switches. Designation EW001. Inside the Alike Talon IC cockpit. Dark silence. Then hell. Thud. An indescribable force, like a 10,000-ton hydraulic hammer, smashes into Alike's spine. Intense G-forces instantly blur the view. Alike feels his soul rip from his body. He's no longer a soldier, just meat in an industrial centrifuge. His reinforced bones grind unervingly, bone and adamantite coating fighting physical laws. His heart pounds wildly, trying to pump mercury-heavy blood to his brain. His lungs compress to the limit. Alveoli rupture. The taste of blood fills his throat. Not wind in his ears, but the scream of metal fatigue. The roar of hull against atmosphere. Temperature spikes, even through thick insulation. The sickening smell of burning reaches him. The vehicle's outer armor is ablaze. His own skin was carbonizing, his blood turning into magma, trying to burst out from every pore, every blood vessel. If he were mortal, within 0.01 second of launch, his organs would have melted, his brain turned to mush. But he was a Thunder Warrior, a weapon of war forged by the Emperor's own hand. Using gene tech, in this extreme agony, Alike's consciousness entered a strange, crystal clarity. Time, adrenaline, and combat stims activated in his veins. A kaleidoscope of images flashed through his mind. Not a warm childhood. Thunder Warriors had no childhood. It was him on the Terra wasteland, fighting for a piece of irradiated jerky, carrying a wild dog art with his bare hands. It was the Emperor's first appearance on the Unification War battlefield, shattering the fortress of the Master of Mankind with psychic lightning. It was on the Nordic ice plains, wielding an overheated chain axe, chopping off the heads of thousands of barbarians. His whole life, he was born for war. He wasn't just a soldier. He was expendable. Once the unification was complete, tools should be discarded. But he didn't care. For the Emperor, he thought, gritting his teeth with his last ounce of strength to keep his tongue from shattering. No fear, no regret. Only the relief of a mission about to be complete. Boom. Suddenly, all the noise, all the shaking, all the overload vanished in an instant. Absolute silence. Absolute weightlessness. Alike floated in the cramped capsule, cushioning gel enveloping his broken body. All he could hear was his own heartbeat. Thump. Did we make it? How do you space jump? Floating in the void? Time passed. A pale, desolate gray-white filled his view. Growing larger, closer. The moon. Alert. Alert. Imminent impact. Attitude. Thrusters firing. Deceleration. Rocket fuel depleted. Initiating hard landing protocol. Crunch. A dull yet unmistakable impact sound came from the torpedo's base. The vibration traveled up his bones to his brain. The boarding torpedo's rough, cast iron shell embedded deep into the lunar bedrock, kicking up a cloud of dust. Then, over his helmet comms, a burst of harsh static crackled, followed by breaking through the interference. Boss, we're alive. We made it. A savage, proud grin spread across Alike's bloody lips. Landing successful. Lunar surface, Gene Clan territory. No wind on the moon. No sound. Just a gray-white, dead silence. In a desolate plain stretching to the horizon. Pressure, equalization valve blue. The residual gas instantly condensed into a wisp of eerie white mist, then vanished without a trace. The heavy alloy hatch was kicked open from inside, tumbling to crash against a distant crater rim overhead. Terra, the blue-white planet dominating half the sky, watched this devastation with scarred eyes alike. Talon IC took the first step. His heavy magnetic boots landed on the moon's surface, coated in eons of dust. A faint vibration hummed through his soles, the magnetic locks securing to bedrock. A silent wave of dust erupted at his feet, hanging, suspended, lingering unbroken. This was the first landing by Airways. Their first foray on the moon, humanity's initial lunar arrival. Alike surveyed the surroundings. The plane was littered with thousands of still-smoking metal wrecks. Those disposable boarding torpedoes had successfully crash-landed using retro rockets, hatches opening, disgorging unsteady warriors, but more. In a crater not far from him, torpedo designation TW404, due to attitude thruster failure, had impacted the lunar surface at triple sonic speed, compressed into twisted scrap metal. All personnel. Vortex, Alike's voice through bone conduction comms, directly echoed in every surviving warrior's ears. Squad 1 assembled, 40% casualties. Squad 2 landing off course, converging on coordinates. Squad 3 annihilated. The comm channel held only comm reports, no grief. For Thunder Warriors, from the moment they entered those iron cans, they were already dead. Assemble. Alike drew the power greatsword from his back. Click. Hilt locked to gauntlet. He activated the rune. Blue energy crackled along the blade, the only light source in vacuum. Sword point aimed across the plain. Their magnificent structure complex stood against the black sky. Samna's castle. It resembled no human-built fortress, more like some ancient star god beast bones, forcibly fused with black basalt. Countless jagged bone spires reached spaceward like fangs. Surface sheathed in pulsing biomembrane. Cold light glimmered along the walls, as if the castle itself were alive. That was the Silenia gene clan's nest. For the Emperor, a light growled. Blue plasma flared from his power pack. He charged forward first behind him. 2,000 surviving Thunder Warriors surged like a silver tide, left high in the low gravity of the lunar surface, covering dozens of meters with each stride, surging toward that castle. Sama's castle reacted faster than expected. As the Thunder Warriors charged to within 500 meters of the walls, the massive gate, like ribs of a giant beast, slowly opened with a silent tremor. What poured out weren't machines, but giants. Nearly 3 meters tall, clad in tight, white biocarapace. Their skin a sickly, translucent pallor. They wore no helmets. Their faces replaced by a chitinous mask. No nose, no mouth. Only compound eyes glowing with red light. Silenia Lunar Guardians. The gene cult's perfect mass-produced sentinel. They need no breath, no life support. Their flesh is engineered for the void. And for killing. The two forces collided violently in the heart of the sea of tranquility. No battle cries, only vibrations in the vacuum. A light led the charge, his power greatsword carving a blue afterimage in the void. A Lunar Guardian swung a high-energy laser blade, trying to block him from movements elegant, precise. A dance in the vacuum. The Thunder Warriors need no elegance. They need only violence. A light didn't dodge. He took the glaive's sweep on his pauldron. Zzz. Though soundless, the light felt a violent shock and searing heat on his shoulder. A silent burst of sparks from his ceramite pauldron. A deep gash carved, just as he wanted. Distance closed. The great sword, fueled by his charge, slashed across. Schlick! The disruption field shattered the biocarapace's molecular bonds. The Lunar Guardian and her hardened shell were cleaved in two by a light's blade. A torrent of green biofluid gushed out, instantly expanded, freezing into green ice crystals in the vacuum. Selena's guardians were swift, coordinated, but against the Thunder Warriors' reckless assault, their line crumbled fast. One warrior was impaled in the gun, but he grabbed the glaive, yanking the guardian close. But he smashed her mask with his helmet, shattering it. Another's chain axe jammed in an enemy's arm. Engine overheated, stalled. He dropped the axe, using his hydraulically powered power fist, pulverizing the enemy's chest, each blow, caving in armor plates. Pure violence. 10 minutes of sheer violence, devoid of any beauty. The Lunar Guards outside the castle were slaughtered to the last. The moon's dust was littered with white shell fragments. A lush red concourses and ice crystals glittering around. He approached the massive rib-like gate. He glanced back.
They charged forward.
Chief, this door is alive. Taisho's voice was distorted. Auspex shows itself appearing. Biomass density is extremely high. Then blow it open. Put it out of its misery. A light flicked the blood from his blade. He said coldly. Several melted bombs were attached to the gate's nose. The Thunder Warriors stepped back, raised their shields. Boom! A blinding, silent fireball erupted on the gate. The melted core instantly released thousands of degrees of heat, vaporizing the bone and rock directly. There was no sound of shockwave, only the violent tremor through the ground. As the dust settled, a massive breach, its edges still dripping molten rock, appeared before them. Inside was a deep, dark passage, lined with biotubes and fleshy walls, like a maw ready to devour everything. Assault squad guard. Take your team in. Secure a foothold. Whatever you see, kill it. No exceptions. A light gave the order. Yes, came the excited voice of the young assault marine over the comms, accompanied by the whine of chain axe engines revving up. A light watched as Gar led his team charging into the dust cloud. He looked up, gazing at the azure terra above. His past was there, his glory, his grave. He tightened his grip on his sword, strode across the blasted threshold, still dripping magma. Hiss, with the shriek of a pressure valve blowing. A half-meter thick alloy gate, driven by hydraulic pistons, slowly slid open to both sides, revealing the dark corridor behind. Air rushed in. It wasn't breathable oxygen. It was a mix of high-concentration ozone and nauseating bioenzymatic gases. Gar took a sharp breath. Sizzle. His lungs ignited as if stuffed with non-cogger. A thick, sweet metallic taste rose in his throat. Cough. He bent over, a bloody wad of phlegm hitting the ground hard. This wasn't injury. It was rejection. His body, forged by genetic alchemy. A body on the verge of collapse. The sudden change in environment pushes it further. On the retina display, a waterfall of red data streams frantically scrolls. Warning. Adrenaline levels exceed 200% critical threshold. Warning. Muscle fiber solubility increased by 15%. Creatine levels off 70%. Administer sedative immediately or risk cardiac arrest. Gar bared his teeth. Inside his helmet, he directly severed the life support alarm circuit and activated the combat stimulant injection pump. Hiss. Icy fluid surged up his spine, hitting his brain directly. For a Thunder Warrior, pain is not an obstacle. Pain is fuel, the catalyst that burns reason to ashes. Assault group crushed them. Over the comms, a light's voice was low. Gar tightened his grip on the chain axe. The anti-slip wrapped on the haft, saturated in layer upon layer of dry blood crust, had become slick and hard. The gate was fully open. What lay before them was a bizarre, intestine-like corridor. The walls were not cold metal, but a dark red, slowly pulsing fleshy tissue, covered in bluish-purple veins. The floor wasn't rock, but a chitinous shell coated in mucus. This was the lair of the Silenia gene clan, and at the end of the intestine, dozens of pairs of glowing red electronic eyes flared to life in the darkness. Skin pale as porcelain, clad in form-fitting biochitin, their musculature sleek and lethal. In their hands, they held Volkit heat ray rifles, power building. Silenia immortals. The lead immortal captain's voice was clear, cold, devoid of any emotion. Eliminate the intruders. The instant the order was given, dozens of blinding, high-temperature orange rays instantly filled the entire corridor. Boon Volkit rays, an ancient and brutal weapon. It doesn't rely on kinetic force, but triggers molecular combustion within the target, detonating the enemy from the inside. The two Thunder Warriors at the front didn't even have time to raise their shields. The beam struck their chest plates. No explosion.
No impact, just a chilling hiss.
The sound of fat and moisture vaporizing instantly. In less than 0.5 seconds, the two armored warriors became human torches. Their powered armor glowed red-hot and cracked. The muscles, bones, and organs within turned to ash in an instant. Only two empty suits of armor remained, still smoldering. They crashed to the ground with a clang, scattering into a pile of charred components. Gar roared. The visual shock of his comrade turning to ash in an instant completely ignited the savage beast lurking in his jeans. Veins bulged beneath his skin. For the Emperor, he did not retreat. He sought no cover, only charged. With greater speed, more brutal methods, and a more frenzied momentum, he rushed towards them to tear them to shreds. But Gar's half-ton combat boot slammed down hard onto the pulsating fleshy floor. The immense force crushed the vessels beneath the floorboards. He became a human cannonball. He plowed through the dense hail of rays. A beam grazed his shoulder guard. Ceramite pauldron instantly melted into molten slag. High temperatures seared his skin, emitting the smell of charred meat. Pain, excruciating pain, as if nerve endings were being torn by hot tongs. Yet this agony made Gar's mind clearer than ever before. The world seemed to shift in slow motion. 10 meters, 5 meters. He saw the immortal squad leader, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. She couldn't comprehend why this barbaric, primitive creature could maintain such terrifying momentum. After taking a direct hit from a Volkite ray, Gar bellowed. The engine of his chain axe roared with hunger. 3 meters. The immortal leader displayed incredible reflexes. She decisively dropped the still-cooling ray gun, drawing a high-frequency vibroblade from her hip. She attempted to evade Gar's head-on charge and sever the soft tubes at his neck. Gar ignored the blade thrusting at his throat. He simply tilted his head, taking the blow. On the thick side of his helmet, ZZRT, the vibroblade carved a deep, sparking gash in the helmet, severing the comms antenna, its edge lodging in the armor seam. With a screech of metal, and Gar's axe descended with thunderous force. Whack! The high-speed, rotating chain teeth bit deep into the immortal leader's ornate biocarapace, accompanied by the sickening crunch of shattering bone. That perfect genetic construct, so haughty moments before, was cleaved cleanly in two by Gar. He kicked aside the still twitching corpse. Using the axe's momentum, he spun halfway around. His massive, hydraulically driven power fist swung with crushing force, smashing into the second enemy charging towards him. Crunch! A dull thud. The immortal's head vanished instantly. Chaotic, close combat erupted fully in the narrow passageway. Timon's immortals moved with swift agility. Poisonous. Their daggers targeted the weak points of the Thunder Warrior armor. Joints, necks, eye lenses. And these Thunder Warriors, they charged with their bodies, smashed with their fists. One Thunder Warrior's arm was severed. He didn't even grunt. Instead, he used his other hand to snap the opponent's neck. In a live stream, the barrage of comments discussing Volkite Ray tech vanished instantly. This was war in the Empire's early days. No glory, no mercy, no tactics, only lives thrown into the fray. Blood paving the way, corpses piling a path. An unknowable time passed. When the chain axe in Gar's hand stopped spinning before him, no enemies remained standing. The entire intestinal passage was carpeted with corpses. Silver Thunder Warrior wreckage, and more immortals. Gar gasped for breath in great heaves. His power armor was riddled with holes. His left eye lens shattered, revealing a weary eye. A broken half of a vibro dagger was lodged in his abdomen. He turned, looked behind him. Of the original 100-man assault team, less than 30 remained standing now. But in each of their eyes, the same madness burned. The same fire. Victor lives, vanquished dies. The world's truth is that simple. Gar pressed the comms unit on his helmet side. Voice source. Clearance complete. Gate zone controlled. Passage secured. Silence on the comms for a second then. Alight's voice came through. Well done, Gar. Hold position for 3 minutes. Follow-up forces are moving. Gar leaned against the fleshy wall, yanked the dagger from his abdomen, pulling out a stream of black blood. He casually injected himself with a potent coagulant. He stared into the passage depths, deeper, darker, as if leading to hell's very core. He stood, pulled the chain axe starter cord again. Virum. The engine roared once more, but his heavy ceramite boot slammed into the slick biological valve, emitting a dull, sickening crunch. The living gate couldn't withstand the thunder's breath. Ripped bodily from its fleshy frame, crashing to the ground, nerves still twitching. A light and Tawan IC strode through. This was no human recognizable base. It was the stomach sack of some colossal monster. The air reeked of high concentration formaldehyde, old blood, and the stench of rot. The heat is suffocating. The power armor's cooling fans are spinning wildly. The walls are covered in translucent pink flesh membranes. Thick blood vessels pulse like pythons behind them, pumping glowing, radioactive nutrient fluid overhead. Hundreds of translucent amniotic sacs hang down, like overripe, rotting grapes. Each sac holds a curled, blurry black shadow. Turbid, dead fish eyes stare through the film at the intruders. Clean up, 4 words, fish. A tearing sound from above, amniotic fluid pours down. Dozens of shadows use the moon's low-gravity acceleration, crashing like cannonballs into the Thunder Warrior's shield wall. Failures of the Silenia clan. The cheapest, most rabid watchdogs. They have no skin. Raw, red muscle fibers exposed to the air, contracting violently with movement. Where arms should be, mantis-like, chitinous bone blades have grown. Head split into 4 petals, all covered in fine, artery. Roar. One abomination shrieks like a wailing infant, its bone blades sweeping. Sparks fly. The Thunder Warrior's 1 Malawian quatch of power armor is brutally torn open across the chest. The warrior fires back point blank. Boom. The bolt explodes. The abomination's chest cavity turns to mush. Black blood smears the warrior's visor, but it's not dead. The shredded flesh masses rise, stretch, and reform. It withstands the bolt's impact, biting down on the warrior's neck guard with teeth grinding on ceramite, making a sickening screech. Don't waste ammo. That's dead flesh. Alight discards his empty bolt gun, grasping the heavy power thunderhammer with both hands. He shoves 2 abominations aside, the hammer humming with power. Smashes down on the regenerating monster. Clang. The power field disintegrator effect instantly shatters the monster's chitinous shell. The abomination's spine is pulverized, its upper body snapping off. The regenerating flesh mass becomes a puddle of gore. Motionless. Smashed into pulp. Alight roars, crushing a monster's skull under his boot. Rain matter splatters his greaves. Grind his scum into the floor. This is a Thunder Warrior's fight. No cover. No tactical coordination. Just the crack of steel on bone. The roar of chain teeth tearing flesh. Meanwhile, another corridor deep in the maze. Deathly silent here. No monster roars. Only the clack of boots on chitinous floors. Echoing in a confined space. Gar halts abruptly, raises right fist. The assault squad behind him froze instantly. Their movements synchronized like machines suddenly cut off from power. Something's wrong. Gale stared at the tactical bits. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead. The Auspex screen was filled with static. The thermal imager showed only the dim red glow of wall veins. Too clean. Clean as a pre-dug grave. Sir, sonar, echoes abnormal. The walls are absorbing sound waves. The comms his voice edges fate wind. ZZZ. A soft sound, like a blade slicing through cork. Gale spun around. The trooper at the rear. His head slid from his neck, the cut smooth as glass. Blood hadn't even sprayed yet. The body slowly collapsed. On the wall behind that fallen warrior, a patch of stationary muscle tissue suddenly twisted and changed color. A translucent humanoid shape peeled off. A gene hunter, an invisible assassin with chameleon genes. Enemy contact, invisible hostiles. Gale roared, his chain axe sweeping out. Work, the teeth sliced through air, but only sparked against the wall. The shadow vanished like a drop in the ocean, lost instantly in the complex biological textures. Act, a scream from the left. Another trooper's femoral artery severed, blood gushing. Can't see. In this maze of living tissue, thermals and bioscanners are useless. Panic spread, for Thunder warriors used to head-on clashes. Being toyed with like prey was worse than death. Close your eyes. Don't trust them. Listen. Gale's voice held a beast's instinct. He shut his eyes, forcing down the neural tremors from genetic decay. Powered armor's external audio arrays at full power. The world became lines of sound. The gurgle of wall veins. Distant gasps of comrades. And thump. Fast. Light. A heartbeat. Not human. Like a cold-blooded creature. 3 o'clock. 5 meters. 2 meters up. On the ceiling. Gale's eyes snapped open. His wings. He fired the heavy flamer mounted under his left arm. Whoosh. A yellow fire dragon roared forth, rushing toward the ceiling shadow. Hiss. An inhuman shriek erupted from the flames. A burning figure dropped from the ceiling, thrashing wildly. Its perfect camouflage peeled under the heat, revealing pale skin beneath. Gale stomped on the struggling assassin. The chain axe came down hard. All units switched to flammers. Gale wiped blood from his visor. Burn all. Burn through these damn guts. Let's see where they hide now. Deeper underground control hub. No bloody clashes here, only silent kill. Tech Marine Taisho kneels before a massive bioconsole. A 3-meter wide glass tank. Inside floats an enormous, still pulsing gray brain. Countless neural cables pierce its cortex like tentacles, linked to the entire base's defense grid. Taisho yanks the data cable from his helmet's port, jamming it into the console's neural jack. BZZT, a surge of malevolent bioelectricity, instantly backlashes through the connection. Taisho occupies tightly. Black blood streams from his nostrils. The brain is alive. It's screaming, resisting, trying to fry the intruder's mind. Warning. Neural system overload. Cerebral pressure critical. Servo skulls shriek a piercing alarm. Shut up. Taisho grits his teeth, eyes bloodshot. He sees in the data stream, the complex base schematic. So close. Just one final firewall. But the brain's counterattack intensifies. His consciousness blurs. Black spots edge his vision. Sir, can't hold. Behind him, 2 Tech Marines managing data shot. Suddenly seize up. Blood mist behind their visors as they crumple. They sever their neural safeties. Use their own brains as fuel, taking the fatal psychic blast for Taisho. Brothers, a bestial growl rumbles in Taisho's throat. He doesn't look back. Doesn't pull the jack, using the half-second his brothers bought with their lives. You drive a logic virus deep into the brain's core. Zap, crack. The massive brain in the tank spasms violently. Veins bulging, then falls still. Data flows freely. A 3D holographic map unfolds on his retina. Fast. A crimson path. Points clearly to the deepest underground level. Easy, ivory. Taisho slumps to the floor, voice frail as a dying old man. Commander alike. Path is clear. But that which laid all the cards on the table. Guarding the main lab, the Lunar Praetorians. 3,000 strong. Sama's castle. Core sector. Hall of evolution. A vast, open space. But now, it's become hell. Cover the left flank. Centurion, a Likes roar, erupts through the comms channel. His proud Thunder Warrior Legion is now pinned behind cover at the entrance, unable to advance. At the hall's far end, 300 Silenna immortals, in golden biocarapace wield halberds and heavy guns, forming an impenetrable phalanx. Zap! Orange rays streak toward the Thunder Warrior's position. A Thunder Warrior tries to peek and shoot, but a ray strikes his helmet. Instantly, the air, skin, and muscle inside heat to thousands of degrees. Act! His scream lasts half a second before a muffled blast. Red steam jets from the armor seams. Damn it! What the hell is this thing? Alike watches his brothers fall one by one. His eyes burning red. Their bolter rounds spark off the enemy's biocarapace, but fail to inflict lethal wounds. The enemy phalanx is a solid wall. No opening in sight. At the maintenance corridor's end, Taisho kneels before a glowing green data terminal. His mechanical left arm is wrecked, hanging limp. With a trembling right hand, he pulls the data probe, linked to his brain's neural network from his belt. The terminal port is right there. One insertion uploads the castle schematics and defense weak points to the entire army's tactical net. But his nervous system is at its limit. His tactical visor's warning now displays a black skull. Warning, neural overload 98%. Warning, reconnection risks brain death. Summoning his last strength, he grips the probe and slams it into the port. Boom! A massive data torrent, surging like a tsunami into his brain. Taisho's body arches violently. Blood gushes from his nose and mouth. The evolution hall, where alike is pinned down. Suddenly, he hears a beat in his helmet. A clear, 3-dimensional schematic instantly overlays his vision. It's the evolution hall's complete layout. And on the hall's ceiling, the hanging cultivation tanks, filled with the Silenna cult's green biosolution, meant as mere decoration, now flash as glaring red weak points. Shows the same structure, location, acid, internal solution properties, highly corrosive strong acid, position, directly above the enemy formation. Alike paused for a moment, then raised his head, looking up at the dome, gazing at the massive green vats hanging above the immortal's heads. The corner of his mouth slowly twisted into a smile filled with savagery. All units, orders, target dome above, 12 o'clock. Those vats bring them down. Fire. From behind cover, warriors pinned down by Volkite ray fire. In that instant, displayed astonishing tactical discipline and absolute obedience. Over 200 Thunder Warriors emerged from behind shattered stone pillars and overturned lab tables. all muzzles swung in unison, pointing toward the dome. At the 12 massive green glowing suspended cultivation bats, boom, 200 bolt guns roared simultaneously. A dense barrage screamed toward the dome, the other end of the hall. The commander of the Silent Guard, a tall, coldly beautiful immortal, watched contemptuously. The next second, a sharp, crystal-shattering crash echoed from above her head. Crack! Crash! The commander snapped her head up. Her pupils contracted to pinpoints. The 12 massive reinforced glass vats disintegrated instantly under the concentrated bolt gun fire. Thousands of tons of highly corrosive concentrated biofluid, free from their confines like 12 green waterfalls, with devastating force, poured down from the dome dozens of meters high. Splattering down, the commander's piercing shriek was instantly drowned by the green deluge. Splash! Aort! Foam metal! Produced mists of white smoke as they instantly corroded and vaporized. The immortals clad in white biocarapace. Upon contact with the raw fluid, their carapaces began to blacken, curl, and peel. Screams erupted everywhere. The immortal commander now knelt on the ground. One of her arms was reduced to bare bone. Her Volkite halberd dropped into the acid, fizzing. Smoke rising. Alike watched the horrific scene ahead, without a shred of pity. For these witches who treat humans as lab specimens, this was their just deserts. All units, activate environmental seal mode. Charge. Click. All Thunder Warriors simultaneously pressed the sealing valves on their helmet sides. Power armor life support systems engaged at full power, sealing out the external poison gas and acid mist. Then, they charged forward with heavy steps, and charged into the curtain of green rain. Wired roared, the first to plunge into the acid mist. Green acid poured over his power armor, sizzling as it corroded. A layer of white foam bubbled on the ceramite surface. His eyes were fixed on one target, the Silent Commander. Kneeling, still trying to grab her weapon. For the Emperor, Wiregood leaped high. The chain axe in his hand roared to life. The chain axe met no resistance, slicing through a fragile neck vertebrae. A beautiful head, frozen in fear, flew off. It fell into the acid pool. The Silent Guard formation shattered completely, under the torment of acid and the Thunder Warriors' terror. Their prized discipline and elegance vanished. 10 minutes later, the evolution hall fell silent again. Only the hiss of acid eating the floor remained. Wiregood stood in the hall's center. His power armor was pitted and scarred by corrosion. The left leg plating was gone, yet he stood firm. Alike approached, he too bore many wounds. His gaze turned toward the hall's far end, to the immense, golden door etched with intricate genetic helixes. That was Somnus Castle's deepest core, the primordial laboratory, the final refuge of Silent Knot, calls Matriarch. Iliosa. He raised his power sword. Its tip pointed at the golden door. ZZZZD. The power sword's disruption field surged to its limit. The air around the blade shimmered with intense heat. Final layer, a half-meter thick adamantium glass door, melted under the heat. Molten metal flowed from the cut, dripping onto the white floor with a hiss of steam. Boom! Aelucatalisi lifted his foot and kicked hard. The warped metal door collapsed. A cloud of white dust billowed. He stepped inside, each stride, accompanied by the heavy clang of metal. Beneath his feet, they formed filthy, sullied footprints. These footprints were now stamped onto the laboratory floor. This was Herodotus Omega, the Moon Supreme's sanctum, the heart of the Silenia gene cult. The silence here was suffocating. The air, filtered to purity, maintained a constant chill. In the center of the vast circular hall, thousands of holographic data screens floated silently. On those pale blue light screens, complex genetic double helix diagrams fluttered. The laws of life spun and recombined in the air. At the hall's far end, upon a dais carved from white crystal, stood a woman. She wore an intricate, resplendent silver robe. Her face was as perfect as the statues in the Terra Museum. Her skin had an inhuman, translucent quality under the cold light, revealing faintly the vessels flowing with silver blood beneath. Iliosa, matriarch of the Saloni sect, guardian of genetic technology. She held no weapon, just stood there, gazing down at the intruders with those faintly glowing, pupil-less eyes. Halt! Her voice was not loud, yet amplified by the hall's own conduction system. It resonated directly within every Thunder Warrior skull. Do not fight this lethal human illusion with your filthy feet. Alike halted, he raised his hand, and with the hiss of a pressure seal unlocking, removed his shattered helmet. Clang. The helmet was tossed aside. His face was a crisscross of scars, his skin a sickly gray from prolonged radiation exposure. He looked at the dais, at the woman, and behind her, hovering in midair, a black reliquary encased in layers of stasis fields. It was an ancient metal container from a bygone tech age, its surface etched with intricate double helix runes, exuding an ancient chill. Magna Mater, the primordial template, containing humanity's uncontaminated genetic sequence, the very thing the Emperor ordered seized. Hand it over. Iliosa smiled. Hand it over to that barbaric warlord on Terra, to the one who calls himself the Emperor. Look at yourself, soldier. No, I should call you experiment. Your muscles are dissolving into acid. Your bones are overgrowing uncontrollably, piercing your skin. Your nervous system screams every moment. You are a stitched-together monster, a stillborn with an error-riddled gene sequence, a flawed creation doomed to collapse in agony. That tyrant, he understands only destruction, not creation. He stole mere scraps of genetic tech to forge you ugly, short-lived tools. Iliosa turned away, her back to the fully armed Thunder Warriors, gazing obsessively at the black reliquary behind her. Her fingers gently caressed the stasis field. This is the result of our Selene sect, after thousands of years in the long night, extracting from countless ancient bloodlines. A human archetype untainted by radiation or mutation. It is the perfect blueprint. Only with it can we create truly perfect eternal life. She whirled around, her gaze sharp as a blade. Give it to that tyrant, so he can use this sacred blueprint to make more disposable trash like you. Silence. Dead silence. The Thunder Warriors behind the light gripped their weapons. Knuckles white, because it was the truth. They could feel themselves breaking down. They could feel their comrades dying in agony, one by one. The light took a step forward. The power sword's disruption field hummed, scorching a black line into the floor. He spoke slowly. So what? I'm garbage. My brothers are garbage. We're the stones that pave the road, the kindling for the fire, the corpses that fill the ditches. He looked up, meeting the eyes of the matriarch on high. No inferiority in his gaze, only a terrifying acceptance. Oh, without us garbage, You perfect, elevated humans would have been devoured long ago, enslaved by the barbarians of Terra. Alike raised his sword, pointing the tip at Helios' forehead. The Emperor says, this is humanity's future. If the path forward requires burning us flawed ones to light the way, then we burn. Completely. Not even ash remains. His voice turned icy, killing intent erupting like a physical force. Now, hand it over, or die. The smile vanished from Helios' face. She looked into Alike's terrifyingly calm eyes, and felt a sliver of fear from the depths of her soul. She couldn't understand this logic, couldn't understand this servile fanaticism, this willingness to self-destruct knowing you're a pawn. Unreasonable beasts, she spat coldly, a hint of hysteria entering her voice. Since you so desire to witness perfection, since you so crave death, I will show you the vast gulf between you flawed rejects, and a true masterpiece. She slammed her hand down on a red room on the console. With a rumble, the pristine white walls of the lab slid apart with a heavy mechanical groan. 10 massive, cylindrical life support pods filled with murky green nutrient fluid emerged from the darkness. Inside those pods, suspended 10 massive, muscle-bound giants. They stood a full head taller than Thunder Warriors. They wore no power armor. Instead, they were sheathed in black chitinous carapace. The carapace grew directly from their skin, fused with flesh and bone. Their faces were covered by respirator masks. Their bodies were riddled with tubes, pumping potent combat stimulants. These were the silent occult attempt to surpass the Emperor's super soldiers, using their mastery of gene tech to create replicas. Though grotesque, due to lacking the Emperor's key techniques. Feral, they possessed power to crush mortals, and even overpower Thunder Warriors. Awaken. Helios' voice grew shrill and mad, echoing through the hall. Tear these old era scum apart. Crack. The reinforced glass of all 10 pods shattered simultaneously. Green nutrient fluid flooded out like a tidal wave, instantly swamping the floor. The 10 slumbering giants opened their eyes in unison. No pupils, no whites. Just pools of murky yellow, brimming with bloodlust. Roar. With a bestial howl, the 10 monsters snapped their tubes. They dropped to all fours, muscles bulging like caged beasts unleashed, radiating suffocating pressure as they charged toward Alike and his Thunder Warriors. Fire. Pull them back. Alike roared. Bold guns spat angry tongues of flame, but the black giants moved with fluid grace. They weaved through the hail of fire. Sparks occasionally flared on their black chitinous shells, doing nothing to slow their advance. The lead monster slammed into the Thunder Warrior shield wall. Danger! It thrust out hands sheathed in black keratin, grabbed 2 Thunder Warriors by their helmets, and smashed them together with brutal force. Crunch! 2 ceramite helm heads exploded from the impact. Without pause, it lunged for its next target. Jair discarded his empty bolt gun, drew a notched chain axe, and charged the monster coming at him. Die, you bastard! The chain axe engine screamed as he swung for its neck. The monster didn't dodge. It merely shifted its weight, letting the whirring teeth pass by a hair's breadth. Then it drove its knee up in a vicious strike, smashing it into Jair's abdomen. But the abdominal plating of Jair's power armor crumpled instantly. He was sent flying backward. It smashed hard against the clean white wall of the laboratory, leaving spiderweb-like cracks. Cough, cough. Jair coughed up a huge mouthful of black blood. Up on a high platform, Helios looked down at the slaughter unfolding beneath him. A cold smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. You see that? Barbarians? This is the gap between genes. You are crude lumps of mud, but these things, they're exquisitely carved works of art. Your struggles are meaningless. Alike ignored her taunts. He drove back a monster, trying to sneak up on him with a single sword, leaned his back against the pillar, and gasped for breath. On his retina, battle damage data was spiking wildly. In just 1 minute, 30 of our brothers had already fallen, but he didn't despair. As a veteran who'd survived the Terra Wasteland, he'd keenly picked up on a fatal flaw in these so-called perfect creations. They are too clean. Their moves are as standard as a textbook. Their tactical coordination is as precise as a calculator. But they don't have fire. That fire that burns through your own life when you're cornered. That fire that makes you bite off a chunk of your enemy, no matter what cost. Brothers, Alike's voice boomed over the comms channel. Don't fight them on technique. Don't fight them on speed. They're machines. They're dead things. Use your lives to take theirs with you. We're gonna show these so-called perfect freaks what it means to be a Thunder Warrior. Over in the corner, Jair stumbled unsteadily to his feet. He heard Alike's words. As he looked at the black giant walking straight toward him, the fear in his eyes vanished in an instant. In his place came a deranged madness. Jair bared his teeth, reached out and ripped the alarm life support line off the power armor. ZZZ, a massive dose of stimulants and combat dust flooded into his veins once again. His heart began pounding wildly, pushing far past its limit, wailing out a death rattle. But this rush of power made him feel like he could take on anything. Jair roared and charged forward. The monster still expressionless and accurately threw a punch, straight for Jair's face. This time, Jair didn't dodge or block. He spread his arms and threw himself straight into that fist. Bang! The monster's fist slammed hard into Jair's chest. His chest plate shattered. His ribs all snapped. But this fatal blow couldn't even force Jair to step back an inch, because the moment the fist connected, Jair locked his arms tight around the monster's arm. Got you. For the first time, the monster showed something resembling confusion. It tried to shake Jair off, but Jair's fingers had already dug deep into the gaps of his carapace. Even if her nails broke, she wouldn't let go. Jair used the last of her life strength, and with her own hard, ceramite helmet, smashed it into the monster's face. Once, twice, 3 times, 4, 5. Jair was like a runaway pile driver, completely ignoring her own skull shattering, just madly repeating the motion, until the monster's head was crushed. Its body went completely limp. Only then did Jair release her grip. He and that perfect creature fell together into the blood. He died, but he won. This scene, like a signal, drove all the Thunder Warriors on the battlefield mad. They stopped parrying, stopped dodging. Arms broken, they bit. Legs broken, they charged with their bodies. With this most brutal, savage, and utterly unreasonable method, they forcibly killed those 10 perfect monsters. On a high platform, the smile on Helios' face froze. She watched the holographic data screens, those life signs, flickering out one by one. This is impossible. She couldn't understand. Genetically, her creations clearly surpassed them in every metric. Why? Why lose to these aging, flawed rejects? Because they have no soul. A cold voice cut through her thoughts. Helios' head jerked up. She saw Alike dragging that notched power sword. Step by step, walking towards her, Alike ascended the platform, stood before Helios. The sword's tip pointed at her throat. Your tech is perfect, woman, but what you made is just animated meat. We are Thunder Warriors. We are the flame that willingly burns to ash for that man, for humanity's future. Helios looked into those eyes blazing with fire, and felt fear. Trembling, she took a step back, bumping into the black ark behind her. Take it. She slumped to the ground, voice shaking. Take it, you lunatics. Alike sheathed his sword. He didn't kill her. For an arrogant scholar like her, admitting her perfection lost to rejects is worse than death. He walked to the hovering black ark, reached out a blood-stained hand, gently stroking the cold metal shell. Magna Mater, the primordial progenitor. For this, half his brothers, left on this frigid moon, but he knew it was all worth it, for within it lay the Emperor's hope, the future the man had promised. A future no longer needing flawed beings like them to sacrifice. A perfect future. Alike pressed the communicator, directed at distant Terra, and whispered to the golden figure, mission complete. Ailey Kutalon I see, relying on brute physical strength, dragged the multi-ton, 1 Malawian clutch of power over each step, leaving a deep crater in the lunar dust. He carried the heavy black sanctum, the Magna Mater. Behind him lay the dead plain of the sea of tranquility. Terra, the Himalayas deep within the palace. The air in the strategy room seemed to freeze. There were no superfluous decorations here, only cold rock walls and ceaselessly running logic engines. The eerie blue light from the holographic projection shone upon the Emperor's golden form, majestic, sacred, yet chillingly indifferent. He was gazing at the black sanctum in the cultivation tank, the primordial matrix. Within the viscous nutrient fluid, double helix gene chains were frantically reassembling, emitting a pressure targeting not just flesh, but the very soul. The survival of civilization requires no cheap mercy. It demands valuable sacrifice. At the foot of Mount Ararat, howling winds whipped up swirling ice crystals. This was a dead, uninhabited zone, a newly completed, massive, sealed white fortress. With a roar, a colossal transport craft slowly descended. Anti-gravity engines kicked up snow, obscuring vision. The hatch opened. Alike, Talon IC was the first to step out. He took a deep breath, looked back at his brothers behind him. These once unrivaled Thunder Warriors tanked terrorists now resembled pilgrims on final journey, or elders on their deathbeds. They supported each other. The excruciating pain of genetic collapse tormented their nerves every moment. Yet, in their eyes burned an unprecedented light. Hope. I heard this operation uses the divine artifact brought from the moon. Wu Xiaotao limped over to a like side. If we endure, we live. Not just live, we become stronger. Then, we'll be true perfect warriors. Then, we'll go take Mars. I hear the mechanic is there. Enough, Alike cut him off. His voice stern, but a smile couldn't help the curl of the corner of her mouth. Survival first. They followed the winding mountain path toward the massive white fortress atop the summit. No honor guard lined the road. Only rows of silent automated defense turrets. Their barrels were lowered. Sensing red lights flickered faintly in the blizzard. Mount Ararat, sub-level B12. Gene pre-march laboratory. Heavy adamantium restraint rings clamped around Alike's wrists and ankles. He was spread-eagled, pinned firmly to the icy metal table. Around him, dozens of Silinda Gene handmaidens in white hazmat suits. Push carts laden with bizarre agents. Subject 001. Alike Talon IC. 4th Legion Commander, Thunder Warriors. Helias's voice came through the speakers. Cold as an autopsy report. Gene sequence. Highly unstable. Cell necrosis rate, 45%. Estimated survival time, 72 hours. Procedure plan, full reforging. Phase 1, skeletal remodeling. Over a dozen thick needles connected to high-pressure pumps. Pierce the Like's skin simultaneously, driving deep into his limbs, spine, and sternum. An indescribable acid-like sensation flooded his body through the marrow. Not pain. Alike felt his bones turning to mush. High concentration calcium solvent, forcibly softening his malformed, overgrown skeletal structure. His body seemed to lose its support, sagging under gravity. Then, the roar of robotic arms. Several massive arms extended, gripping his limbs with cold steel clamps, and pulled. Crack. Ligaments forcibly stretched. Joints forcibly dislocated. Old, healed wounds tearing open again. To fit acetates taller. More perfect, more golden ratio conforming frame. The Thunder Warrior's deformed skeleton had to be utterly shattered and rebuilt. Phase 2, muscle enhancement. Inject Titan hormone. Helias's voice remained steady. A matrix of thousands of microneedles pierced his muscle groups. Necrotic, atrophied muscles, stimulated by the drugs, began to rise and swell visibly, madly. Tearing, regenerating. This cellular-level hyperdivision consumed immense energy. Body temperature spiked instantly, 40 degrees Celsius. Sweat evaporated into a white mist that shrouded the operating table. Heart rate 300, blood pressure critical, body temperature overload. A handmaiden reported coldly, as if reading an irrelevant data. Continue. His voice showed not a single fluctuation. Inject the primordial sequence. Begin core organ implantation. Phase 3, dual heart resonance. The laser scalpel cut opened his chest. Ribs were pried apart by a hydraulic spreader, revealing the heart frantically beating within his thoracic cavity. Second heart, still pulsating, only fist-sized. A deep crimson second heart was delivered into his chest cavity by a precise mechanical arm. In balanced conflict, the moment that heart connected with blood vessels. In balanced conflict, the two hearts' beating frequencies were completely different. They were fighting, vying for control of the blood. Tearing at the fragile vascular network. Drip. The heart rate monitor emitted a piercing, prolonged shriek. The waveform turned into a flat line. Subject 001. Cardiac arrest. Vital signs plummeting. Severe rejection reaction. Genetic chain collapsing. Helios looked at the data, frowned. A flicker of disappointment in her eyes, a failure, though the willpower is passable. But the old era vessel ultimately cannot bear the divinity of the new era. She raised her hand, preparing to press the red button that signified disposal. For the Silena sect, material that cannot withstand modification is trash, to be thrown into the purification rooms. Just as her finger was about to touch the button, on the operating table, that body already on the brink of death, suddenly twitched. That was not a nerve reflex. That was a hand with torn muscle fibers, and charred skin, gripping the edge of the operating table fiercely. The adamantic crafted edge was actually by that hand, brutally squeezed, leaving finger imprints a low roar. It was forced out from Alike's throat. The sound was faint. It shook the air of the entire operating room. In that bleak spiritual world, Alike pushed away the dead hands reaching for him. He lifted his head, looked up at the non-existent void above. There was a banner, a black banner, embroidered with a golden double-headed eagle, the Emperor's banner. The totem he swore allegiance to, I do not wish to die. Not for glory, not for the future, simply because. Alik's soul roared, he was unwilling. He is the thunder. He is the king who crawled from a mountain of corpses. He is the standard bearer who unified Terra to die. He would die on the battlefield under the enemy's sword. This pure will to live acted as a powerful stimulant, piercing deep into his faltering heart. The second heart was forcibly activated by this will. It began to beat powerfully, pumping oxygen-rich blood and enhanced hormones into his broken body. The collapsing genetic strands began to reorganize before the overwhelming dominance of the prime template. Fusion, evolution, the red line on the monitor suddenly spiked, breaking through the threshold. Vitals rising. Assimilation rate, 80%, 90%, 100%. Fusion complete. Helios watched the man writhing violently on the operating table. Rising highlight. His skin healing at a visible rate. The man's eyes opened. In those eyes, the previous haze, fury, and exhaustion were gone, replaced by an abyss of darkness. He was no longer Thunder Warrior-like. He was a first generation Ace. Alik's eyes snapped open, clear and focused. No confusion from awakening. His pupils focused within 1 second, locking onto all threats in his surroundings. No agony, no weakness, no fear from genetic collapse. Alik sat up, looking down at his hands. Hands covered in black neural interfaces, with perfectly defined fluid muscle lines, and skin pale as marble. He slowly turned his head. Around him, hundreds of massive vertical life support pods were opening simultaneously, emitting white liquid nitrogen mist. Figures just like him, naked, pale-skinned, tall and cold-eyed, were emerging. He saw Wu Xiaona standing there, silently. Wu Xiaona saw Alik too, the moment their gazes met. Washitana's mouth twitched slightly, a remnant muscle memory from the old days. He seemed to try for a familiar, hearty smile, to call out brother, but in the end, the smile was forcibly suppressed, replaced by a standard, cold tactical nod. They looked at each other. No embrace, no cheers. Not even a brother, you're alive. Only silent, mutual acknowledgement. Alik spoke. First Legion, assemble. Mount Ararat. Underground great round. No sunlight reaches here. Only hundreds of high-powered industrial spotlights. The enormous great round in a ghostly pale glow. 5,000 warriors who have completed the primarchization modification have finished donning their gear. They were brand new. Power armor painted jet black, lined up in neat formations across the square, like a vast forest of black steel. This is nothing like crude silver Malawian quash armor, used by Thunder Warriors, with exposed piping needed for heat dissipation. This is the Malawian quash's expeditionary power on their left shoulder blades. The original lightning icon representing the Thunder Warriors has been erased. In its place stands a sword. Painted blood red crimson, set between two wings, the First Legion. They are the original prototype, the perfect beginning. The Emperor stands on a high platform, cloaked in golden armor, overlooking this newly born army. In his eyes, the golden indifference of one if the tools is gone. Instead, there's a hint of satisfaction and pride. He can feel that the souls of these warriors are no longer frenzied and uncontrollable like the Thunder Warriors before them. They're like blades freshly forged, hammered 1,000 times, stripped of all impurities, forged from adamantine, sharp, tough, and absolutely obedient. My warriors, you have walked through hell and returned from its depths. You're no longer thunder, you're angels. Angels of death. The night of Terra is drawing to an end, but the darkness of the void remains endless. Humanity needs a sharp blade to cut through the thorns blocking our path. The Emperor slowly raises his hand, his slashing gesture, pointing toward the heat ball to the ceiling. For humanity, 5,000 warriors respond in unison. Their roar is no longer the feral snarl of beasts, or the uncoordinated painting of individual motion. It is the first breath of the great behemoth known as Legion. Exquisite Project, First Legion, off-field perspective. 6th micro-season development phase has concluded. Calculating overall score for this round. Viability, 95 points. The largest gene recruit hidden danger has been resolved. Civilization stability has increased significantly. Army service term extended from months to centuries. Potential, 98 points, epic grade. Comment, the success of the Exquisite Project. Our civilization has gained capability to conquer, subsea, and carry out long-distance void expeditions. Self-consistency, 100 points. Originality, 92 points. Adaptability, 95 points. Contested 95.7. Guheng. Overall score for this round. Total 96.0 points. Updating the round hero rating. Guheng ranked 866, based on round hero leaderboard ranking. Distributing development resource point rewards. Micro season 6. Development phase ended. Entering dual phase. Calculating based on your overall ranking. And 866.
Matching opponent. Matching. Ding.
The sound pierced the dead air inside the contest pod. Guheng slowly opened his eyes. Gold, flickering light from the screen reflected in the depths of his pupils. Match complete. Opponent. And 802. Spirit Realm Covenant. Team Guheng didn't rush to act. On the left screen, the opponent's profile unfolded. It was a disturbing sight. Twisted phantoms drifted through the mist, formless, only outlines. Their shrieks could shatter glass. Their touch could rust steel. School, transcendent psychic side, core trait, spectral entities, aura of fear, physical immunity, 50% to 90%. Tactical style, utilizes terrain for phasing, creates illusions, crushes enemy morale through terror, harvests souls at the end. Guheng's fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. A rhythmic tap-tap-tap sounded. If it were the old Thunder Warriors, they have trouble with this. Fierce, yes, but essentially berserkers fueled by hormones and rage. Once caught in illusions, or finding their chain axes couldn't hit the enemy, they grow anxious, frenzied, ending in a tragic, self-destructive brawl. But now, he turned, glanced at the right side of the screen. There, the black card representing the First Legion,
Hovered silently. On the card,
a warrior clad in black power armor, a monastic hood over his head, stood like an eternal piece of obsidian. Dual scenario, the silent masquerade, battlefield environment, an ancient capital shrouded in eternal fog, in a Victorian-style plan. The Fog City. Environment traits. 1. Mist field. Extremely low visibility. All optical sensors impaired. Invisible observers lurk in the mist. Gaze upon them, and you are seen. 2. Spirit realm overlap. Blurred line between physical and spirit worlds. Walls, mirrors, even puddles can become passageways for spirits. 3. Unnameable. The area has mimetic contamination properties. All units undergo continuous mental checks. Failure results in panic or madness. Victory condition. Investigation mode. Find the 3 psychic nodes hidden in the city and destroy them, or wipe out all enemy units. What's General Huyu's take on this? Live in studio, host Xiaoya's voice carries a hint of tension. On the judges panel, General Huyu studies the scenario, his brow furrowed, fingers tracing tactical lines on the desk. Although Gu Heng's forces have been upgraded, they still rely on physical, bullet-based damage. Against spirits with physical damage immunity, the bolter's efficiency will be very low, unless Professor Suwon interjects, pushing upper classes. He can deploy anti-spirit magic weapons. But to my knowledge, that's not on his tech tree. He's not a supernatural civilization. No mages to banish spirits. Urban combat, fog, puzzles, spectral enemies. Gu Heng instantly extracts all the keywords. This is a mission mode extremely unfriendly, even malicious to the physical side. If his army would go in, forget about killing enemies. The pervasive fog and unkillable ghosts alone would drive the soldiers mad, and physical bullets passing through ghosts are like passing through smoke, greatly reduced in effect. However, from a combat perspective, the situation is similar for both sides, although the opponent shares the same system and civilization type as the scenario's world, seeming to have a significant home field advantage. In reality, aside from the second rule spirit realm overlap being a usable channel for them, their room to maneuver isn't much. Among these engineering rifles, the biggest point is the neutral wild monsters on the map, attacking enemies indiscriminately. It might seem insignificant at first glance, but a little thought reveals. When combined with the first and third rules, these transit channels clearly won't be unclaimed. In a sense, this is actually good for him. Gu Heng indeed lacks magic weapons, but he has alchemy, a science more brutal, more unreasonable than magic. He opens the pre-battle config interface. If physical damage is reduced, then switch the damage type. Gu Heng's fingers fly across the armory interface, leaving after images. Since you can't hit a solid entity, burn it with blanket chemical fire. Activate spirits are energy. Energy can be neutralized by more violent chemical reactions. Make the air burn. Make the psychic energy burn. You replace the standard explosive rounds with something far more dangerous. Alchemical tech branch, highly unconventional, marked as extreme risk. Configuration order, main weapon swap. Sacrifice rate of fire. All units, switch to large caliber scatter blast shotguns. Ammo, alchemical incendiaries. Tactical gear, frag grenades. Flashbangs. Equipment, phosphorus flares, 5,000 rounds. 3. Heavy fire support. Equipment, heavy industrial weaponry. Ammo, phosphorus reservoir tanks. Gu Heng stared at the terms fog field and unnameable. His gaze turned cold. In this scenario, the greatest danger isn't the enemy, but the unknown. Without finding the enemy, overwhelming firepower is useless. He opened the rules of engagement editor. Previously, orders for the Thunder Warriors were simple defaults. Extremely basic, kill all or occupy. The Thunder Warriors, though imperfect, possessed exceptional intelligence, coupled with the relatively low combat difficulty. No major problems had arisen, until now. Now, things were different. Protocol codename. 6-wing, dreadwing, 4 logic, 1, sorcerer advance. No search, no recon. If a wall blocks the path, if fog obscures or vision is impaired, use thermal explosives. No doors, no windows. Blast the maze into a straight line. 2, zero contact. Strictly prohibit communication with any non-friendly unit. Ignore all pleas, temptations, threats. All non-friendly signals are considered hostile interference. Apply physical silence. 3, information blackout. Any scenario native NPC witnessing our actions must be silenced. Failing that, treat as a latent threat. Eliminate. Reason. In a mimetic contamination environment, a witness is the infection vector. The chat exploded. Eliminate witnesses? Is this a rescue or a cover-up? General Huyu looked at the red line order. His furrowed brow relaxed instead. A sharp light gleamed in his eyes. No, he whispered, with admiration for extreme rationality. This is true special operations. In this scenario, filled with psychic pollution and mimetic viruses, any witness could already be contaminated, or become a vessel for the enemy. This isn't senseless killing. It's severing the transmission chain. Gu Heng entered the final line of code. He looked at the screen at the fully armed First Legion, wielding flamethrowers and alchemical ammo. He pressed the red begin simulation button. Deploying forces. Target. The Fog City East District slums. Duel. Commencing. The Fog City East District slums. Here are the festering wounds of this ancient city. It is the narrow junction of reason and madness. The wet roadway winds like a maze. The air smells of musty coal and smoke, and a sickening sweet smell. Detective Jia goes back against the block. The chest of the cold, smooth red brick wall undulates violently. The lungs are like in his revolver in a bellows. Only the last silver-plated bullet was left, but he knew. This bullet won't save him. 3 minutes ago, he saw his partner. That one weighs 200 pounds. A former boxer who can bend an iron bar with his bare hands. The vague shadow at the corner is like a cocoon. It's been pumped out a little bit from the pores. There's no blood, no body, leaving only a pile of empty clothes still warm, and a crunchy batten that fell to the ground. Damn it. Jieko tried to escape boots, stepped in the water. It splashed black mud spots, but he found that no matter how he ran, no matter how many turns he turns, will eventually return to this dead end space is folded. There seem to be countless greedy eyes watching him behind the curtains. The light of the street lamp is no longer warm gas lamp yellow. Instead, it turned to a dismal green-gray, hee-hee-hee, the sharp and finely broken laughter as if fingernails were scraping the glass. Once again coming from the depths of the fog and getting closer. The fog was surging and stretched out its tentacles like life. Jieko raises his gun in despair. Fingers trembling on the trigger, aimed at the fog at the alley. Just then, boom. A dull noise that does not belong to this strange world at all. Blast through the seemingly impenetrable wall on his side. That's the detonation of explosives, the energy of ultron damage. Thermal expansion when momentarily gasifying masonry. A searing wave of air toppled Jieko to the ground. He rolled around in the mud for several times before he stopped. He raised his head in horror. See the thick brick wall that trapped him to death. In the middle appeared a diameter of 2 meters. The edge presents a large hole in the molten state. The masonry of the mouth of the cave is dripping with red and vitrified magma. Make a sizzling, cooling sound. And in the billowing smoke and white steam, a huge dark figure, with the sound of heavy hydraulic machinery step out. That's a AC Tate warrior, his whole body wrapped in no reflection. Black matte dynamic armor capable of absorbing light. Like a piece cut from the night. Under the shadow of a monastic hood on his helmet, green tactical eyepiece pulls out 2 icy lanes in the fog. Straight track of light in his hands. With a handful still braving blue plasma flame. Scary caliber, shotgun, first core. Company commander alike. He didn't even look at Jieko shivering in the corner. In his eyes, This mortal is just an irrelevant background board. His tactical eyepiece is rapidly scanning this dead and full of subspace energetic reactions. The stream of data washed over his retina like a waterfall. Environmental analysis, non-Euclidean geometry, spatial readings. Overlapping cycle, deadlock, threat, judgment, high energy body ambush. Is this the maze? Alik's voice. It's kind of interesting to pass through the helmet's external speakers.
But that's it. Another big toy.
The voice in the fog sounded again, with a touch of banter and greed this time. It's not just a sound. Dozens of twisted, elongated shadows from the ground wall. Even Jieka's shadow came out. They have no entity, just a painfully distorted face. Open your big, empty mouth. Towards the black giant. Jeek wants to scream. It's like his throat is blocked, but he found out. The giant didn't even move. He didn't even lift the shotgun in his hand. Alik just calmly raised his left arm there. A device similar to a small flamethrower is installed. The ominous green light flashed at the spout to purify the breath. A red. A flame mixed with a special green chemical, instantly gushing out of the jutsu for alchemy combustion agent. It not only burns matter, the alchemy of it. It can ignite psionic power itself and burn the structure of soul. The moment those dark shadows come into contact with the flame, uttered a shrill scream. It was the sound of soul being torn apart. They curl up in the air like lighted tissue paper. Burning disintegrates into black ashes. The voice hidden in the mist also let out a scream of pain, quickly receded. The roadway was quiet in an instant. Only the crackling sound of the alchemy flame to his left, and the pungent smell of sulfur and ozone in the air. A light drop arm. The spout was still dripping with burning liquid, and he turned around. Behind the hole, out of a dozen of the same silence. A giant as dark as death itself. A combat engineer carrying heavy breaching tools. Approached the light. His auspex is buzzing rapidly, sir. Spatial fold detected ahead. Conventional path is blocked. We're going in circles. Alik nodded. He glanced at the seemingly ordinary wall ahead, covered in moss. Tactical logic marked it as a dead end. In the First Legion's lexicon, there are no dead ends. If the path is blocked, we make one. Alik extended a finger clad in ceramite, pointing at the wall. Demolition team. Thermal breaching charge. Don't spare the explosives. Yes, 2 warriors stepped forward. Movements practiced and precise. They retrieved several disc-shaped thermal charges from their belts, attaching them to the wall's load-bearing points. 3, 2, boom. Another deafening blast. The entire wall, along with the spatial trap hidden behind it, was torn apart and shattered by the directed explosion. The twisted structure collapsed, revealing a straight, smoking passage that pierced through 3 buildings. Appeared before them. Alik strode in. The other warriors, maintaining standard tactical formation, filed in behind. Their boots crunched on broken bricks, making sharp, cracking sounds. They ignored the mortal detective who slumped on the ground. They ignored the rules of this bizarre world. They followed one principle. The shortest distance is a straight line. If there's a wall, we breach it. If there's a ghost, we burn it. If there's a god, we kill it. Jieku stared blankly as their figures vanished into the billowing dust. Trembling, he pushed himself up from the ground, leaning on the wall. His worldview shattered in that moment. He didn't know who these giants were, but he knew. This ever-hungry, arrogant mist that always devoured people
had finally met its match today.
East District, Fog City. The damp, cold air reeked of coal smoke, rotting wood, and something deeper. A coppery scent like blood. Visibility was less than 5 meters. Conventional optical gear was useless. Even the green view of night vision goggles was filled with flickering static and distorted phantoms. ZZZZ on the First Legion's comms channel. Only the monotonous hiss of white noise. Ailiku Tulan IC came to a halt. His massive MKI expeditionary power armor, a composite of ceramite and plasteel, left a web of cracks on the wet cobblestones underfoot. Watching his gaze was fixed dead on the retina display. The waveform representing the ornithoscope's scan results was jumping wildly. Environmental scan. Ether energy concentration has risen to 450%. Warning. Non-physical entity detected. Infiltrating reality from subspace. Non-audience, zero distance. They're all around us. Alik's voice came through the helmet grill. Deep, cold, and hard like metal. They're not inside the walls. He raised his hand, signaling the demolition team behind him a halt. They're inside our heads. The moment the words left his mouth, boom. A high-frequency, invisible psychic shockwave erupted out of nowhere from all directions. It pierced the physical defenses of the power armor in an instant, and slammed straight into the auditory nerves of every single exquisite soldier. This wasn't sound. It was fear itself. In that split second, the reality around the soldiers shattered before their eyes. The assault trooper, standing behind Alik, no longer saw the fog-shrouded city streets. All he saw was the mountain of corpses covering Mount Ararat. The heavy weapon sergeant didn't see walls anymore, either. Instead, countless hands reached out from the void, hands belonging to his dead relatives. They wailed and shrieked, trying to drag him down hell. This is mind implosion, the core tactic of the Ether Pact. Left unchecked, a mortal's brain will, within 0. 1 second, secrete a lethal dose of cortisol, which causes cardiac arrest or instant insanity. Neurotransmitter anomaly detected. Activating mental alchemy defense protocol. Injecting combat stimulant type 4. Injecting sedative type 2. The life support system built into the power armor reacted faster than any biological instinct could, accompanied by a faint hissing sound. Several alchemical compounds fall precisely into the right arteries of every exquisite. Atop the clock tower, deep in the fog. Evil spirit body, entirely black smoke, rippled violently. It could not understand. From its perspective, the souls of the 20 creatures down below should have been flickering wildly, twisting in fear, and finally snuffed out. But now those soul flames had turned to stone. Its proud psychic toxin had failed. No fear. Then they die. The evil spirit lord let out a raspy shriek. If psychic attack doesn't work, then brute force will. It swung its intangible laws, and the shadows lining both sides of the street. Hundreds of gargoyle statues that stood motionless for ages. Rusted iron railings, even abandoned carriages, were suddenly possessed and came to life. They let out a grating, screeching noise, using these as their new bodies, and charged toward the First Legion. Physical contact initiated. Alik watched the charging animated objects. He didn't fire. He knew. Using bolters against stone and scrap metal was inefficient. Heavy flamer team, advance. Full coverage. Execute purification. 3 AC Tate carrying massive fuel tanks strode to the front of the formation, the weapons in their hands. Were no ordinary flamethrowers. They were hellfire-heavy incinerators, and flowing through the fuel lines connected to the nozzles. It wasn't ordinary promethium, but a dark green substance. Alchemical promethium. Three thick, dark green dragon breaths roared and erupted. The flames didn't ignite objects directly. Instead, like liquid, they instantly covered every inch of space within a 50-meter fan-shaped area ahead, the ground. walls, air, and the charging gargoyles. The intense heat of 4,000 degrees instantly ionized the air. Ada, a horrifying scene unfolded. The gargoyles and iron railings engulfed in flames. Didn't melt immediately. Instead, the intangible spirits attached to them. Upon contact with the alchemical flames, without agonizing, piercing shrieks, this fire was searing their souls. The spirits were forcibly stripped from their physical vessels, twisting, struggling, rapidly dissolving, and dissipating in the green inferno. Devoid of spiritual drive, the gargoyles instantly lost all power and crumbled into heaps of rubble. The light watched through his tactical visor as the red dots representing enemies vanished by the dozens. Advance. Maintain firewall coverage. Burn the street clean. The first legion began to move. They formed a tight testudo formation. The three incinerators fired in sequence, constantly maintaining an advancing wall of fire ahead of the formation. Wherever they passed, the mist evaporated, shadows were banished. The entire street became a burning corridor to hell. And at the corridor's end, atop the clock tower, the Wraith Lord watched its minions being slaughtered in mass. Watched that green firewall advancing toward it. For the first time, it felt a primal tremor of fear. Fox City Center, the mayor's mansion, marble spiral staircase. The air here was thick like congealed grease. A stale, opulent, yet suffocatingly sweet fragrance masked the underlying stench of decay. Portraits of past mayors hung on the walls. But after centuries of erosion by the warp mist, the faces in those paintings had melted, transforming into swirling forces of color, screaming in torment on the canvas. The First Legion's heavy magnetic combat boots, trampling mercilessly on the expensive crimson velvet carpet, making a dull, oppressive sound. Detective Jeku stumbled along in the procession. His mental defenses had crumbled to their limit. An AC Tate at the front suddenly halted. He sharply raised his heavy bolter, aiming at the empty, dark staircase corner ahead. The Auspex readings showed a logic error. Forward area. Psionic concentration exceeds 300%. On his tactical visor, that wasn't air. It was a mass writhing violently. A shimmering, multicolored etheric mist. Within the mist, countless gentle, beautiful faces could faintly seen, full of temptation, smiling and beckoning to them, opening their arms. It was a siren song, a psychic attack method of a demon lord. No longer creating cheap fear, but creating desire. It reads the victim's deepest, softest regrets, weaving a warm, beautiful dream. Impossible to refuse. It was an illusion. Malik's voice was flat, without inflection, like a cold stone. He tightened his grip on the bolter, aiming it squarely at the mist. The green glow in his eyes grew firm, cold once more, full of killing intent. Malik turned his head, looking at the mentally broken Jeku. That massive bolt pistol was pointed at his head. Why? Jeku's voice trembled. He didn't understand. Why were these heroes aiming at him? You're corrupted. Your will is too weak. You're not just dead weight, you're vulnerability. The enemy can use your fear to pinpoint our location. Use your memories to glimpse our tactics. On this battlefield saturated with high-level psychic pollution, a broken mortal, lost in delusion, is a wartime bomb, ready to detonate at any moment. Jeku stared into the dark muzzle of the gun. He finally understood. In their eyes, there are no innocent civilians, no victims. Jeku shuffled back, struggling in the pool of blood, begging desperately, don't kill me. I'm useful. I know the way. I know the secret passage to the mayor's residence. I know where that demon hides on the top floor. Alik's finger on the trigger paused. Alik ordered the warrior behind him. Take him. Keep him alive until we find that demon. Advance. Maintain silence. At the stairs end, a massive oak door, carved with profane runes, stood silently. Purple light seeped from the crack. Beyond it lay the demon lord's core, the source of this nightmare. Alik raised his hand and made an explosive gesture. A deafening explosion shook the very foundations of the entire city. Massive oak door, ivy's high, carved with blasphemous runes, was blasted to splinters by the directed thermal blast. The expensive marble floor was gouged by a 10-meter-long trench. Wooden shrapnel flew like bullets. As the dust settled, revealed before the First Legion was a grand, breathtakingly vast banquet hall. A huge crystal chandelier swayed overhead, tinkling softly. The long mahogany table was laden with rotten food. Patties swarmed in Isaki's most did. Silver goblets held congealed red wine. Withered flowers emitted a musty stench. Around the hall, where velvet curtains should have hung, now swirled a churning, black, living mist. Welcome, guests. That sharp, nails-on-glass voice rang out again. This time, it didn't come from a corner, but from everywhere, filling every ear. You destroyed my maze. You are rude. As punishment, you will become eternal statues here. Part of my collection. Whoosh. An icy wind swept through. The hall's candles snuffed out instantly. The temperature plummeted. A thick layer of white frost began to coat the floor. The rotten food froze rapidly, emitting a crackling, snapping sound. Moisture in the air crystallized into ice, suspended midair. Then, the walls began to bleed. Countless translucent, faintly blue-glowing rays emerged from wall cracks, floor patterns, and the chandelier. They had no bodies. Only faces contorted in agony. They opened gaping maws, unleashing a unified, soul-shattering, silent scream. Their numbers were legion, packed together like a white, resentment-fueled tsunami, surging toward the 20 black figures at the door. Commander. An AC Tate glanced at his Auspex, his tone flat, as if reporting a mechanical fault. Enemy unit count excessive. Radar screen is solid red. Sensors overloaded. Also, spectral analysis indicates they're phase shifted. Physical immunity estimated at 95%. Alik's voice came through the external speakers. No physical form, because the temperature here isn't high enough yet. All units change formation. 20 AC today. In an instant, the transformation is complete. Boots stomped around, emitting a unified thunderous rumble. They're no longer a loose assault formation. Instead, they formed a tight, shoulder-to-shoulder steel line, completely blocking the main gate. The 10 warriors in the front row simultaneously holster their bolt guns at their waists. In a perfectly synchronized motion, they retrieve from their back-mounted magnetic racks. Head weapon have used in combat, connected to a backpack fuel tank. The Hellfire Heavy Incinerator, a weapon typically used to cleanse. Tyranid nests in space hulks. Work. Pressurization pumps and incinerators activate simultaneously. Igniters at the nozzles light up with crimson indicator lights. The surrounding air warps from the intense heat. Alik raises his bolt pistol, aims at a specter charging at the forefront, and expressionlessly pulls the trigger. Bang. The bolt penetrates the specter's form and detonates behind it. Whoosh. 10 thick jets of flame, glowing an eerie dark green, roar and surge forth at the same moment. 10 fire dragons intertwine and merge in the air, forming a wall of fire 30 meters wide, 10 meters high, constantly advancing. The air in the entire hall is ignited in an instant. The temperature plummets from below zero. It skyrockets slightly to 3,000 degrees. The frost-covered ground instantly dries, cracks, then melts. The specters charging at the very front don't even have time to scream. Their negative energy spectral forms vaporize instantly upon contact with the alchemical flames. Evaporating. Piercing shrieks rend the sky. This fire travels along the psychic connections, burning directly into the depths of their souls. Alchemical toxins spread on the ethereal plane, slowly dismantling and neutralizing corrupt spiritual structures. How is this possible? The Wraith Lord's voice carries unmistakable terror for the first time. What kind of fire is this? Why it burns spectral forms? The acetate's wall of fire advances step by step. With each step, hundreds of specters are annihilated. The once opulent crystal chandeliers, unable to withstand the heat, shatter into countless fragments raining down. The expensive carpets instantly turn to ash. Rotting delicacies become black charcoal. The entire hall transforms into a massive incinerator. No, stop. The Wraith Lord finally breaks. It realizes these people aren't here to perform an exorcism at all. I surrender. I can leave this place. I can give this city back to you. The First Legion does not accept surrender. Alike raises his hand, makes a downward gesture, and the flames surge once more, even bursting through the roof. The entire mayor's mansion begins to crumble under this terrifying heat. Thick black smoke billows straight into the sky. Over the scarred ruins of Fog City's East District, a heavy assault transport hovers at a low altitude of 30 feet. It bears no identifying markings. Its entire body a matte, light-devouring dark gray. Anti-gravity turbines emit high-frequency beams, grinding the remaining bricks and rubble on the ground. The light stands at the edge of the ruins. Cargo is loaded. Two silent giants step forward, carrying a black containment bag woven from high polymer. The bag is not still. It convulses and contorts violently. Muffled whimpers coming from within. The sound of nails scratching the inner wall comes through the thick fabric. The light gives a slight nod, scanning the battlefield, the mayor's mansion, just after the slaughter. That lair which once harbored the Wraith Lord, filled with twisted space and profane ruins. Now, only scorched, blackened rubble remains. Evacuate. The light reaches out, grasping the high-strength alloy cable lowered from the craft. The winch motor slowly hoists his half-ton powered armor frame, pulling him into the cabin. As the last soldier steps in, the heavy airtight hatch slams shut with a hiss of hydraulics. The light does not head for a seat. He walks straight to the weapons console by the hatch. Enters a string of runic code on the panel. On the screen, a red warning flashes frantically. Atomic deconstruction activated. Tactical yield. Detonation in 3. Alik's finger hovers over the crimson detonation key. Through the thick ballistic glass of the viewport, he looks down at the ruins faintly visible in the mist. He presses. At first, silence. Light outpaces sound. A blinding, pure white sphere of light expands silently over Fog City's East District. The heat released by the expanding sphere transcends the very concept of combustion. Every structure within a 500-meter radius is vaporized as the white light sweeps over them. Then comes the all-destroying shockwave. Viewed from the aircraft's window, a massive tremor shakes the entire East District. The surrounding buildings collapsed like fragile houses and cars, shattering into pieces. The light sphere flickered violently once within the fog. Then it rapidly collapsed, dimmed, and vanished. All the material fuel had been completely consumed. When the light faded on the ground, only a crater 500 meters diameter remained, its edges smooth as glass, its bottom still flowing with crimson magma. The transport aircraft gained altitude. Its engines roared through the thick, murky fog layer. It flew towards the void beyond the atmosphere. Inside the cabin, a deathly silence prevailed. The acetates sat in their fishchairs, hands resting on the bolt guns at their chests. They were like silent statues. They did not converse. They did not celebrate. They did not even remove their helmets, as if they were part of the power armor itself, never needing rest. As the altitude climbed, the Fog City below grew smaller and smaller. The dim gaslight had become tiny, dust like specks of light, flickering in the endless darkness. Alike reached out and pressed the communication room on the side of his helmet. He opened the channel to the Terra Command Center. This is the First Legion. Aili Kutalan IC. Mission concluded. The ether threat has been eliminated. The transport's engines expelled a trail of ghostly blue plasma. It became a streak of light in the pitch-black night sky, vanishing into the vast sea of stars. The 6th micro-season dual period concludes. Civilization total ranking. Guhang, rank 842. The 6th micro-season ends. The 7th micro-season is now commencing. The scene on the screen abruptly shifted. No longer a smoke-filled battlefield, nor a wasteland saturated with radiation. The image froze on a perilous mountain range engulfed in a blizzard. An ancient, crumbling, yet still stubbornly dignified stone structure stood atop a cliff in Europa. Universal interpretation. When your civilization achieves material unification and establishes a powerful military, how will you deal with the old beliefs entrenched in the ruins of the past era? Will you be tolerant? Will you integrate? Will you establish a single absolute truth? Guhang looked at this theme. He opened the civilization blueprint for the human empire. Image, taste, social branch, turned to the deepest part of the sociological philosophy branch. There, a special node had always remained inactive. It was created by the Emperor End of Unification Wars to thoroughly eradicate the breeding grounds of war corruption, to liberate humanity from dependence on deities. An ideological movement was initiated. The imperial truth. Physical unification is complete. Guhang extended his hand, zooming in on a holographic map, pinpointing the coordinates deep within Europa's snow-capped mountains, where Terra's last priest resides, Wulioolase. He is the final bastion of the old era superstitions, and its conscience's last guardian. But the new age needs no guardians. It demands obedience. It requires a power superior, purer, close to the Emperor's essence than exquisite, the sacred. Guhang's finger moved to the military theory branch, to a hidden node always shrouded in the Emperor's shadow. The exclusive level node, Legio Custodes prototype, described not as soldiers, but as the Emperor's companions, the ultimate form of humanity. Each custodian is a unique masterpiece, possessing strength and wisdom far surpassing exquisite. Guhang pressed the confirm key. Command confirmed. Promulgating the imperial truth. Recruiting the 10,000. Strategic deployment complete. The 7th micro-season. Historical simulation. Commencing. The screen began to shift. The camera pulled towards the depths of the Himalayan palace. A massive golden door slowly opened. Heavy footsteps echoed through the vast corridor. A squad clad in Oromite power armor, wearing towering plumed helms, wielding guardian spears, golden giants, emerged from the shadows. The one at the forefront wore no helmet. His face was resolute and perfect, his eyes cold and detached. Constantine Valder, Captain General of the Custodian Guard, the Emperor's Spear. He approached the Emperor's throne, knelt on one knee. My lord, one last church remains on Terra. From the shadows, a towering figure slowly rose. He donned a simple, hooded robe of coarse cloth, yet the light in his eyes burned brighter than ever. Come, Valder. The Emperor's voice, carried the weight of history. Let us meet this last priest to tell him and all humanity, the age of gods is over. Europa, Caucasus wasteland. A blizzard howled. Stained glass windows rattled in their lead frames. This was the church of the lightning stone. Inside, the air was thick. Hundreds of refugees crammed between pews, bodies pressed together. No one dared breathe loudly. Hundreds of terrified eyes fixed on the heavy oak door. Father Julio Lasse sat on the stone steps below the altar, clutching a half-empty bottle of cheap anisette. Fondhu's once gilded priestly robes were now stained with grease. He tilted his head back and took a large gulp of strong liquor. The fiery liquid burned his way down his throat. Only this pain could suppress the spasms in his stomach. Father. From a corner, the girl Ayla, wrapped in a tattered woolen blanket, spoke up. Are they still out there? Yes. The old man's voice was hoarse and rough. Death doesn't need sleep. 3 days. That army has been camped at the foot of the mountain for 3 whole days. Julio pushed himself up, leaning on his knees, and walked to the window. With frostbitten hands, he wiped the frost from the glass. Below the snow line stood a black line of steel. Astartes in pitch-black power armor. These giants lit no fires, spoke no words, and did not move a single inch. Snow piled up on their pauldrons and bolt guns, like killing machines awaiting their command. Silence so thick suffocating. This absolute discipline was even more terrifying. And then, a low-frequency vibration pressed down. The ancient stone dome of the church began to tremble. Dust sifted down. The fire in the hearth was smothered by the pressure, instantly dimming. This was no wind. It was a roar of massive thrust engines tearing through the atmosphere. The clouds were violently ripped apart. A silver aircraft pierced the air with a shriek of its turbines. The Aquila land. This relic of the dark age of technology emitted no black smoke, relying on the force field generated by its anti-grav engines. To hover gracefully in the clearing before the church doors. The invisible gravity field instantly compressed the surrounding snow into solid ice. The thousands of black Astartes, previously motionless, reacted in the same second, without a single command. Thousands of giants stepped back in unison and knelt on one knee. Heads bowed low. The ship's hatch opened with a hiss of hydraulics. A golden ramp extended downward. SWAT giants, nearly 3 meters tall, stepped onto snow. They were clad in golden battleplate forged by the oarmen. Their crimson horsehair crests whipping in the fierce wind. The guardian spears in their hands gleamed faintly. The custodian guard, the emperor's personal protectors, fanned out with fluid grace, instantly securing all paths to the church. Captain General Constantine Valder removed his tall, pointed helm, then turned, spear in hand, and bowed his head respectfully. The figure emerged. No power armor, no weapons, no halo. Just a man in a rough gray robe. With a deep hood, he stood out against the backdrop of the Golden Giants and the Black Legion. Appearing utterly ordinary, the man tightened his cloak. He braved the blizzard toward the church door. Inside, dead silence reigned. A knock echoed. F.A. Father. Ayla's teeth chattered. Julio tossed the empty bottle aside, straightened his collar. Don't be afraid, he told the refugees behind him. But his own hands trembled. As long as the cross stands. This is God's domain. An old man stepped forward, drew back the heavy bolt. The door creaked open. Wind and snow rushed in, scattering embers from the hearth. In the doorway stood a tall figure, cloak dusted with snow. The man spoke. The storm outside is fierce. Mind if I come in for a drink, father? The man pulled back his hood, revealing a stern, deep-set face. Long black hair fell over his shoulders, damp with melting snow. Julio instinctively took half a step back. Come in. Julio, step aside. Please enter. The man strode into the church. As he crossed the threshold, the refugees, crowding the aisle, instinctively parted to either side, ignoring the surrounding fear. He walked straight to the hearth. He sat in the priest's old wooden chair and stretched his hands toward the fire. The fire's nearly out. He took a log from the wood pile and tossed it onto the embers. A natural motion. The flames leaped back to life, illuminating his calm face. He turned to look at Julio, still standing by the door. The man drew a silver flask from his coat, placed it on the table. Your wine is gone. I brought something better. A vintage from before the 20-year unification war of Terra. Julio shut the great door, sealing out the blizzard and the monsters. He took a deep breath, walked back to the table, and sat opposite the man. I am Julio Eolase. This is the last church on Terra. I know, the man said, unscrewing the flask and pouring from them both. The man raised his glass, his gaze profound as abyss. That's why I'm here. I am called Revelation. He lifted his cup in salute. I came to accompany you on your final journey, and to put an end to this long, long night. The air inside the church was frigid. The last pine logs on the hearth crackled and popped. Julio stared at the man across the long table. This visitor, who called himself Revelation, possessed the perfect form defying the wasteland's logic. Clad in coarse linen, he sat there, his aura contained. Revelation raised the silver flask to the long night, and to the dawn that follows. Dawn. Julio set his cup down, his lip twisting. You call those Black Reapers dawn? They burn villages, topple totems. They turn those who won't kneel to ash, and those who will into slaves. They pass, only scorched earth remains. If this is dawn, I'd rather eternal night. Not insane. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. His gaze was cold, objective. They're not death priests. They're monsters. They're scalpels. Removing a tumor always involves bleeding, pain, and scars. You can't call a scalpel evil because it hurts. Tumor. Julio shot up, knocking over the oak chair behind him. You call faith a tumor? The old man pointed at the shadowed idol, voice hoarse with rage. In this hell, when a Nadiku tyrant vaporized oceans with nukes, when gene thieves devoured the living in sewers, who gave refugees courage? God. Faith told them the soul is eternal. Faith kept them from becoming beasts before starvation took them. Without that idol, this place would be a cannibal slaughterhouse. Sit, Julio. You're a good man. You aid the poor in the wasteland, feed orphans with your last scraps. You'd face that army outside to protect them. But you've made a fatal mistake. You credit humanity's light to divine grace. You say faith restrains the beast.
But history shows the opposite.
I've seen holy wars in God's name turn hive cities to ash. Fanatics burning heretics, praising the Lord's mercy to their screams. Priest, look out the window. My soldiers kill on orders for Terra's unification. It's strategic. Their killing is a cold, controlled, industrial process. They're acitate, those believers. They kill from fanaticism, because they think they're doing God's work. That killing has no limits, no reason, no predictability. Religion isn't a cure. It's an anesthetic. It numbs humanity to pain, keeps them ignorant and complacent. Myth of science to change the fate. Enlightenment stood and walked to the fireplace. He watched the dying flames, his back to Julio. Humanity must wake up. We must conquer the stars, face the horrors in the galaxy's depths. On that battlefield, prayers are useless. God won't save us. The man turned, his eyes locking onto Liao's pale face. Only reason, only science, only iron can ensure humanity's survival as a species. Enlightenment glanced at the ancient mechanical clock on the wall. Rusted gears ground together with a clack, clack, clack. The hour in mid-hands met at 12. Dawn. The midnight bell tolled. Its heavy metal clang pierced the blizzard, echoing through the empty Caucasus Valley. Time's up, Willie-A-O. He straightened his hemp robe, turned, and walked toward the door. The oak door swung open wide, letting a blast of wind and snow. Two praetorian guards, each over 3 meters tall, stood at the church entrance. And in the background, beyond the swirling blizzard, the supergiant land battleship known as the Mountain Mover stood like a moving mountain of steel. This relic from the Pacific War era was never decommissioned. Its massive treads crushed rock, embedding themselves in the frozen ground. The composite armor plates of its hull blotted out half the sky. The twin-length macro cannon turret slowly rotated. Its black, gaping muzzle was locked dead on this tiny church. No surrender demands, no one-shots, just an overwhelming display of absolute force. Farewell, last priest. You and your god belong to the past. 1st Legion, Field Command Post, Caucasus Mountains, Sector N42. Severe blizzard. Low visibility. Company Commander Morian stood on a rocky outcrop. A thin frost covered his black ceramite armor. Inside his helmet, tactical data scrolled in a crimson waterfall in the lower left of his visor. At the center of his view, the Mountain Mover's black muzzle was locked dead on this tiny church. Execute verification. Incinerator teams advance. Target. 1 level structure ahead. Execute total clearance. 20 AC Tate units strode forward. They carried massive pressurized fuel tanks, thick hoses connecting to their heavy flommers. With a single, unified mechanical sound of lost engine. Safety valves opened. Ignition mechanisms activated. A ghostly blue pilot light flickered violently in their wind. The old man was struggling to push the heavy oak door shut. Open fire. 20 triggers pulled simultaneously. His high-pressure gas screamed. 20 crimson fire dragons roared forth. Promethium fuel, enhanced by alchemy, ignited the instant it left the nozzles. A viscous, highly adhesive liquid gel, burning at 3,000 degrees, surged toward the church. The extreme heat instantly vaporized the snow along its path, creating a thick white fog that swallowed the church door. The ancient oak door dehydrated, charred, and disintegrated upon contact with the promethium. The old man, Father Willie-A-O, did not retreat. He turned and spread his arms wide. He used his frail body to shield the refugees behind him. The clinging fire gel covered his entire form. Flesh contracted and charred in milliseconds. Bones cracked sharply in the heat. In the blink of an eye, the old man who tried to halt the wheel of time was reduced to a charred husk, scattered amidst the collapsing doorframe. Mission complete. This is the price that must be paid for the new era. The holographic projection in the live stream froze amidst the ashes. The 7th micro-season development period has ended. General Hu Yu spoke. In the model of total war, diversified faith is the greatest centrifugal force. If a soldier believes in a god of peace, he cannot pull the trigger. If he believes in an afterlife, he will undervalue the lies of this one. Hu Yu pointed at the screen at the 1st Legion, silent as iron. Gu Heng established the imperial truth, not for happiness, but for unity of will. He forcibly anchored the faith of the entire civilization in the concept of humanity. This greatly boosts mobilization and obedience in the short term. The risk is this. Once this belief system cracks or faces horrors beyond reason, the entire civilization collapses instantly. Mission of this calculation complete. Survivability, 82 points.
System comment. Civil war risk from religion reduced to 0.
Stability under high pressure is fragile, yet efficient. Adaptability, 95 points. System comment. The imperial truth is more than ideology. It's a mental vaccine against supernatural threats. The civilization shows high resistance to unspeakable horrors. Self-consistency, 100 points. Perfect. System comment. From the Human Survival Act to burning churches, its actions consistently follow the axiom, survival above all. This round's composite score, 92.2 points. The 7th micro-season development phase has ended. Entering the confrontation phase. Matching an opponent based on your overall ranking. You know.
842.
The ring on the screen spun rapidly, countless civilization emblems flashing before Gu Heng. Seconds later, it stopped. A data card emitting blinding white light. With an emblem of a burning cross and scepter popped up. Match successful. Opponent, no. 815. Team, Holy See Theocracy. Civilization type, transcendent faith. Core traits, monotheistic, zealous faith, divine art system, divine descent. Description, a theocratic civilization where church and state are one. They believe they're the chosen people of the one true God, viewing all non-believers as heretics. Their military consists of temper knights and priests wielding divine arts, capable of summoning angels in battle. Gu Heng expressionlessly closed the resource interface. His gaze fell on the bottom right corner of the screen. There, a golden scale icon pulsed at a rate of once per second. Special mechanism, civilization wager. A high-risk protocol a player can initiate. Bypassing the system's regular reward mechanism, it directly stakes one's core assets against the opponent's. Winner takes all. Loser gets dust. Gu Heng raised his hand. His index finger hovered over the virtual button for half a second, then pressed down hard. The interface instantly expanded. He calls up his civilization's foundational architecture database. His fingers dragged across the light screen. An icon emitting a dark purple halo. Its internal data jumping exponentially. It was dragged out. The warp, and the complete, mature psionic tech tree for that dimension. Gu Heng clicked initiate wager. Finally, he opened the clause editor and typed. Wager terms. If I lose, all unlocked psionic-related technologies on my tech tree, alongside the development environment for our unique psychic abilities in subspace, will be transferred to you entirely free of charge. In the real world's central live stream, the main screen suddenly switched. A massive envelope icon blazing with golden flames dominated the view of all viewers. Contestant 9527 has initiated a civilization wager protocol against contestant 815. The audience erupted into a massive uproar. The confrontation hasn't even begun. Their forces haven't met on the map yet. The wager is already on. This violates conventional probing engagement principles. Understand? Admiral, snaps out. Civilization wager. Attention, viewers. This is the first time since the tournament began that a contestant has actively triggered this mechanism. Let's recall the previous tournament's battle. The top seed then, the Star Sea Empire, signed a similar wager agreement when the situation was unclear. But you pointed at that plummeting curve. The result was catastrophic. The Star Sea Empire lost their core curvature engine technology. That civilization remains in the sublight speed era to this day, relegated to second-rate status. Contestant 9527 has staked the part of the civilization system with the highest energy readings. The old general gestured, his finger tracing through the air. He pulled the opponent's real-time resource curve, the sacred domain theocracy, to the center of the big screen. It was a dying curve. The blue line, representing energy reserves over time, had already dipped below the red warning threshold. Time is sliding towards zero. Look here, the sacred domain theocracy is a typical theocratic civilization. Their divine shields, angel summons, and societal functions all rely on faith energy. But in the resource-scarce early game, their production can't keep up with the consumption. Contestant 9547 has precisely targeted his strategic weakness. He possesses something of immense energy, and that something is exactly what his opponent desperately needs right now. He's betting on his opponent's greed. Sacred domain theocracy, navigator's pod. Lucio C sat in a control chair simulated as a golden throne. A golden light screen forcibly unfolded before him, incoming protocol from the opponent. The moment his eyes scanned the content, his pupils contracted violently. Energy density, S-class, infinite. Lucio C sat bolt upright and tapped open the detailed parameter panel. Luxy UC's breathing grew heavy. Energy of this magnitude could instantly awaken his slumbering god, or even trigger a full-scale evolution. Lucio C reached out and pressed his hand firmly onto the golden handprint icon on the screen. Accepted for the glory of the sacred domain. Hey, protocol established. The civilization wager is officially in effect. On the screen, the PvP scenario began generating. Guheng looked to the left side data panel. A massive, intangible data stream surged through the stellar network's underlying channels, stripping from his civilization's database and flooding towards the opponent's civilization port. The subspace. He hadn't lied to Lucio C. That place truly is infinite energy. Guheng watched the sky above the opponent's once holy, radiant white city. A hairline crack was splitting open in the heavens. The PvP scenario, Mask of Divine Grace, officially begins. PvP scenario, Mask of Divine Grace, is loaded. Two utterly disparate worlds collided violently within the dimensional rift. Hive Primus Prometheus, under Hive level 113, Imperial Capital. There is no sky here. Overhead is a 3-kilometer thick, rusting armor plate dripping with waste machine oil. The air recyclers wheezed like dying things, spewing a foul mix of metallic rust, chemical waste, and the sour sweat of billions. While the Luogo dragged a crippled leg through the muddy, sludge-like streets. That leg was crushed 3 years ago by a fallen macro cannon gear in the foundry. But in the Underhive, there's no medical insurance, only ration coupons docked for lost efficiency. 16-hour shift over. He pried a pale gray brick from the auto dispenser. Corpse starch, a hard block made from recycled dead citizens, executed convicts, and rotten fungi, processed under high pressure for dehydration and preservation. The wrapper bore the Imperial Aquila and fine print. Save protein for the Emperor. It had no taste. The texture was like chewing wax, the hardness rival brick. Luogo huddled in a corner shadow, gnawing desperately the brick with rotten teeth. The hard lump scraped his throat, triggering a violent dry heave. Piercing burst of static electricity shattered the eyes at the suns. Then the massive blast door, sealed for 2 whole centuries to the quarantine zone, slammed open without warning. No alarm, only song. A song, crisp, soft, sticky sweet, with a sickly sweetness that made the scalp crawl, utterly unlike the overseer's hoarse roars. White light poured from behind the door, piercing the perpetual, heavy metal smog. A procession clad in silken, white robes entered. In this world of grease and grime, of only gray and black, they were clean, an act of provocation. The woman leading them walked barefoot on the filth-covered ground. Her face was exquisitely beautiful, unnaturally so, skin glowing faintly from within. Beautiful. So beautiful. He forgot to breathe for a moment. Lost lambs. Her voice, amplified by an implanted vocal grill in her throat, created a strange resonance, echoing under the steel dome. Fear not. We bring divine grace and food. The attendants behind her unveiled a massive insulated container. A wave of heat rolled out. The aroma of baked wheat hit everyone's olfactory nerves like a sledgehammer. Real carbohydrates. Not unidentified biomass. Not synthetic chemical paste, but genuine. A luxury from the agri-worlds. Luaga's stomach convulsed violently. A primal, genetic hunger instantly overwhelmed all reason, even overwhelming the fear of the unknown. Someone rushed out first, shouting, "Food, give it to me." The crowd surged towards the gate like a swarm of roaches. For a bite of bread, they'd even trample those in front into the mud. Back off. Violators will be shot. A dull thud echoed. Not the expensive roar of a bolt gun, but the distinctive boom of a large-caliber riot shotgun. From the elevated walkways flanking the street, a squad of enforcers clad in black carapace armor appeared. They wore full-face respirator masks. As the cheapest and most efficient tool of violence in Hive City, the lead enforcer captain swung a live riot baton, smashing it hard into the spine of the frontmost rider. Crack! Son of bone, snapping was hitting. The man went limp like mud, but the frenzied crowd behind still pushed forward. This is an illegal assembly. This is contact with heresy. The captain roared, racking shotgun slide. A massive shell casing clattered to the ground. Muzzles were raised for a second volley. Wait! A woman named Anna pushed through the chaotic crowd. Ignoring the dark gun barrels, she walked straight to the rider with a broken spine. The enforcer captain's finger rested on the trigger, his eyes narrowing behind his tactical visor. He hesitated. Imperial law mandated execution for contact with heretics, but that woman held bread. He was hungry too. Ration vouchers had been delayed for 3 months. His armor was stuffed with unfulfilled IOUs. In that moment of hesitation, Anna knelt down. She pushed a soft piece of bread into the bloodied mouth of the injured man, and placed her hand on the broken spine. Eat, she said. God cannot bear to see his people suffer. Golden light erupted from her palm. Luogo watched clearly from just 2 meters away. It wasn't just light. It was like a living, gelatinous substance. It wormed into the victim's flesh, forcibly pulling the shattered bones back into place. Click! Muscles writhed violently beneath the skin, making wet tearing and bone-grinding sounds. This was clearly not natural healing, but cells proliferating madly under catalytic energy. The cost was a tumorous mass of growth tissue forming over the healed wound. But in the end, the spine was reconnected. 3 seconds. The previously paralyzed man suddenly jerked upright. He frantically felt his own back, then swallowed the bread in his mouth like a madman. It's healed. It's really healed. The man knelt on the ground, snot, tears, and breadcrumbs streaming down his face. Sorcery. The enforcer captain took half a step back, his voice trembling. But the next second, his stomach growled. Anna smiled, stood up, and pushed a basket of steaming hot bread towards the enforcers. God also loves the children who bear swords. The captain stared at the golden crust, smelling the intoxicating aroma that drove him mad. His Adam's apple pop. He lowered his gun. Upper District Tactical Command Room. A holographic screen projected the entire scene in midair. Departmental Unitorum Quester Wakasi watched the screen, a cheap, burnt-out cigarette between his fingers. He blew out a smoke ring, his eyes cold as iron. Using biomass repair to perform miracles. Using high-sugar, high-calorie food to break their will. A textbook infiltration tactic. He stared at the loyalty reading plummeting on the screen. Then looked at the enforcers who had dropped their batons, kneeling to devour bread. This is an overt scheme. They're betting the Empire won't fire on its own civilians, or that its resources are depleted, unable to sustain high-pressure rule. But does the Empire care? No. Wakashi crushed his cigarette and activated the encrypted comm to the governor's mansion. Report this up the chain, and archive this footage. Title it, Cheap Loyalty. At the same moment, the Holy Sea's supreme sanctum, a sea of light, streets paved with spotless white jade. crystal fountains flowing with mead. No stench of engine oil, only intoxicating floral scents in the air. Imperial Intelligence Officer Yajanasi walked the pilgrim's path. He wore no conspicuous uniform, just a heavy lead-lined coat. His breath mask connected to an isolated life support system on his back, sealing him off. Readings on his retinal aspects were spiking wildly. Warning, environmental anomalous energy concentration exceeds 300%. Warning, trace warp radiation detected. Your Excellency, Yajanasi. The receiving Inquisitor, Colossi, didn't notice his guests on ease. He gestured to the citizens around them, faces beaming with blissful smiles. Such is the might of our Lord. No hunger, no disease, no suffering. Compared to your world of steel and ash, is this not paradise? Yajanasi said nothing. He observed. Tactical lenses switched to thermal imaging. The so-called blissful citizens' body temperatures were alarmingly high. Anyone with imperial education could see it with a moment's thought. Their nervous systems were clearly in a state of extreme excitation, and their dopamine secretion levels were naturally several times the norm. What is that over there? Yajanasi pointed to the Colosseum at the Plaza Center. The Knight orders morning drills. Colossi puffed his chest with pride. Templars are known for temperance and honor. Yajanasi adjusted his focus. He wasn't lying. It was indeed a drill. Two knights were bludgeoning each other with practice swords. One knight's forearm was shattered by the blunt force, white bone piercing the skin. A normal man would have passed out from the pain. That knight was laughing. He cackled, grabbing his opponent's blade with a broken hand, then smashed his helmet into his opponent's face. Once, twice, thrice, until the opponent's visor caved in. The spectators didn't scream. They erupted in near-maniacal cheers. Their expressions twisted and frenzied, eyes glazed with delirium. Yajanasi turned to Colossi. Colossi's smile faltered for a second. He wiped cold sweat from his brow with a handkerchief. The divine grace is overwhelming. The warrior's zeal can run a bit high. It's a testament to their faith in our Lord. Iganasi didn't argue back. He silently activated the black box recorder on his waist. This way, please, Lord Iganasi. Colossi quickly changed the subject, leading him towards the towering cathedral. Tonight is the divine grace ceremony. He will witness our Lord's miracle firsthand. Iganasi looked up. Atop the cathedral, a massive amethyst crystal pulsed. In the eyes of ordinary people, that is a sacred light. I look forward to it. Iganasi said calmly. His finger, hidden in his sleeve, gently pressed the detonator of the microthermite bomb. Prometheus Hive, sublevel 113, Sector C, habitation unit. Drip. A drop of highly corrosive industrial condensate seeped from a crack in the ventilation duct. The droplet fell under gravity, striking the already mottled, galvanized floor. White smoke rose. A tiny pit was etched into the floor surface by the strong acid. This was the only sound in Unit C-409. Luoga stood at the unit door. His hands were clutched tightly against the chest. There was a coarse paper package soaked in grease. His body heat through his coveralls made the package scalding hot. The grease volatilized in the heat, emitting a burnt, carbohydrate-like aroma. Luoga reached out a hand, black with oil and frostbite, and grasped the door handle. The handle was cold, covered in a slimy layer of moss. He pressed down hard. The hinges let out a metallic creak. The iron door swung inward. Masha, I brought the bread back. He quickly slipped inside, closed the door behind him, and leaned his back against the cold door panel, shutting out the radioactive dust and acid rain outside. Inside was deathly quiet. Luoga frowned. He groped in the dark for the wall, his fingers finding the faulty switch. Electricity crackled. The dim tungsten filament bulb flittered twice, then finally stabilized. Masha sat on the edge of the bed. Her back was to the door. The faded linen nightgown hung on her frame. Normally, this garment would hang loosely, draped over her body, withered by radiation sickness. But now the fabric clung tightly to her back. Her spine no longer protruded from her skin like broken, brittle twigs. A powerful, fluid spinal column supported the garment. Her shoulder blades were smooth. The muscles in her back moved slightly with her motion. She was combing her hair. Her right hand held a wooden comb with missing teeth, running from the crown of her head to the ends. Darling, you're back. Masha didn't turn around. Her voice traveled through the narrow space. It was no longer the hoarse rasp from damaged vocal cords. Her voice was clear, smooth, its tone perfect, like a female broadcaster from the upper hive. Luoga's body stiffened. As an old welder who had lived 40 years in the underhive, he had an instinctive wariness of anomalies. Luoga took a step. He walked to the rickety wooden table, set down the greasy paper package, then circled to the front of the bed and crouched down. At eye level, the light falls on Masha's face. Luoga's pupils instantly constrict. The woman before him has an unfamiliar face. That face, covered in radiation spots, with sunken eyes and skin like dried bark, is gone. In its place is a plump, ruddy face. Skin tight to the extreme, with no pores or blemishes. Her once gray, sparse, brittle hair is now jet black and thick. Each strand is coated in a thick layer of oil, smoothly cascading down her chest. Masha, Luoga extends her hand. Fingertips rough as sandpaper touch his wife's cheek. No elasticity or warmth of human skin. The feel is tough, slick, scalding. The temperature from her skin is at least 42 degrees. For a normal human, this body heat means protein denaturation, brain tissue damage, organ failure. But Masha is smiling. The upper curve of her lips precise and steady. She raises her hand, grabbing Luoga's wrist. That hand is pale and slender, nails a healthy pink. Suddenly tightens. Luoga feels a tremendous grip, his wrist bones emitting a faint, dislocating sound. Agony shoots up his nerves to his brain. Look at me, Luoga. Masha presses her face into Luoga's grease-stained palm, rubbing hard. That Sanctus, the bread she gave, is divine medicine. After swallowing it, it felt like I swallowed a red-hot coal in my gut. So hot, but so comfortable. The rotted lungs, the putrid flesh, all pushed out by new growths. Enduring the wrist pain, Luoga stares into his wife's eyes. Those eyes are unnaturally large. The whites are flawless, not a trace of red. The iris is a strange, eerie green. A miracle. Luoga mutters to himself, tears welling in his eyes. He doesn't understand gene sequence alteration, biological mutation. He only knows the woman condemned by the Hive City doctors is now alive. She's become beautiful, strong. This is a miracle. Eat it quickly. With a trembling left hand, Luoga tears open the oil paper package on the table, exposing a small piece of bread. I brought another piece back. This is real food. This is for you. He holds the bread out to his wife. Masha lowers her head. The loving look in her eyes instantly chills. I'm not hungry. How can you not be hungry? You've only had filtered water for 3 days. This is made from refined wheat. Really, I'm not hungry. This thing has no energy. Masha leans close to Luoga. Her nose touches the skin over Luoga's pulsing carotid artery, taking a deep breath. Luoga feels the hairs on his neck stand on end. I'm so thirsty. Thirsty? I'll get the water canteen. The filtered water is boiled. No need. Masha's left hand also reaches out, wrapping around Luoga's waist. Her arms suddenly tighten. Crack. Luoga hears the brittle sound of his own chest ribs giving way under strain. He looks down in shock, finding himself locked tightly in his wife's embrace. Those seemingly delicate arms were now filled with strength. I need more water. Masha's voice was muffled. In his cold, dark underhive, his wife had always been his sole comfort. At the nape of his neck, his blind spot, Masha's smooth skin was writhing violently. Several pink, Rice-sized tumors pushed through the epidermis, sprouting an eyeball. I greedily stared at the violently pulsing blood vessels on Luoga's neck.
In the scene,
Luoga was holding his wife, fast asleep. Luoga's body temperature reading was a normal pale orange, indicating fatigue and sleep. But the woman named Masha, she was a burning crimson. That abnormal heat source, like some kind of living parasitic root, crawled along her spine, spreading wildly towards her brain and limbs. The shape of the heat source was extremely unstable, constantly mutating. 1 second ago, it resembled a blooming lotus. 1 second later, it became a mass of soft tentacles. The next moment, in the thermal map, it twisted into a screaming human face. Late at night, the dripping from the pipes grew rapid, like a death knell countdown. Luoga slept deeply. It was the most peaceful sleep he'd had in years. But in his dream, he found no peace. He dreamed of running barefoot through a purple, fleshy sea of flowers. The flowers had dizzyingly beautiful colors, their petals delicate like a maiden's skin, exuding a sickly sweet blood scent. The more he ran, the more exhausted he became. His legs felt like lead. When he stopped and leaned close to a giant peony, the petals suddenly opened, revealing a mouth filled with hints, sharp teeth with abyssal. His wife's voice came from deep within the flower seed, accompanied by a wet, crunching, chewing sound. Luoga jolted awake, sitting bolt upright in bed. His chest heaved, sweat soaking through his undershirt. The room was pitch black. From a corner came a wet, crisp sound of bones being crushed. Luoga instinctively reached for the space beside him. Empty. The bedsheet still held that startling, intense heat, but the person was gone. Masha, fear doused his drowsiness like ice water. Luoga fumbled, grabbing the heavy industrial wrench by the bed, his only weapon for self-defense. His other hand switched on the emergency flashlight. The beam pierced the darkness, sweeping the cramped room, finally settling on a corner. Masha was crouched there, her back shuddering. Her hands cradled something, and she was chewing intently. Luoga's voice trembled. Masha slowly turned her head. The flashlight beam illuminated her face. The wrench in Luoga's hand clattered onto the metal floor. That beautiful face was smeared with blood and gray fur. Her mouth revealed 2 rows of fine, sharp, shark-like serrations. Her teeth were packed with shredded meat. What she held wasn't bread. It was a mutated rat, as big as a house cat. A bottom-high giant rat, its body covered in pustules. She gave Luoga a blissful, yet utterly twisted smile. Darling, the bread is gone. I'm still so hungry. She tossed the rat aside. Her body began to contort. Her elbow joints snapped backwards. Her knees bent the wrong way. She dropped to all fours. The whole person resembled a humanoid spider, crawling towards Luoga. The flashlight beam shook violently from Luoga's trembling. It swept across Masha's forehead, right in the center of that once smooth, jade-like forehead. The flesh split open like a zipper. A dark green vertical eye snapped open. That eye had no whites. It fixed its gaze on Luoga's neck on the violently throbbing carotid artery. Side hall, Supreme Cathedral, Holy City. Blue smoke billowed from bronze sensors on both sides. It clogged the corridor to the inner hall like a solid mass. Kalasi stood at the corridor entrance, distinctly covering his mouth and nose. This cloying, suffocating fragrance still couldn't mask that putrid, sweet stench of blood. Kalasi's hand rested naturally on his sword hilt. I have a special pass signed by the Archbishop. Regarding today's unrest in the slums, I must report immediately. The bishop is conducting the final sacrament. Except the offerings. No one may enter. Kalasi's pupils contracted sharply. At the very moment of their standoff, a faint electric hum sounded from behind. Step aside. Big Eye, Iganasi emerged from the darkness. This observer from Terra didn't draw a gun. He held a small black cube device. Its brass needle was jumping wildly, emitting rapid clicks. Lethal radiation detected. Iganasi didn't even look at the 2 knights. He walked straight between them. A knight started to raise his halberd. Iganasi casually raised his hand, pressing the device against the knight's breastplate. BZZD. An invisible beam instantly pierced the metal. The knight's entire body jerked backwards, slamming hard against the wall, convulsing. Neural block. Kalasi, your guard's brain is flooded with dopamine. He's in a state of extreme, blissful hallucination. Even if you cut off his hand now, he'd see it as a divine blessing. Kalasi watched the knight twitching in the corner, a strange laugh escaping his lips. A cold sweat broke out on his back. Iganasi put away the instrument. He hurried deeper into the side hall. The further he went, the heavier the nauseating sweet metallic smell became. On both sides of the corridor, the once beautiful angel frescoes began to peel and model. Large patches of plaster fell away, revealing damp, blackened brick beneath. Iganasi stopped abruptly at a turn. Behind a plaster statue with one wing broken off lay a dark bundle, a ragged, filthy porcelain shirt smeared with mud and black grease. Embroidered on the collar was a symbol, the slum's mutual aid society. Kalasi recognized it. This afternoon, a beggar with a tumorous leg had knelt before his horse, kissing his boot, begging for holy water. The archbishop's attendant had taken the beggar away then, saying he'd received divine grace. Why was his shirt here? It was intact. No bloodstains. Iganasi crouched down, wiping a finger across the floor beside the fabric. His black tactical glove came away coated in a clear, sticky, gelatinous liquid. It reeked of formaldehyde. Iganasi pointed ahead. Look at the floor, Inquisitor.
The trail of slime on the ground
led all the way to the pantry door at the corridor's end. The cathedral cellar pantry passage. The heat here was unnatural, not the searing heat of flame, but a damp biological warmth like inside the cavity. With every breath, their lungs felt like they were inhaling thick soup. Kalasi felt his boots slipping. The slime on the floor grew thicker, squelching with each step, pushing open the heavy oak pantry door. They found the room unlit, save for a few thick red candles burning in the corners. Their dim flames cast long, twisted, monstrous shadows. In the room's center stood an operating table, carved from a single block of white jade. It was covered in gleaming silver utensils, each polished spotless. But on those silver platters, there was no solid food. In its place, a bizarre, pinkish paste. It was served in exquisite golden goblets and porcelain plates. Yajanasi walked to the operating table, picked up a small object from the corner of the table. Yajanasi threw that thing into the plate before Kalasi. It was a copper coin, a coin half corroded by strong acid, but with a barely legible slum relief number. Kalasi stared fixedly at that coin, embedded in the pink paste, slowly sinking. Finally engulfed by the viscous substance, Kalasi swung his sword violently, staggering towards the end of the preparation room, the door leading to the bedchamber. But he didn't push it. He froze. He heard a sound. Slurp. Gulp. From behind the door came a distinct swallowing sound. Not chewing, but a huge, wet-sucking noise, intermingled with a few satisfied sighs. Those sighs, Kalasi knew them all too well. Kalasi, the Grand Archbishop's gentle voice came from within. Are you thirsty too? Kalasi's blood ran cold. It was indeed the Grand Archbishop's voice. No trace of possessed madness, only sincere joy in his tone. Click. The lock turned. Kalasi threw the door open violently. Inside the bedchamber, only a massive, luxurious bed, and upon that bed coiled a mountain of flesh. A pile of fat, excess flesh, and sacred robes. The Grand Archbishop's body swollen to at least 3 times the size, bloated like a tick gorged with fluid. The golden silk robes, torn into strips, draped over layers upon layers of pale, wave-like skin. That skin was not still. It was breathing, writing, beneath the translucent skin. Thick blood vessels could faintly be seen, pulsing madly. Before the Grand Archbishop, several huge golden goblets were placed. He was using his swollen hand to lift one goblet, pouring the pink, viscous liquid inside into his mouth. Gluck, with a massive gulp. His already astonishing belly swelled another fraction. Bang! A red laser beam whizzed precisely past Galassi's ear, striking the goblet in the Grand Archbishop's hand. High temperature instantly melted the golden cup. The pink fluid inside exploded, transforming into a cloud of glowingly sweet steam. Yajanasi held his gun with both hands. The red light on his tactical visor locked onto the mountain of Flesh's brow. According to Imperial Truth, Article 732, any uncontrolled genetic mutation and cannibalistic behavior deemed heretics. Hive City 113, Lower Forge District. Piston scream. Hundreds of 3-meter-wide hydraulic hammers hang overhead. They tirelessly pound the forge tables. Each impact, a shock wave of scalding iron dust, slams into Luoga's face. He doesn't even blink. Luogo stands on the ether furnace control platform, a chipped, square-headed shovel in his hand. Years of furnace heat have carbonized his right side. Skin like dead bark, long numb to pain. Feed it. Stop daydreaming. The overseer's shockwave cracks. Blue arcs flash in the air. Luogo bends numbly, shoveling plasteel slag. 3 years ago, Adhere trained shredded his right arm. Muscles atrophied the skin and bone. Any effort used to send. Excruciating pain from the break. Proof he was alive. But today, that pain is gone. Replaced by strange, cloying warmth. Sweet, yet metallic. Luogo looks down. His withered, right arm visibly swells. Atrophied muscles bulge like fermenting dough, splitting old scars. No blood flows. Only pink, pulsing flesh rides in the bones. He feels no pain. Not only no pain, each pulse brings an unprecedented lightness. Luogo, look, Bart, the worker beside him, suddenly stops. The old man's face was scarred by steam, always hidden behind a heavy respirator. But now, he's removed it. Bart is smiling. His grin splits to his ears, revealing raw, pulsing gums. Is this the joy the Saintess spoke of? Joy, a word too alien for Luogo. But seeing Bart's twisted, serene face, that purple shadow in his mind grows clearer. Embrace it, and pain ends. The shovel clangs on the grate. The overseer whips around. His whip crackles with lethal blue light. Unit 739. Who said you could stop? Lumpy corpse starch. He storms over, his usual menace in tow. But he freezes. It's not just Luogo. The entire D9 sector. 3,000 laborers stop moving. They turn in unison. 3,000 eyes fix on the overseer. Some sprout tendrils. Others are compound eyes. But every face wears the same smile. Luogo looks at his own arm, now swollen purple-red, covered in fine scales. He took a step forward, the whip crackling with high voltage as it lashed his shoulder. Flesh sizzled black. Luogo didn't flinch. He didn't even feel the sting. His hand shot back, grabbing the whip's tip. Luogo yanked hard. The 200-pound foreman flew like a rag doll. Thud. Fresh bone spikes from his chest. Pierced the foreman's body armor, sinking deep. The productivity indicator overhead blinked out. Necromunda, mid-level tactical logistics center. Supervisor Wakasi stood before the command console. His face was stormy. On the hollow screen, the icon for Forge flashed a frantic red error. Report. Wakasi's voice was cold iron. All sensors are offline. That's by 10 degrees a second. Miss, you pressed the key. Static crackled from the speakers. A low, rhythmic chant from thousands of voices. Dead silence in the command hall. That sound wasn't human. It stirred a primal fear in everyone's genes. Wakasi snatched up a data slate. He didn't need to know what monster was down there. That was for the Inquisition. As supervisor, he only needed to know one thing. Production there has stopped. Forge. There are no workers left. Wakasi pulled the golden ID card from his belt. He slammed it into the master console. No workers, and they're just consumables. Initiate iron curtain. He turned the key without hesitation. Seal all access to sectors 113 through 120. Cut ventilation, water, and power. Supervisor, if we cried out, there are, or trains bound for the upper levels. If we cut the upper access now, trains on the incline will be stranded. Those, below the tracks, Wakasi cut him off. His tone was chillingly rational. If even one of those things makes it up here, the whole hive is doomed. We'll all end up flayed on the walls. Boom, the floor heaved. Kilotons of explosives detonated below, physically severing the only path upward. Wakasi stared at the dead green lights on the screen, but he couldn't relax. In that dark dead zone, a massive biothermal signature was lighting up. It wasn't fading. It was growing brighter, like a tumor swelling in the dark. And it was moving, unbelievably fast, the lower hive cargo shaft. The light vanished. The explosion collapsed the tunnel above. A massive alloy gate slammed down, turning Foundry 113 into a giant iron coffin. Emergency red lights flickered, casting the shaft in an eerie glow. But it didn't stop the spread of the mass. Luogo, what was once Luogo, that mass of flesh, clung to the shaft wall. He was no longer a single entity. His back had fused with the torsos of 3 other workers. For people sharing one set of organs, over 20 arms, like a centipede's legs, dug deep in a hard concrete wall, supporting the massive flesh mass as it climbed. The path was blocked. Luogu tilted the head attached to his shoulder, staring at the collapsed ruins overhead. No disappointment in his eyes, only infantile confusion. Why? Did they reject bliss? Beside him, the overseer's head rested peacefully, eyes closed. Purple drool trickled from his mouth. Because they can't see the light. We must bring the light up. Light, Luogo murmured. Deep in the shaft, a faint violet glow slowly rose. Saintess Anna, barefoot, stood upon a lotus throne, formed by her followers, ascending slowly. She touched no filth. Her devotees willingly became her steps. Rusted pipes on the shaft walls began to seep blood. Countless barbed petals materialized in the air. Anna looked up at the heavy blast door. She extended a slender finger, pointing gently. It's locked, children, but nothing can stop the flow of divine grace. If something can, devour it. Roar echoed. Shuffles. Amalgams like Luogu roared in unison. The tide of flesh surged, no longer seeking gaps, but using their bodies to batter the door, symbolizing imperial authority. Creak. A horrifying chewing sound echoed in the darkness. Mid-hive defensive line. Alec stood behind sandbag barricades. His bolt gun was already off safety. As garrison commander, he'd seen gang wars, mutant uprisings, but this was a first. His instinct screamed alarm. Commander, sonar detects. movement behind the door. The comms operator tore off his headset, face pale, even from meters away. The sound from the headset was dense, like countless rats gnawing on bone. Wakasi stood nearby, forcing composure. 50-centimeter reinforced plastic steel, ceramic plates in the core. Unless he used thermite bombs, otherwise crunch. A piercing screech of tearing metal cut him off. At the far end of the tunnel, the bulkhead suddenly bulged outward. Then, SEVLCH, a hand punched through the steel. No, that's no hand. It's a limb made of several thigh bones. Forcibly twisted together, ended in black house. Wakasi's pupils contracted. He watched helpless as that monstrous claw gripped the tier's edge, and again, ripped ash of 50 cm, 50 cm. Purple mist erupted from the opening. Within the mist, countless pairs of glowing eyes lit up. The light didn't retreat. He stepped forward instead. He racked a slide. The sharp clack of a round chainring echoed with startling clarity in the dead silence. Wakasi pointed at the breach, his finger trembling. That's the enemy. The light raised his rifle. His sights locked onto the widening tier. His eyes held no fear, only chilling coldness born from crawling over mountains of corpses. Director Wakasi, your job here is done.
Inform command. This isn't a riot suppression. This is war.
Ah, let us in. Let us out. Ah. Ah. Fire. Open fire. Oh. Fall back. But that thing, it just won't die. It won't die because your firepower isn't big enough. Purge. Tell the corpse commune.
The starch conversion rate for this batch of recyclables drops by 40%.
Mix the coke with low-grade rat meat. Add more binder. So what if it tastes like sand? At least the calorie count meets the standard.
Why? I just wanted to save them. Ah. Ah. Are you here to process me? I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to give them some bread. A little hope.
Tactical logs confirm your subjective intent wasn't malicious. But in this godforsaken universe, rampant kindness is a virulent poison. The world is wrong. Your kindness caused irreversible genetic mutation in 32,416 people. Your hope made them endure cellular restructuring and flesh fusion. More agonizing than hell itself before they died.
Thank you.
So it's time to end this. Cleanup complete. The contamination source has been physically cut off. Was it worth it? Just to wipe out one virus sample? You burned up half the labor force of Hive City. It was worth it. If we didn't burn it, the entire Terra would become a breeding ground for those monsters. Look over there. That's what you get for showing mercy. And what we have to do is make sure humanity survives. It's over. Number 9527 left the enemy no escape at all. This is the gamble of civilizations. The winning side initiates a compulsory expropriation request. Extracting core assets from your civilization blueprint. Once 9527 gets this void shield, its only shortcoming will be fixed.
This battle secured the most critical void shield technology. This is a qualitative leap. It's the ticket from a terrestrial power to interstellar expedition. As long as we repair this thing, our battleships can withstand the turbulence during warp travel.
Newbie support period ended. Theme for the 8th micro season released. The chains of gravity breaking free from the cradle, general interpretation. Your homeworld's resources are exhausted. For survival, your civilization must take that step and break through the atmosphere.
This is the place. Found it. The holy site of the Adeptus Mechanicus. It holds the legacy from the dark age of technology, including the prototype of a short-range warp jump engine. Strategic objective set. Expedition to Mars.
Expedition to Mars. Guhang stared at this theme, then looked at the dead Ishan-class ship. To fix it, or even just get it off the ground, would take an astronomical amount of fuel. But all fossil fuels on Terra have long been drained. Nuclear fuel reserves are also almost gone. We're out of fuel. Guhang's gaze wandered across the screen when suddenly, a red pop-up window appeared. The Imperial prison has over 20,000 captured psycho prisoners. Guhang's gaze shifted back and forth between the crippled ship and the overcrowded prison.
20,000 living units with high-energy psychic fluctuations.
Desperately needs high-energy fuel to start.
A crazy,
Dark inspiration that could only be born in the Warhammer universe
took shape in his mind.
He thought a line from psychic theory, psychic energy, is essentially the physical projection of warp energy in the material dimension.
If it's energy, it can burn. Guhang sat up straight, without hesitation.
Unique level node, Psi engine. Description: quicken engine that no longer relies on physical fuel, but instead extracts focus, burning the psychic power of high-side creatures to generate immense thrust. Then, he spent 500 more points to unlock the supporting facility. Suppression sarcophagus. Description: used to restrain psychers and connect them as batteries to the power network. 3,000 points remained. Guhang invested all of them into retrofitting the Mountain Mover. Order issued: convert the Mountain Mover into an assault lander. Power core changed. Fusion to Psi furnace. Fuel source. Psyker prison number 17. Strategic deployment complete. 8th micro season. Historical simulation. Commences. 7 kilometers beneath the Terran Palace. Central containment. Sector 7. This is the lowest level of the underground network. Kilometers of granite press overhead. A few aging heavy-duty ventilation fans. Their blades slowly turning. Forcibly pump stagnant air into this silent corridor. There's no smell of moldy straw here. Fungi can't survive 2 seconds in a high radiation environment. 24,000 psychers are crammed together. Their brains perpetually on the verge of overload. Overflowing psychic power forcibly ionizes the surrounding air. If a normal person were to step in here,
Their hair would stand on end instantly.
under the immense psychic pressure, their eardrums would rupture instantly. Thud, heavy military boots tread over waterlogged iron rings, splashing black grime. Wakassi's coat collar is turned up. A bird beak industrial gas mask covers his entire face. The respirator valve hisses dully with each step. He walks steadily, completely ignoring the surrounding whispers that would drive a normal person mad. 2 squads of guards follow closely behind. Gangs head his toes, shock rods in their hands crackle with electricity. Several heavily modified servitors drag their bloated bodies along. Their treads crushing like water. The data cables on their backs sway violently with emotion. Sir, it's just ahead. The warden leading the way is as fat as it rocks. He clutches a string of bone talismans tightly in his hand.
Can't hold them back much longer.
Wardens are constantly
Muttering in her sleep and freezing the kiln room into an ice house.
Body moved it and shattered pieces. The day before, the head's own exploded. Purple slime smeared on the wall is still wriggling. Even flamethrowers can't burn it off.
When will the higher-ups order a cleanup? Even exile is fine.
We don't need to wait for them to riot. My guard will go mad first. This isn't a prison.
It's a powder keg with a lit fuse.
He stopped in front of a one-way bulletproof glass covered in scratches. Through half a meter of reinforced glass, the massive ring-shaped prison area below was fully visible. Countless honeycomb-like cells were embedded in the vertical rock walls.
Stretching deep into the darkness.
Each cell was crammed with a ragged humanoid figure, solid with gravel around them with fine gravity, floating midair.
Others had arcs of electricity dancing at their fingertips.
20,000 potentially unstable elements at any moment.
Although these people look pitiful. If they were all released and united,
they'd become a terrifying force even the Empire would fear.
Damn psychers.
Wakassi's voice filtered through the speaker grill, carrying a metallic, distorted friction sound. Yes, the warden frantically pulled up a data slate with warning lights flashing. A total of 23,412 people, all captives from the witch hunt. Epsilon level, 17. Zeta level, 2,100. The rest are unclassified small fry, but all passed the psychic reaction test. Wakassi nodded, raising the record slate. Project codename, Mountain Mover Retrofit. Psychic conduit engine. Ignition consumption, 500 units per hour. Cruising consumption, 50 units per hour. Estimated Terra to Mars, 360 hours. Fuel shortfall, 18,500 units. Wakassi glanced at the data. Inventory, 23,000. Requirement, 18,000. Lease 5,000. Consider them the reserve tank. If the engine output is insufficient mid-journey, dump all 5,000 into the furnace for overclocking. Burn out their synapses for sublight propulsion. Enough. Wakassi pulled out a pen, slashing a heavy checkmark on the paper. The pen tip pierced through. Take them all. The warden paused. Then a wave of wild joy surged across his fat face. Dispose of them all. Praise the Emperor.
I'll have the incinerator preheated right now.
No furnace needed. Wakassi turns his head. No execution either. He pulls an animated document from his coat's inner pocket. Slaps it right onto the fat man's chest. Special material requisition order. This is here. Wakassi says flatly. As of now, Sector 7 is no longer under the Justice Department. It's under engineering. This isn't a prison. It's a fuel depot. They're not prisoners. They're consumables. The warden's mind short circuits. What does engineering want with these lunatics? To build roads. Bullshit. Wakassi doesn't bother explaining. He makes motion to certify it. Inspect the goods. Cull the disabled and those who won't fit in the tanks. Brand the rest with barcodes. Categorize them. High-grade fuel, standard fuel, kindling. The heavy servitor's optic flashes red. Its hydraulic arm emits a high-frequency whine.
A heavy scanning array is pushed into the cell block.
Then his grid instantly cells. Beep. A beam locks onto a girl sobbing in a corner. She looks to be in her teens. Dust around her loses gravity, floating upward, drawing twisted circles in the air. Vital signs stable.
Psyker. Zeta class.
A cold hydraulic lamp thrusts through the bars. Flash arm invisible. The probe tip heats to red hot instantly. She screams, struggles. Fear triggers a psychic surge. An invisible shockwave rattles the bars violently. Bulletproof glass hums. The servitor doesn't pause. The searing probe ignores the psychic shield, pierces her skin, branding a charred barcode onto her slender forearm. The stench of burnt flesh instantly fills the air. Designation, PE-1001, followed by a blue ride suppression arc. Cracks across her abdomen, forcibly cutting off her casting. She convulses, collapses, vomiting bile. Only the still smoking barcode remains clear. Next, Wakasi watches from above. Screams. Crackles electricity, sizzling a branding iron echo. His face shows no real emotion, as if overseeing a slaughterhouse line. Fat man. He suddenly speaks. Load this cargo into cryopods. What's the expected transit loss? The warden is still dazed. It takes him a moment. You mean, idiot. No psyker if they're dead. Wakasi had a line on his data slate. Recommend deep freeze for all to suppress psychic fluctuations. If this is forced to freeze, as long as the life support system is not powered, it's okay to freeze for several months. But the brain nerves must have been wasted after thawing. It's all stupid. It doesn't matter if your brain's broken. Wakasi closed the recording board with a crisp sound. As long as he's alive, he turns around. The black coat throws out a neat arc. Without looking at the hell behind you. It's only half a month's journey to Mars to load the car. The first batch of fuel must be filled into the hearth of the mountain shiver tonight. The 7th deep area at the bottom of the palace underground pipe network. There's no day or night. Only the never-ending metal scraping of the ventilator blades. The air here is poisonous. The high intensity radiation creates an electric field invisible to the naked eye. Every breath is like swallowing broken glass. Alveolar burning pain clanging. The heavy airtight gate was violently pushed open by hydraulic rods. The rusty door shaft let out a shrill scream. Shot down the black ash accumulated over 100 years of ugly, like under a dirty snow. Number 7734 instinctively shrinks his neck. That layer of ash on his face made him want to cough. But then he covered his mouth. Every move is a stinging pain. He was once a high priest, in the old warlord's palace covered with gold leaf. Finger as long as a gently hook. There were millions of believers all on their knees and kissing the tips of shoes. He was drinking filtered pure water. Smell of expensive synthetic spices now.
Now he's a numbered protein container.
7734 lift up those cloudy eyes. Ahead is a steel tunnel to the depths of the earth. The lighting ray above your head flickering on and off at a glance. Constant wire flashes crazy in high-speed energy environment. Pull the shadows of the people around them to twist and form.
Like a bunch of ghosts moving.
Behind him came a low command, not too loud, but with the tremor of the strands of metal, straight down the spine and into the brain. 7734 turned back with trepidation. The neck is so stiff that it clicks. Standing behind him is not holding a whip. Flesh-faced mortal jailer, it was a black mountain. A dark ceramic steel power armor nearly 3 meters high, blocking up all the light. The giant's eyepiece emitted a cold red light. In the dark, scanning the crowd of curling ants. Breathing valve with heavy pace rhythm. Regularly emit 2 white exhaust gas. A hissing pressure release sound. That pressure is physiological. 7734 feels his bladder contracting. It's the instinctive reaction of prey facing an apex predator. His hands tremble. He grabs the little girl's side. He's already petrified, holding on for dear life. The girl's hand is ice cold, slick with cold sweat. Leg iron scrape across the greasy metal grate floor with a harsh metallic clang. Head down, he stumbles forward, shuffling along. A line of 20,000 people sniffs his way down to depths. A silence so thick it's suffocating. Only the squelch of bare feet and puddles, ragged breathing, and the clatter of chains. This isn't transporting prisoners. It's a funeral procession heading to the crematorium. A sharp, high-frequency ringing pierces everyone's eardrums without warning. Like a red-hot steel needle jammed straight into the temple. Midline, a gaunt man suddenly stops. His whole body shudders, as if electrocuted. He clutches at it with hands, grinning desperately. 10 fingernails claw frantically into his scalp. I hear it. The engine's turning. It's hungry. It's chewing our names. Gravity field around him instantly fails. Gravel at his feet lifts first, then himself. His feet slowly leave the ground. Defying all physics, he hovers midair. Purple psychic arcs dance wildly across his withered skin, crackling, instantly illuminating his veins, making them starkly visible. Those veins turn black in an instant, riding violently under the skin like live worms. The surrounding temperature plummets. A pale frost instantly forms on the steel floor, spreading outward relentlessly. Prisoner's exhale breath, not yet dissipated, turns into falling ice shards. He's glowing. Help! I need to get out. That's a monster. Deadly silent line awakens chaos instantly. Fear is the best catalyst, even for psychers. The crowd starts shoving and trampling each other in a frenzy. 7734 is knocked hard to the ground by a burning man. His elbow smashes against an iron railing. Pain nearly knocks him out. He looks up in terror. Seeing the floating man's eyes have rolled back. Only the whites remain in the sockets. His mouth gapes open at an impossible human angle. Jaw dislocated, his whole body inflating like a balloon. Looks like he's about to burst any second. Right as that living battery is about to overload. Bang! A short, muffled bolter roar shatters the air. It makes everyone's eardrums ache. No words, no warning, no wasted movement. The figure hovering in midair was struck as if by a battering ram. The moment the 75mm mass reactive shell pierced the skull, its delayed fuse triggered. The swollen head shattered completely under the immense pressure differential. The purple arcs vanished instantly. The white frost ceased spreading. Only the corpse remained on the ground. White nerve bundles twitching in the neck cavity, and a thick scent of cordite hanging in the air. The crowd's screams were choked back by the deafening blast. A deathly silence once again enveloped the corridor. 7734 lay on the ground, gasping for air. His heart felt like it would leap from his throat. He saw the black-armored giant lower the bolt gun. A wisp of smoke still curled from the barrel. The giant didn't roar for silence. He didn't brandish a chained word in threat. He simply strode forward with heavy steps. His ceramite boot crushed the corpse's chest cavity. A brutal crunch of ribs. The giant bent down. The power armor's hydraulics groaned dully. He reached out a hand, grasped the neck of another prisoner, limp with fear on the ground, like lifting a dead chicken. He hauled him roughly back in a line, straightened him, and continued. Voice filtered down the grill. No gender, no age. Only a cold, metallic timbre. To the First Legion, this wasn't even an incident. Just a broken part on the assembly line. Kick aside. Production resumes. As long as the attrition rate stays within seconds, it warrants no emotional response. It is absolute rationality, treating human life as mere numbers. Terrified 7,734 more than the earlier month. The chill went straight to the bone. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring his scraped knees. Clutching the little girl's cold hand tightly. He kept his head down, forcing himself forward. Don't think. Don't listen. As long as you stay rational. As long as you're a compliant piece of cargo, you survive. The line ended at a vast underground hangar. No transport buses for prisoners here. Only rows of heavy, fully enclosed armored transports like steel coffins. Their engines idled. Thick exhaust pipes rhythmically belched black smoke. The ground trembled faintly. The air reeked of unburned diesel. Wakasi, in a crisp black military greatcoat, wearing pristine dress gloves. Even the grime, 7 kilometers underground. His collar is still as flat as a blade. He's holding a tactical data board, and he's looking through it. Dispatch loss rate Wakasi head also does not lift. The gold-plated pen in the hand hovers 3 over the parchment. The brain pressure overloads. An attempt to detach from the queue is executed. Company commander of the First Army, who in charge of the escort, stood before him. That company commander didn't even take off his helmet. The voice of the report is simple and simply does not have any emotional color, as if talking about a few scrap screws in line with expectations. Wakasi wrist micro-movement hit a black hook in the expected loss column. He raised his head. Those gray eyes swept over the shivering creatures in front of them. Start packing Washington Kasi closed the recording plate. The soft sound of the snap was particularly harsh in the dead hall, sorting beta and above by psionic level. The rest of the individual restraint cabinets must be used. Fill it like a sardine. He paused until he was stuffed without dying. Tone with the rigor of the engineer debugging machine. Had a 5-fold increase in the total dose of nerve blocker. I don't want them dreaming on the road. Those messy brain waves can interfere with the engine's firing program. What I want is the physical stability of this fuel. Do you understand? A few armed servants carrying a medicine cabinet came forward stiffly. The head was replaced with brass gears and sensors. Holding a large pneumatic injection gun in his hand, the needle was scary. His 7734 watching the people in front fall down one by one. The servants skillfully dragged the unconscious bodies, pressed one by one like stacking bricks. It was his turn to force it into a narrow metal container. The cold hydraulic mechanical palms of the servant clasped his arm. The force was so strong, it almost crushed his bones. 7734 didn't struggle for the moment when the needle stuck in the neck. Cold vivid medicine instantly propels blood vessels. It's like a tube of ice water. The effect is very fast. 7734 feel the tongue instantly numb. Want to shout, but can't make a sound vision edge quickly black. It's like there's a black tide coming up and consciousness is beginning to dissipate. The lid locked falling to the sea. In the last second before the complete darkness, he heard Wakasi's voice echoing through the empty hall. Cold as the final verdict. Fill the fuel into the 7th floor of the bottom compartment of the hearth. Core energy array, this is the heart of the entire giant ship. The base used to house the nuclear fusion reactor has been completely hollowed out, leaving a bottomless dark abyss 300 meters in diameter. To isolate the radiation that distorts reality, the walls are lined with 3 layers of insulating lead plates, each a meter thick. The surface of the panels is covered with rough scratches and etched silver diversion circuits. He-Facey Ta stands at the end of a suspended metal grating corridor. His hands rest on the rust-covered railing. The flesh of this tech priest has been almost entirely replaced. The left side of his head is the casing of a logic processor cast from brass. Where his left eye once was, a multispectral tactical augmented eye is now embedded. Its lens motor emits a faint hum, the aperture rapidly contracting. Zooming in, it greedily scans the connection thresholds of every conduit in the reaction grid. He has no hands. From the elbows down are 12 precise, specialized mechanical tendrils. These tendrils are plugged directly into the console's data boards. They move so fast that he don't blur. A torrent of binary instructions becomes an invisible data stream, racing down the cables into the terminal at the bottom of the abyss. This is the furnace. It finds the ore of humanity directly in the minerals. At the abyss's bottom, 3,000 servitors perform the final assembly. These lobotomized, semi-mechanical slave laborers, containing only basic motor functions, wear rubber aprons stained with black grease. Barefoot, they shuffle mechanically on slippery scaffolding. They do not communicate. Only the sound of heavy breathing and the clatter of tools. They carry heavy black iron restraint pods, coffins forged from high-density alloy. Their surface is covered in heat station roofs. Servers slide the pods precisely into slots on reaction chambers in the wall. Clunk. The locking bolts engage. Hiss. The pressure valves seal. Layer upon layer. Interlocking rings. The black coffins densely cover the wall, forming a vast, oppressive metal honeycomb. From the base of each pod trails a translucent corrugated conduit, thick as a wrist. Tens of thousands of these conduits climb the walls like stripped vascular bundles, converging, all ultimately feeding into the 30-meter tall crystal array in the chamber center. The psionic focus prism. This sanity-devouring machine needs no deuterium, no enriched uranium. It thirsts for only one fuel: bioelectricity, pain, and 24,000 cycles. Rumble. From above, the groan of a heavy chain winched straining under load. Fuel position. The quartermaster's voice comes through a thick respirator mask, muffled and weary. He raises a hand clad in a thick rubber glove, pointing upward at the massive shadow, slowly descending. It's a heavy-duty industrial lift platform. Gray metal containers are stacked neatly on the platform. Each container is sprayed with a red skull, symbol marking extreme biochemical hazard. Between the gaps of the containers, the liquid nitrogen cooling system is hissing, spitting out cold white mist, which instantly forms a layer of frost on the floor. Inside are 100 standard units of biobatteries. Frozen at ultra-low temperature, they are in absolute hibernation. He-Facey Tawa spins around sharply. His prosthetic eye locks onto the containers instantly. The flashing frequency of its red indicator light spikes to the limit. Load immediately. Hold on. Wakasi steps sideways. His bulky hazmat suit steps between the tech priest and the control console. I need to confirm the safety threshold one last time. Wakasi lifts his data tablet. Blinding red alerts flicker across the screen. According to the simulation we just ran, the moment the core array activates, the peak energy will exceed 200% of the physical constant. If the containment field suffers structural collapse. He-Facey Tawa's vocal unit vibrates violently, letting out a piercing electronic synthesized sound. It's the laugh of machinery. Of course it will collapse, quartermaster. You guys expect a few lousy lead plates and copper wires to cage a storm that doesn't even exist in three-dimensional space. The tech priest extends a mechanical pinnacle without any courtesy, shoving Wakasi aside. The energy there is chaotic, disordered, and illogical. If the cage breaks, this entire ship will be torn to shreds by gravitational tide in 0.01 seconds. All physical matter within a 100-kilometer radius will be blasted apart. Wakasi freezes in place. Cold sweat soaks through his underclothes in an instant. But He-Facey Tawa pays no mind. His mechanical tentacle draws an almost vertical rising curve on hologram. If the cage holds, If the total energy released by that fuel in that instant is great enough, this thrust can completely ignore the laws of gravity and kick his hundreds of millions of tons of junk straight into the stratosphere. Such close to Wakasi, his red glowing prosthetic eye almost pressing right against the quartermaster's faceplate. The whir of the focusing motor is clearly audible. This is the price of science. You want to fly, you gotta set on a power keg and light the fuse. Wakasi falls silent. Through his fogged up visor, he glances at those silent containers. Then at the bottomless reaction chamber. There's no other way. Approved. Execute. Wakasi steps back. Grit his teeth and order load. The order is transmitted instantly through the neural interface. Hundreds of heavy hydraulic robotic arms descend from the ceiling, whirring along with the hum of servo motors. Grasp each container with precise movement, and roughly shove it into the feed opening on the reactor chamber wall. Servers have been waiting long ago to rush forward with crowbars. The container doors are violently pried open, and freezing white air billows out. The ciders inside are completely stiff. Thick layers of frost cover their eyebrows and hair. They look just like ice statues, but the servitors don't care at all. Their well-stained big hands grab the ciders by the ankles directly, drag them out of the containers just like dragging dead pigs. This is exactly how you shovel coal into a boiler. The ciders are shoved into the black iron restraint pods. Flick. Titanium alloy restraint pods snap out violently, locking down their wrists, ankles, and necks and hips. Bones let out a creaking, groaning whine under the high-pressure pumps. Hiss. Right after that, a 20-centimeter long neural probe covered in barbs ejects from the backrest of the restraint pod. It veers straight into the spinal cord center with precise cruelty. The stiff, dormant body instinctively twitches violently. Its back arches backward and is slammed right back into place. Neural connection established. Circuit closed. Bioelectrical impedance zero. The indicator lights on the console start flashing like crazy. And on the originally pitch black monitor screen, countless green dots indicate vital signs are instantly across it. Then they quickly turn blood red, the color that indicates overload. Energy readings are skyrocketing. Hephaestus stares dead at the screen. 10 mechanical tentacles twitch in the air. Look at these readings. What a pure bioelectric surge. We haven't even ignited yet. And the physical environment inside the core chamber is already starting to break down. The Geiger counter inside the hazmat suit starts clicking frantically. A faint buzzing hums deep inside the eardrums. This is the precursor to reality distortion caused by high concentration saturation. Ignition. Hephaestus' metal tentacle hovers right above the red physical start button. Without the slightest hesitation, inject neural sensitizer. 300% concentration sensitizer. Wakasi's eyes go wide. This will kill them. Fuel has to burn thoroughly. Hephaestus explains coldly. Completely black, no bridge. This compound boosts the conduction efficiency of pain nerves by 10 times instantly, only under the stimulation of extreme agony. Will these shoddy cerebral cortices operate at overclock to squeeze out the maximum power from psychic pulse? It's also for stability. High-pressure pneumatic injectors move in perfect unison. Inside all 24,000 restraint pods. 24,000 needles push the dark red liquid into the carotid artery at the exact same time. Those dormant fuels snap their eyes open sharply. The fuels dilate the absolute maximum and instant. Bloodshot eyes instantly cover the surface of their eyeballs. They open their mouths wide. A silent scream erupted from their throats. Veins bulge on their necks. Every muscle spasmed to the extreme. But inside the soundproof restraint pod, not a single sound escaped. Only energy remained. A psychic shock wave formed from the extreme agony of 24,000 people, surged wildly through the conduits toward the central prism. The transparent crystal prism was instantly illuminated. It was a cold, pale light that chilled the soul. Ignition. Ifacita slammed the button. Pump. No deafening explosion. Only a shriek that detonated directly within everyone's soul. The instant that shriek sounded, the 300 servers standing at the edge of the reaction hit stiffened violently. Without even a grunt, they toppled into the abyss. Wakasi felt his knees buckle, and he fell to the ground. In that moment, the laws of physics failed. An eerie blue beam, completely defying spectroscopy, erupted from the central prism. It straightened his eye. The space around the beam twisted visibly. The steel walls looked like melting wax. The entire mountain mover let out a teeth-grating metallic groan. Rivets flew. The keel trembled. It shook. The terrifying thrust generated by 20,000 brain souls, slowly breaking free from gravity shackles, lifting off the ground. Begin. Wakasi stood by the railing on the power chamber circular walkway. He pressed the throw mic. No response. Only the thunderous roar of heavy locks disengaging from above the massive reactor dome. The sound, dull as thunder, traveled through the metal skeleton, vibrating the hazmat suit visor with a buzz. Loading sequence initiated. Deep in the darkness overhead, hydraulic pumps began to roll. Hundreds of thick industrial arms descended from the shadows. Servo motors operated at overload. Winches screeched with high-frequency noise. The arms lowered. Hooks clanged against the metal rings on the container tops. Flame. Sparks flew. No cushioning. The arms simply yanked the heavy gray boxes off the ground. They hovered over the swing chute. Bottom hatches popped open. Crash. No gentle handling. Only gravity's merciless pull. Hundreds, thousands of pale bodies tumbled from the box bottoms. They slammed heavily onto the metal conveyor belt below. The sound of flesh hitting steel was dull and wet. They made your teeth ache. These were goods processed by deep cryogenic freezing. Naked, stiff as stones, thick frost covering their bodies. Slow servers clothing. These lobotomized laborers wore greasy rubber aprons. Movement was stiff, precise. Their modified hydraulic claw hands grabbed the bodies from the conveyor belt, like picking up discarded railroad ties, dragging them. Heels scraping against the grating floor, making a chilling sound. Shoved into the wall. Dense lead restraint pods were already open. Servitors roughly jammed the fuel into the chambers, then kicked the exposed ankles, shoving them completely inside. This was just an assembly line feeding organic matter into a high-pressure boiler. Subject 7734 woke up amidst violent jolts. The potent sedative's effects were fading, but the bone-chilling cold grew heavier. He tried to move, limbs heavy as if filled with lead, eyelids frozen shut. He struggled to open a slit, vision blurred, only seeing the oppressive black iron dome above. It was cramped, claustrophobic. The air reeked of a nauseating metallic odor, mixed with the acidic scent of high-concentration preservatives. Before his brain could process this information, the surrounding metal panels violently contracted. Crash! The hydraulic restraint rings snapped up simultaneously. Wrists, ankles were firmly clamped. Then the neck. A cold alloy collar bit into flesh, crushing the Adam's apple, almost cutting off the carotid artery's blood supply. 7734 opened his mouth to scream, vocal cords already paralyzed, only managing a wheezing hiss from deep in his throat. Can't move. This was an upright coffin. A hidden match and preheating sound suddenly came to my ear. ZZZ, without warning. A 20-centimeter spinal puncture probe shot out from his back, powered by the sheer brute force of industrial hydraulics. The thick metal needle instantly pierced the nape of his neck, shattering brittle cartilage with an agonizing grinding sound, precisely stabbing into the spinal cord. A silent scream exploded inside his skull. 7734's body arched violently, his back slamming against the pod wall, eyes bulging outward in extreme pain. Capillaries burst instantly, vision turning blood red. The probe didn't stop. Its barbed metal tip spun frantically in cerebrospinal fluid, churning, seeking the vulnerable nerve bundle nodes. Heart connection established. No data influx, only traction, as if a high power pump was attached to his brain. His soul was violently ripped from his body. All sensory signals forcibly converted into electrical impulses, violently siphoned away through the spinal conduit. Data projections flickered wildly on his retina. Biological unit 7734. Grid integrated calibration complete. Skin impedance test. Skin normal. Skin status. Skin standby. The excruciating pain after a momentary beat became complete nothingness. 7734 slumped in the restraint pod. Darkness enveloped everything once more. Dark despair. 7734 closed his eyes. Tears of blood from cracked tear ducts streamed down his cheeks. Guard had lied. This truly was the final destination. Loading complete. Above the console, the red dot matrix on the holographic screen began turning green in patches. Keith Azichuo's multispectral cybernetic eye was fixed on the readings. The aperture contracted to a pinpoint. His 10 mechanical tentacles flew across the control panel, calibrating the output power of each restraint pod. Circuit closure rate 100%. All fuel cells online. The tech priest's voice carried a hint of electrical static. It was the tremor from an overheating core processor. Wakasi stood behind him. He glanced at the unnerving green dots and slowly nodded. Proceed with ignition. Keith Azichuo took a deep breath of the foul air. This wasn't just an ignition. It was the test of a theory that could overturn imperial energy orthodoxy. His half-metal face showed no pity, only gallantry. His mechanical arm rose. A metal finger hovered over the red physical ignition button. Stage 1 preheat. Inject catalyst. Concentration 300%. The command shot through data lines to 24,000 restraint pods. Pre-embedded microinjectors in the walls activated simultaneously. Pneumatic pumps forced a dark red neurotoxin into every side of his carotid artery.
This was no poison.
It amplified human pain sensitivity tenfold instantly, forcing the brain into overdrive under extreme agony, to wring out the last bioelectric current. The abyss shuddered. 24,000 living souls trapped in iron coffins screamed soundlessly in the same second. Pain beyond physical limits became a tangible psychic shockwave. The air grew thick. Gravity sensor needles went wild. This energy surged through tens of thousands of translucent conduits, rushing madly towards the focusing lens at the reactor's core. The once transparent crystal array ignited instantly. Not the red of flame, nor the blue of arc light. It was a spectral-defying, ghastly white, a light cold and piercing. It felt like radiation burn on the skin. Keith Azichuo slammed the button down.